Meet Zeke Draker. He was born into the Draker household, a family directly descended from legendary Dragonslayers. However, his time to flex the family title was short-lived. He was soon abandoned because his family deemed him unfit. Apparently, his family wanted a swordsman, but Zeke turned out to be a cursed healer, someone no one cared about. In his pursuit of power, Zeke wandered across continents and eventually stumbled upon an ancient relic, a treasure even desired by the Emperor himself. But in the end, he was taken down by soldiers sent by the Emperor. The injuries inflicted were so severe that even his healing magic failed to assist him. Yet fate had other plans. The ancient relic he had stolen triggered an upgrade system that allowed him to regress to a younger age with these newly granted ancient powers awakened inside. And from this moment on, his real story begins at the Draker household's training institution, the Cradle. Before diving deeper into Zeke's story, it's important to understand the background of his family. The Draker family is one of the three great transcendent households. This renown stems from their ancestor, Terrakan Draker, the hero who saved the land 1,000 years ago by slaying the evil dragon Bahamut. It was Terrakan's victory that laid the foundation for the Draker household's prominence. Perhaps due to their lineage, every descendant of the Draker bloodline has inherited the blessing of aura, allowing them to awaken high-level aura effortlessly and excel as knights. That is, until Zeke came along. Unlike his ancestors, he was born without the ability to wield aura, a deviation that cast him as an outcast within his family. After regressing, as Zeke relaxes on his bed totally carefree, the system window suddenly startles him. He immediately goes on high alert, listening intently after hearing the unusual sound. However, after scanning the room and finding no one, he convinces himself he might have just imagined it. But then, a few more system windows chime in. Out of all the system windows, one particular system has the juiciest detail. It goes on to announce that Zeke's soul has received the will of the Elder Dragon, and it has been merged completely with his soul. Soon enough, Zeke is also granted authority over part of the system. And as soon as the activation is complete, his eyesight is swarmed by a plethora of system windows. The first window displays his overall stats, including his class, skills, and a unique skill category labeled Draconian Skill. This skill can only be unlocked once he accumulates 10 points, but his current karma points are 0. Curious, he begins fiddling with the system and quickly learns how to navigate and operate it. Among all the information displayed in the administration status window, what stands out to him the most is the class skill. The reason behind his curiosity is that this word, class skills, is a terminology from Draconic language that is not used in this current era. He has heard about this class skills from his master. According to his master, people of the ancient world classified themselves based on their strengths. Each class trained in specialized techniques referred to as skills. Since Zeke's class is that of a healer, his corresponding skill is called healing. After Zeke awakened, his master, who was female by the way, trained him relentlessly until he was on the brink of death. Her training methods were unusual, and he still remembers the unbearable pain she inflicted on him just so he could heal it back. In any case, Zeke decides to verify if he is indeed a healer, just as the system claims. As soon as he activates his powers, he realizes that he is, in fact, a healer. He's surprised because, in his past life, the time he became a healer was in his 20s, right after his ether hall was unlocked. Since he can't possibly access his healing ability without his ether hall being unlocked, it clearly means that his ether hall has already been opened. This news is as good as it can get. Not only has he returned to the past with all his memories intact, but his skills have also come along. And this just puts him in an even more advantageous position. As he decides to explore the system further to see what other surprises are in store, someone calls out his name and knocks on the door. Quickly, he scrambles to push the system windows aside before anyone can see. However, the impatient visitor barges into the room without even waiting for a response. The man who just entered is Zeke's exclusive servant, Decker. He's apparently here to check if his young master is prepared for the event ahead. Of course, Zeke has no clue what he's supposed to be prepared for. This ticks off this terrifying man, and he is clearly annoyed by how careless Zeke seems. To think that the young master forgot about this special day is just pissing this butler beyond belief. The poor guy, on the other hand, begins to tremble instinctively under Decker's intense gaze. Now that Zeke thinks about it, he recalls that, in his past life, he was always afraid of Decker. Even though his mind is that of a 32-year-old, his subconscious can't shake the fear instilled in this body. Right at that moment, one of the class skills activates, known as Composed Mind. Almost instantly, all of Zeke's trembling and any trace of fear that had been on his face fades away completely. Apparently, Composed Mind is a skill that ensures the user's mental state remains unaffected, no matter the situation, allowing them to maintain a calm and composed mind. Zeke finds it rather convenient that it can activate on its own. Meanwhile, the butler continues repeating himself, trying to remind his young master of the importance of the event ahead. However, Zeke doesn't respond immediately. After much insistence from the butler, Zeke finally starts paying attention and admits that he does remember. He clearly recalls the evaluation test, known as pancration. To understand what pancration is, a little context is needed. All Drakers go through a training system called the Cradle, starting when they're 7 years old. For 5 years, they undergo strict basic training. Every year, the instructors evaluate the incoming students through competitions in swordsmanship and combat, specifically pancration, a no-holds-barred combat with no rules. Opponents are typically chosen by the instructors, but on occasion, students may choose their own adversaries, provided both parties consent. Since there are no rules, injuries are common, and sometimes students don't make it out alive. But because this competition determines which class the students will be placed into within the academy, the children have no choice but to fight with all they have. The day of pancration finally arrives, and the students find themselves gathered in the amphitheater. At the center of it all stands the instructor, who reminds everyone that today is the day of pancration, and that it marks the final part of their evaluation. All the students eagerly affirm what the instructor has said, and seeing their enthusiasm, even the instructor is somewhat intrigued by the high spirits of the crowd. This man is actually the head instructor, Panmark, and without further delay, he decides to get things started. In the crowd, the students begin to notice Zeke standing among them. Some students find it laughable that Zeke is once again here after the humiliation he suffered last year. The duel between two students finally begins, and a student named Aaron ends it before it even starts, delivering a single uppercut that knocks his opponent out cold. But while the other students find the quick fight fascinating, Zeke isn't impressed at all. He remembers the time when he, too, used to be terrified of such fights when he was younger. But compared to what he went through in his past life, this is nothing. As Zeke yawns repeatedly while waiting for his turn, one particular student, Leon Conrad, is eagerly waiting for the moment to have a duel with our boy. Eventually, the time for Zeke's match arrives, and his opponent just so happens to be Leon. While my guy is rubbing his tired eyes, Leon throws a jab at him, instantly reminding the humiliation Zeke suffered the previous year. Well, of course, Zeke has not forgotten about it. He vividly recalls how he had begged Leon for forgiveness back then. Those memories are painful, but they're in the past now. Leon has always been Zeke's opponent every year. Our boy knows him all too well, how dirty of a player Leon is, and the kind of trash family he comes from. He is certain that the only reason he's facing Leon in this duel is because Leon pulled some strings behind the scenes to fix the match. Zeke would rather have a dog who bites rather than having a cousin like him. In Zeke's past life, he was never able to meet his 4 siblings of direct bloodline, but there were more than a dozen cousins, and many of them were more than willing to bully him. Suddenly, Leon calls out to Zeke once again, and just like before, he tries to humiliate him by reminding him of the miserable defeat he suffered the previous year. He further questions Zeke whether that level of humiliation wasn't enough to keep him away from participating in pancration altogether. While Leon continues to throw one verbal jab after another, Zeke remains as cool as a cucumber, and it's all thanks to his composed mind ability. Although Zeke is calm and collected, there's still a limit to his patience. He won't tolerate some insolent bug bad-mouthing him repeatedly without consequence. Well, our boy's response only serves to trigger this bastard even more. And this time, Leon even goes so far as to grab our boy by the head. But his foolish move only earns him a solid punch to the face that sends him flying away. This brutal punch was possible thanks to Zeke's skill, Critical Strike. The ability inflicts significant damage to the opponent and has the added risk of being countered if the attack fails. Fortunately for Zeke, this punch landed perfectly, leaving no room for a counter. The bastard, on the other hand, is writhing in agony, with his hand covering his own face. Zeke, meanwhile, reflects on how he only meant to knock the guy out and had no intention of activating this ability. The instructor quickly rushes to tend to the injured brat while scolding our boy for attacking even before the match began. But my guy just stays nonchalant in his response and wonders aloud why they had to wait for someone's command to start the battle when they're already standing in the arena. You see, the one who strikes first has the advantage, so he didn't shy away from taking this opportunity. While he says this, he looks absolutely menacing, and the sheer amount of killer intent he's exuding is enough to leave the poor instructor trembling. Meanwhile, Leon just assures the instructor that everything is fair game and tells him to just let the battle begin. After all, if Leon steps back on a moment like this, it would be way too humiliating to bear. As soon as the instructor gives the signal, Leon recklessly charges at his opponent. But his reckless charge earns him a punch right to the face. As surprising as it is, the punch Zeke landed didn't hurt at all. Initially, Leon was quite afraid of taking a direct punch, remembering how painful the first one was, but realizing this punch didn't hurt him at all only fuels his foolish confidence. All he has to do, he thinks, is put his guard up, and Zeke won't be a threat at all. Leon quickly notices our boy using his left hand for a counterattack again, so he ducks down. In that critical moment, he takes advantage of Zeke's vulnerability and takes him into his grasp in order to push him over to the ground. But suddenly, Leon takes a hit so fast that even we couldn't see what happened, leaving him trembling like a leaf. Even the instructor on the sidelines is completely boggled, unable to wrap his mind around the fact that he just witnessed a 12-year-old kid pull that slick move. The moment Leon dodged Zeke's counter and tried to take him down, the instructor was certain Leon was going to win. However, Zeke punched Leon square in the chin and escaped his grasp. It's on Leon for letting his guard down, thinking he had Zeke right where he wanted him. But our boy, on the other hand, remained as cool as cucumber, despite the fact that his counter failed. The concentration and precision needed to inflict such exact and effective damage is a feat in itself. The instructor is actually wondering if this is really the Zeke Draker they thought they knew. The bratty bastard, however, is in shambles after taking that brutal punch. His brain is scrambled, and before he can even react, he takes another blow that causes him to trip. But he quickly steadies himself and retaliates with a punch of his own. At that critical moment, one of Zeke's class skills activates automatically, Heightened Sense, which temporarily enhances his perception. With this skill, Zeke can see the punch coming at him in 960 frames per second slow-mo, making dodging it a piece of cake. As soon as the punch zips past him, Zeke quickly grabs Leon's extended arm and slam dunks him hard onto the ground. And the impact was so brutal that it literally shattered the ground beneath. Another skill activates, known as Precise Stab, which helps Zeke target the Leon's weak points for critical damage. After pinning the bratty bastard to the ground, Zeke balls up his fist, ready to obliterate his face. Poor Leon begs him to stop, but my guy still goes through with it, landing the punch square on his face. The sheer brutality of the act leaves the instructor sweating his balls, along with the spectators watching in stunned silence. The final hit feels immensely satisfying, and after this little battle, beating the crap out of his bully, Zeke feels a sense of calm washing over him. He's glad that, thanks to this little show he pulled off, his other cousins will think twice before messing with him again. Not that it matters, though. If they dare say or do anything, he'll make sure to silence them for good. It seems that wasn't enough to instill fear in these incompetent bastards. One particular punk, too complacent for his own good, challenges our boy and picks him as his pancration opponent. This overconfident, cocky punk is Jaken Vardek, itching to make a statement, though he plans to let his blows do the talking. Well, Zeke doesn't mind at all. In fact, he's sure he'll get bored if Jaken comes alone, so he offers him the chance to bring a few other students along to make things more interesting. Our boy specifically calls out another student, Liam Stone, and suggests he join Jaken. Apparently, Liam is nothing more than Jaken's lackey. This suggestion feels like a slap in the face to Jaken. The very idea that he'd need someone's assistance to fight a brat like Zeke is a humiliation he just can't stomach. But Zeke keeps pushing his buttons, which only enrages this piece of flying trash even more. Jaken's seething now, eager to beat Zeke to a pulp. As both contestants stand in the arena, the instructor this time explicitly warns Zeke not to move before the command. Well, it seems like Jaken did bring his servant along after all, which only makes Zeke even happier. After all, in Zeke's past life, Liam had a reputation for being an exceptional fighter, even earning the title of Mercenary King. Back then, as Jaken's servant, Liam joined the cradle in the academy. However, being a distant relative, he was overlooked in education. He desperately begged to join higher education at Academy Valhalla, but ultimately ended up in the Knight Order of a small nation called Baranon. When Baranon eventually fell, Liam became a mercenary. In those chaotic times, the strong naturally drew followers. With his long tenure as a mercenary, Liam rose to prominence as a Red Knight, and eventually founded the Stone Mercenaries. He united the three largest mercenary groups, earning the title of Mercenary King. When the Empire hired the Stone Mercenaries, Liam entered the Continental Wars, where Zeke, along with the Northerners, faced him as a formidable foe. But this time, our boy is determined to carve out a very different future for himself. As soon as the instructor gives the signal, Jaken confidently lunges forward, delivering a punch with such force that it disturbs the air currents around him. But, not surprisingly, Zeke casually grabs and blocks the punch as if it were nothing. Jaken quickly flings our boy's hand away and retaliates with a kick of his own. But that kick ends up backfiring against this filthy bastard. As soon as his kick connects, Jaken feels an immense amount of pain, causing him to stumble. It turns out he hit Zeke's strong barrier, which was created around his elbow, and that caused serious damage to Jaken's leg. As Jaken looks at his injured leg, Zeke quickly lunges forward, balls up his fist with his skill activated, ready to throw it down. But poor Jaken quickly tries to protect himself, putting his hands over his face. Seems like Jaken miscalculated Zeke's moves a little, because our boy never intended to land a hit on his face. Instead, he tags the bastard right on his injured leg. After that sneaky move, He follows up with a punch to the ribs, one that's enough to make Ken gag up copious amounts of blood. The overconfident bastard is finally on the ground. Left with no pride or dignity, he angrily instructs his sidekick to kill our boy right away. The time has come for our boy to deal with Liam, and this bastard is exuding some serious killing vibes as he strides toward him. The most annoying thing about fighting Liam is his insane reach, which puts Zeke at a serious disadvantage if he lets Liam attack first. So my guy takes his stance and decides to take the lead, throwing a few blows of his own. Using another skill known as Slash, Zeke moves so fast that all anyone can see are silhouettes throwing a barrage of punches. The skill Slash allows him to launch a relentless flurry of attacks at the enemy, completely interfering with the enemy's sight. The guys watching from the sidelines are feeling true despair, witnessing just how much of a gigachad our boy is. Zeke knows they're curious and confused because none of them have seen anything like this before. You see, in a place where sword dominates, seeing a brawler's fist-fighting technique is a rare and almost unheard of sight. As impressive as this ability is, it's also taking an equally heavy toll on his body. But even that isn't the biggest challenge here. The monstrous physique of Liam is what truly tests Zeke. No counterattacks, no dodges. Liam is just taking it all with his guard up, and now you can only imagine how aggressive he was during his time as the mercenary king. Since Zeke is unable to do any real damage, he prepares to unleash one final devastating strike, one that will be powerful enough to break through Liam's guard. As soon as our boy launches his strike, Liam effortlessly dodges it by redirecting it. What pisses Zeke off even more is that this bastard didn't even flinch or turn his eyes to see the strike, and he just dodged it like it was nothing. In the next moment, Liam seizes the opportunity to make his move. Lifting Zeke high into the air, he prepares to slam him hard onto the ground. But Zeke isn't about to let that happen without a fight. He quickly strikes Liam over the head. His class skill, Heightened Sense, activates, and with it, he completely turns the tide. Using this advantage, he locks Liam in a deadly neck hold with his legs, cutting off Liam's air supply. No matter how strong Liam's body is, he's still powerless without oxygen reaching his brain. However, it seems Zeke overestimated himself. Liam retaliates brutally, landing one devastating blow after another. The relentless flurry of punches even forces the poor guy to gag up blood. But despite the barrage of hits, Liam's body finally begins to falter. His strength wanes, and eventually, he succumbs, losing consciousness due to the lack of air. The spectators are left in awe, their breaths caught in their throats at the sight of such a jaw-dropping battle. But among them, there's one particular student who, instead of feeling worried or shaken, seems oddly exhilarated. He's actually excited and can't wait to take on Zeke as his opponent. After the day of pancration was over, our boy returns into his quarters, where his servant inquires about his well-being. He has heard that Zeke was gravely injured during the matches. To this, Zeke just shrugs it off, claiming he's perfectly fine. However, the butler does not relent, and insists on checking his pulse to verify that everything is truly okay. Zeke can tell that this old coot just wants to check whether he has awakened his aura or not. Eventually, he extends his hand toward the servant, who quickly shoots a blue energy through his hand and into Zeke's. Seeing this blue energy makes our boy pause and wonder if his servant might actually be a blue knight. You see, when checking if someone has awakened, most people simply examine their dantian. But this man is being unusually thorough with it. Imbuing someone else with aura is difficult enough on its own, but for this old man to control it so precisely like this, he must be a blue knight. Apparently not all knights are the same. They are classified according to their martial prowess and aura manipulation proficiency. White swordsman is the novice level, and most children before the blessing rite are white swordsmen. A yellow swordsman is the level you attain once you've awakened your aura and opened your dantian. All trainees of the cradle become yellow swordsmen after the blessing rite. Once you've learned to freely control aura, you earn the title of knight. The purple knight level is when you can reinforce your sword with aura, while the blue knight level is achieved when you can manifest an aura blade. Beyond this, the realm of those who have transcended their limits, the realm the mercenary king Liam and our boy had reached before his regression, is known as the Red Knight. Then there's the Black Knight. But only a few of these monsters exist across the entire continent. With that in mind, Zeke can't help but wonder how someone as skilled as his servant, who is clearly talented enough to be a commander, ended up acting as his babysitter. Still, no matter what, Zeke is sure there's no way this guy can detect his ether, something only 2 people in the entire world can use. Finally, the old man finishes his examination. With a firm tone, he questions his young master, asking if he might be hiding something. Of course, Zeke plays it cool and feigns ignorance. He counters by asking if the butler perhaps knows something that even he doesn't. A moment of silence fills the room, but it's quickly broken by our boy, who just drops the conversation by claiming that he was just joking. The butler then hesitates but can't help himself and questions Zeke about how drastically he has changed. This makes our boy to halt his movements. He turns around with a glare in his eyes. The question his butler asked is entirely wrong. Instead of asking why Zeke has changed now, the butler should have been asking why it took so long for Zeke to change. He then informs his butler that many more surprises are yet to come, so there's no need for the servant to be shocked repeatedly. All he has to do is follow the commands. The humble servant acknowledges his master's words and bows his head in submission, ready to follow without question. The butler then reports that the training room Zeke had requested is already prepared and waiting for him. Zeke is pleased with the report and dismisses the old man to get some well-deserved rest. As our boy walks off alone, he has a nagging fear that his butler might have been ordered to keep an eye on him. To counter this, he decides it's best to keep the butler close, so he can manipulate the old coot and extract the information he needs. Zeke still has to figure out who ordered his butler to watch him. He's pretty sure that no one from his mother's side would dare do it, which only leaves his siblings. Once Zeke enters the personal training room, he's immediately struck by how lavish the place is, which only confirms that this household truly lives up to its name. Before starting his training, he decides to check the system. With a command, the system panel pops up in front of him. There, he notices that his slash skill has reached proficiency. He has no clue how it happened, but he makes a wild guess that it probably leveled up from using it repeatedly. The skill is naturally activated based on his actions, and he doesn't need to do anything in particular to activate it. From what he can understand, if he learns something new, it will likely be added here as a skill as well. He's still unsure about the difference between a skill and a class skill, though he does notice that they both activate similarly on their own. Lastly, there's the Draconian skill, but he can't view it yet because it requires 10 points to unlock. He presses on the option, and the next system window informs him that he can earn karma points by killing monsters. His current karma points stand at 0. Speaking of monsters, Zeke reflects on how there are plenty of them in the dungeons, but he needs to be at least a purple knight to gain access. For now, though, he's more curious about why he regressed to the past and what this system is all about. The concepts of skills and class skills are also something in his curiosity list. At the back of his mind, he has a nagging feeling that all of this might be connected to that ancient relic. However, he can't be certain since he doesn't have enough information to piece everything together. Whatever the case, he grabs his sword and decides to use everything at his disposal to grow stronger, whether it's the system or the Draker lineage. In this world, there are two known powers, the aura of the knights and the mana of the mages. Knights reinforce their aura in the dungeons, while mages refine their mana through circles. The two powers are at opposite ends of the spectrum, meaning if one has awakened one power, they cannot awaken the other. However, Zeke was unfortunate enough to awaken neither a Dantian nor a circle. This inability led to his abandonment by the Draker household, forcing him to wander aimlessly until he met his master during his vagabond days. His master taught him many things, but the most valuable lessons were the art of healing and the Ether Hall, a unique technique his master had developed. Through the Ether Hall, Zeke learned to harness the energy of nature, known as ether. To this day, he and his master remain the only ether users in the world. After only 2 hours of training, Zeke feels as though he's about to collapse. However, his class skill healing activates in tandem with another class skill, Vigor Recovery. Healing is an exceptionally rare skill, one Zeke hadn't even known existed before meeting his master. If others were to witness him using it, they'd brand him an irregular. That's why he refrained from using it during his fight against Liam, and had to rush to heal himself the moment he returned to his room. After his body recovers to full strength, Zeke decides to continue practicing. He knows he cannot afford to waste even a moment. By dawn, Zeke looks utterly exhausted after relentless training. The entire hall bears the evidence of his efforts, with deep gashes scarring the floor and trails marking where his sword struck. Anyhow, a week passes by and we find ourselves in Cradle Cafeteria. There, Zeke overhears some students talking about him. They think he's turned into a completely different person now. Since he is a born loser, they assume he might have dabbled in black magic. Meanwhile, in another private lounge, all the big shot students are having dinner together. The first one chowing down on steak is Raina Tarun. Then there's this guy, Owen Zimmons, calm and composed. And across from him sits a beaten-up Leon, looking as rowdy and impatient as ever. Owen tries to tell him he should eat properly because he'll need the energy for the swordsmanship duel. Leon, on the other hand, gets ticked off for no apparent reason and smashes his hand so hard on the table in frustration that the juicy steak he was served unnecessarily falls to the ground. Because of this table slam, even Raina's piece of steak jumps off her plate and falls, leaving her totally enraged. Her intense glare finally humbles Leon a little. Apparently all 4 of these students seem to hate our boy, so it's not surprising they're together. But even though they're in the same group, they don't seem to get along all that well. The only thing keeping their relationship intact is their shared resentment for Zeke. Owen admits that Zeke was both brave and impressive during the pancration. However, he's convinced he will be pathetic when it comes to swordsmanship. As far as he knows, Zeke doesn't even know how to hold a sword properly, so he's no threat to anyone. One of them points out that Zeke is so weak he had to get a customized sword because the basic ones were too heavy for him. Still, it doesn't make sense to Leon that he lost to that inferior piece of shit. He's convinced Zeke only won against him in Pancration because of pure luck. Well, it looks like Reina doesn't share the same thoughts. If they actually believe this nonsense, then none of them have the right to be knights of the Draker household. With those words, the lady leaves the room. Before we jump to the day of the duel, here is a little context about what this sword duel is all about. Unlike Pancration, sword duels involve real swords, making them the primary cause of most incidents within Cradle. It's also where the difference between cadets' skills becomes glaringly obvious. A month after the current final exams, the Blessing Rite will commence, the event where the Drakers awaken their aura. The day of the duel has finally arrived, and the instructor commands Zeke to come up next. My guy casually walks onto the scene with a giant sword resting over his shoulder. The sword is literally bigger than him, which certainly doesn't go unnoticed. Everyone finds it hilarious, thinking Zeke believes that the bigger is better, so it will somehow give him an advantage. The person stepping up from the other side is Reina, who looks absolutely fired up and dramatically throws down the gauntlet to challenge our boy to a duel. Well, my guy is more than ready to take on this challenge and accepts it without a second thought. It doesn't sit well with Reina to see Zeke effortlessly lifting a claymore. Now that she's facing him in person, she can tell this isn't the same Zeke she once knew. The person she knew once could barely hold a sword properly. His presence is so striking that she begins to feel intimidated. But she quickly snaps out of it, disgusted with herself for even thinking that she could be intimidated by him. Backing down isn't an option now, especially since she was the one who issued the challenge. Meanwhile, Zeke is also feeling quite intimidated. He knows his usual tactics won't be enough to get the victory he wants, because a duel against the Lightning Knight is no joke. It's downright nerve-wracking. You see, Reina Taron was well-renowned and had earned the title of the Lightning Knight in his past life. She made a name for herself during the Continental Wars, and is recognized as one of the greatest of the next generation of Drakers. She's one of the rare few who awakened her aura even before undergoing the Blessing Rite. As far as Zeke remembers, she must have awakened her aura a few years ago. However, she hasn't used it in Cradle because she's been focusing on improving her fundamentals. As soon as the signal to commence the duel is given, both contestants clash their swords right away. After the first clash, Reina steps back before charging at him again. With one strike, she sets Zeke sliding backward. Just these two exchanged blows were enough for our boy to draw the judgment that she's even better than he expected. The feisty lady charges at him once more, swinging her sword as fast as she can, lighting up the area with sparks. In the background, her friends are getting restless and impatient, urging her to just finish him off in one strike instead of playing around. But one of the wiser ones reminds these idiots that Reina isn't toying with him. It's Zeke who is pushing her around. Now, switching to her perspective, she can clearly see the openings and vulnerabilities in Zeke's guard. Yet, every time she tries to exploit them, her sword is quickly blocked by his sword, almost as if he's applauding her attempts. What's even more frustrating is that after he blocks one attack, he intentionally leaves another vulnerable point for her to strike. It's as if this duel isn't about winning. It's meant to teach her. After a few exchanges, Reina finally steps back, utterly exhausted by the back and forth. She wants to catch her breath before coming back for more. Meanwhile, Zeke doesn't have a single ounce of sweat or tiredness on his face. In fact, he looks bored. He's not that impressed. She is fighting honestly without using any aura, but it's expected from someone obsessed with their fundamentals. Now that they are at it, he decides to help her break out of her shell. He intentionally takes an extremely low stance, as if he intends to close the gap in one move. Reina is confident in her speed and doesn't think much of it. But in the blink of an eye, Zeke closes the gap and is right in her face before she even has time to react. He swings his sword so hard that it literally cracks the ground with the force of his giant blade. The girl, on the other hand, is sure that as long as there's distance between them, she can react to his moves. Zeke swings his sword through empty air, but it wasn't meant to hit her. Instead, the debris he flung into the air with the force of his swing strikes her square in the face, leaving her nose pretty banged up. Next, Zeke charges at her with his massive sword in hand. As she sees that shiny blade only a few centimeters away from her neck, she's sure she's done for. But as surprising as it is, the sword Zeke was holding suddenly goes flying into the air and lands a few feet away. With that, the crowd quickly declares Zeke the loser, while showering Reina with praise for winning without even using her aura. However, the instructor knows this isn't what it seems, and his face is painted with sheer horror, as if he just found out he has more than one father. What the cadets didn't notice was that as Zeke's attack closed in on Reina, she used the faintest amount of aura, so subtle it was barely noticeable. The fact that Zeke forced her to use her aura, despite her vow not to until she entered the academy, is nothing short of insane. As Reina stands there, her face riddled with doubt and regret for breaking her promise, Zeke suddenly charges at her. With his fist balled up, he strikes her square in the throat, reminding her that this isn't over yet. She buckles over her knees with blood leaking from her mouth. The other coward sitting in the cavea is outraged because this was supposed to be a sword duel, so they won't stand for such cheap attacks. Everyone present points their fingers at Zeke out of contempt, calling him shameless for pulling off such a move. Meanwhile, Zeke remains completely unbothered by all the noise and insults. He calmly asks Reina if she wants to continue. Reina, on the other hand, stubbornly believes she hasn't lost yet, reasoning that he only struck her because she let her guard down. But as she thinks about it, a realization hits her. If he had been holding a knife instead of throwing a barehanded punch, she would already be 6 feet under. For that reason alone, she honorably concedes defeat. The crowd, which had been eagerly mocking Zeke moments ago, falls into stunned silence. Zeke Draker, who was labeled human scum just days ago, has achieved an undeniable victory against one of the most talented children of the famed houses. The fact that Reina Tarun, the Lightning Knight, was defeated is simply unfathomable to most of those present. The scene transitions to Abel's castle. Outside, a dangerous battle has just ended, leaving behind a trail of bodies in the pit. William witnesses the horrific scene and fails to understand how Abel is calmly drinking tea without any worries. Abel's current focus is on a letter that mentions Zeke Draker's victory over Reina, the prodigy. He gets up and asks about how long they have until the blessing rite comes around. Since they've got enough time until the full moon, Abel believes it's fitting to pay the Draker family a visit. Hearing this, William is rather shocked that he's choosing to go by himself. But to this swordmaster, he's itching to know the kind of awakening the youngest of their family is going through. While Zeke's victory left the rest of the cradle stunned, he didn't care much about his achievement and merely resumed his training, refusing to celebrate. 1 month passed, and the day of the blessing rite finally arrived. Zeke still doesn't comprehend how he managed to become a Red Knight in his original life, especially with the shitty body he has. Having finished training, he commands open the status window. His mastery skill is according to his expectations, standing at the expert level. What's even better is that every time a skill ranks up, its mastery level resets, as evident by his numerous skill tiers in rank D and E. Also, he's advanced his mastery with Swift Step's skill, the same one he used against Reina. Thanks to his sharp senses, he can tell the butler is watching him. Decker informs his master that they're to leave in 2 hours for the event. Zeke thinks it's time to get ready. Zeke hasn't visited the main estate in a long time. He's on his way to the Draker family's house situated in the Duchy of Troy. While the family's main residence is located in the center of the continent, the blessing rite is held where the legend of the Dragonslayer surfaced. Having arrived at his destination, Zeke steps outside the carriage and into the Dragon's Nest lair. Having made his way inside, he has an enlightening realization. The people here are VIPs with incredible fame. He knows for a face that some of them are informants sent to observe him. Despite their intentions, Zeke thinks everything will go swimmingly well once his awakening blows up in their faces. That is until he spots a certain man, a man whose very presence makes his blood boil. That man is none other than Abel, who shakes hands with someone and expresses that he had no interest in coming to the event. None except for one person, and that person is his youngest brother. The second son of the Draker family is nicknamed the Lion Blade, but he's got an even more prominent name that Zeke knows by heart: the Butchering Knight. Our boy does his best to maintain his calm facing his elder brother. After all, he doesn't have many options in this situation. In his previous life, the second son never showed up to observe Zeke in the blessing rite. This means his actions in the pancration competition have altered the trajectory of the future. Clenching his fist in frustration, Zeke realizes that he's acquired a chance for himself. Before long, the blessing rite is underway. Aaron is told to come out as the first warrior. He promptly places his arm inside a mystical pool, causing his arm to surge with a blue essence. It's explained that during every blessing rite ritual, each member of the Draker bloodline awakens their sealed aura right around the time they're supposed to graduate from the cradle. This happens at the age of 12, and Aaron has just become an example of the first to be awakened. Now, compared to regular knights who awaken after 20 years of age, this process is extremely fast for the Draker family. Only a few exceptional cases among them, those with aura, can also awaken a particular trait of the Dragonslayer. This trait is called mana inhibition. Interestingly, the mana lamps are reacting harshly and with sparks of red. Those who end up obtaining mana inhibition end up strong enough to rival the likes of Red and Black Knights. This is called pure blood awakening. Due to the mana inhibition trait, the candidates will require usage of special gloves made by the family, because otherwise, they'll never be able to enjoy a regular life. This example is shown with Reina, who has already undergone the awakening process and wears gloves consistently. After one has been able to prove that they're pure blood, they are granted the Draker name. And then, they are also provided with a wealth of support along with endless benefits to help them. The spectators murmur as finally, the most anticipated awakening candidate steps up to the scene. They all think that this child's awakening will surpass even that of Reyna's. As Zeke steps in front of the statue, he finds himself surprised that he's found himself here again. The previous experience was traumatizing in his old life. While the blessing rite was the only thing that helped him advance through the cradle, this was the day he earned nothing but embarrassment. However, reality is now different. He possesses the ability to heal, manipulate ether, and on top of everything, he has learned to be tenacious and strong with his own abilities. That's why he's expecting a lot from the bronze statue to do him a favor here. As he dips his arm inside the pool, the statue reacts. It shakes before coming to an abrupt stop, shocking everyone in the room. It's something that has never happened to any candidate before, and it has left even Abel speechless. As he takes out his arm, the boy confirms his thoughts. He knew things wouldn't be different this time around. It's because of Abel that he jumped to conclusions and became too confident. The rest of the people are just shocked that the most anticipated candidate failed to awaken. They make fun of him for not awakening despite being a direct descendant. Then there's the question of him beating Reyna, which everyone now believes must have been through a sneaky trick or something. Still, our boy has zero fucks to spare and instead focuses on becoming stronger via other awakenings. The system greets him with a sudden apology after experiencing an error. Zeke looks perplexed as the system informs him that necessary information is missing from his class identification. This part of the message captures his attention. The system tells him that the input is complete, and that the terminal has identified the user's talent as a healer. With that, he unlocked his class and simultaneously gained access to the rare class. Zeke can't believe his eyes as the statue begins to illuminate red lights, indicating a pureblood's awakening. No one can believe that he's starting as a red knight off the bat. The system connects and unlocks the ancient dragon's blessing from within Zeke's soul. While this is happening, Abel is calmly observing his brother. The talent of kin is the first thing that is awakened, and then his already awakened talents combine together, morphing together into a new class of its own. There is so much going on that Zeke doesn't understand, especially when he sees a new unique class called the Immortal, which the system has chosen for him. The shimmer of gold light surrounding his body attracts the attention of the spectators. They're certain to have seen the red light from the statue, but they're filled with doubts. Zeke has understood the situation perfectly and thinks it's pointless to speak against them right now. They question if the statue is broken, but then how would one explain the mana lamp reacting to the reading? There wasn't any mana inhibition, so it can't be a pure blood's awakening is what they want to believe. That's when Abel begins to applaud, mocking the people for failing to congratulate the newly awakened purebloods in a single go. He thinks this is an opportunity to celebrate the occasion instead of murmuring doubts. Since they can't speak against him, they give them a round of applause. Abel demands a pair of gloves to be prepared for his young brother. Zeke receives the gloves but has a low opinion of them. He walks away while Abel is satisfied with what he sees. As for our boy, he's pissed that he received Abel's help from all the people. The blessing rite soon comes to an end, and a celebration party for everyone to enjoy is next. Zeke is on his Sigma male grind set and doesn't want to show up to the party. He comes to a sudden stop after a voice calls his name. This is completely against Zeke's expectations, as he wasn't expecting Abel to pop out of nowhere. He wants to know where the kid is going and even congratulates him with a handshake. Despite hating his older brother, declining his handshake here would put him in trouble, so he acts all nice and reaches to shake his hand. That's until he remembers a bloodbath from the memories of his previous life. For some reason, Zeke retracts his hand and refuses to say a word. Abel reveals a hint of his malicious nature, blaming his little brother for the awkward situation. In his thoughts, Zeke simply can't accept shaking the hand of a man he deems the most disgusting and despicable. Abel doesn't really care much and waves him goodbye. He's expecting to meet him later and walks away without bothering him much. To his words, Zeke confirms that he is also determined to meet his brother one day. Fast forwarding to the party, where many are busy discussing the recent awakening of the two purebloods. No one has yet to figure out what Zeke's golden light implies, as it has never happened before. They wonder about his location as he's nowhere to be seen. We do catch a glimpse of Zeke, but he's unwinding in a different room, having barely survived the suffocating social event. Also, he still can't place how he's the only one unaffected. The thing about pureblood awakenings is that they have mana inhibition as a trait. It's supposed to showcase that the Draker family is against dragons, who are known for being the source of mana. Be that as it may, most machines require mana as their necessary fuel. The fact is, a pureblood needs the use of special gloves for the cause. If Zeke is supposed to be a pureblood awakener, then he should have faced problems the moment he took his gloves off. But right now he seems unaffected. This causes him to pop open the status window, which is different in its properties from before. Instead of having mana inhibition, he possesses a unique trait called mana reflection. An intrigued Zeke decides to read deeper into the details of the skill. There he discovers that mana reflection creates a distortion field that is responsible for nullifying nearby mana. It's classified as a skill and doesn't react to the mana lamps as it's not passive in effect. He was identified as a rare class healer before the blessing rite, but now he's considered a unique immortal, which he doesn't understand. Confusion sets in as all of the graduates of the ceremony achieve blue aura with typical awakenings. The only person who was an exception to the case was Reyna, who received a red pure blood awakening. The same case goes for our boy, but then it eventually transitioned into gold. The system told him that it was missing critical information regarding the classification. Zeke wonders if it was considering the bronze statue as its classification terminal during the awakening. The moment the system injected the necessary information inside the terminal, the statue reacted strongly and emitted a red light. Everything is starting to fall into place now. Zeke believes that the statue isn't there to determine if one has awakened or not. Rather, it's supposed to judge their class. Red implies a rare class and gold implies a unique class. Furthermore, the statue is a relic that has been here even before Tarakan's time, the man who founded the Draker family. Class identification doesn't really exist as a concept nowadays, which is why the statue's singular purpose is to distinguish the awakened from those who are not. They have misinterpreted the purpose of the red light as a kind of pure blood awakening, when in reality it means that they've achieved rare class. What's really fascinating is that not even the clan family's head is yet to know about this. Interestingly, Zeke finds that he's acquired 100 karma points to his name. He wonders if he received them during the ceremony and quickly decides to put them to use by purchasing the draconian skill. The system updates with an influx of information after the purchase. He has acquired a whole bunch of beginner skills like Dragon Eyes, Might of the Dragon, and Devour. The first two make total sense to him, but the last one does not, as its only purpose is to help with digestion. The dude really doesn't want to invest his points into something he's uncertain about, so he goes for the Dragon Eyes and Might of the Dragon instead. The second skill is riskier to use as it involves the use of aura, so for now he activates Dragon Eyes to see what's so special. It's a little undermining because Zeke doesn't perceive anything noteworthy or new to his senses in his surroundings. That's until he opens the window to stare at the statue in the garden. The skill amps up his magnification, allowing him to view farther objects from up close. Also, he's granted the ability to view detailed information about the object he's viewing. All kinds of properties regarding the statue's build flood his body with information. It takes a toll on his body and he feels extremely exhausted after using the power. Zeke thinks his powers will be sparingly useful if they have such a heavy drawback. Thankfully, his healing factor kicks in, fixing his exhaustion. What's surprising is that Zeke didn't even input the intention to heal. It just kicked in automatically. Inspecting the system screen, he realizes that all of his class skills have converted into passive abilities and even jumped up a level. The healing factor allows him to repair his body without triggering the activation. It's an excellent version of his previous skill. While it seems like healing is way too OP, it's not something you can consistently spam. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died in the first place. At the same time, the healing factor is infinite in nature. In order to test his evolved skill, he takes a blade and gives his arm a slight cut. Seconds after the injury, the healing factor automatically kicks in, healing the cut without leaving any marks. The usual time to graduate from the academy is 5 years, but a confident Zeke thinks he'll be able to get it done in 2 years. The Draker Academy is the greatest knight academy ever known. Any aspiring knight would sell anything to take their spot inside. Located in the Duchy of Troy, the academy thrives with the spring life each time a new semester comes around. As Zeke walks among the others, he notes how the higher-ranked students are comparably no different from adults. They're just as capable, and if he were to compare these guys to the cradle, then they're nothing more than children from great families. Zeke thinks his entire family is messed up. Among the thriving branch families supporting the Draker family, 3 families are the most prominent and have the influence to be called the Great Families. The first is the Tarun of Strength, which Reyna is a part of. The second family is Zimmons of Wisdom. And lastly, there's the Vardek family of Gold. The children of those 3 families are here, but Zeke couldn't spare a second thought for them. The scene cuts to the high-class dormitory of the Platinum Mansion. This high-class dormitory boasts a training hall, an exquisite library, and all kinds of premium facilities. The best of the best students are supposed to enjoy the luxuries. As for the Pure Blood Awakeners, they're granted an additional privilege of Floor Master. This floor is known as the Platinum Floor. A maid greets our boy's arrival, and he's soon escorted to his assigned floor, where others are waiting. Arriving here, Zeke is a little exhausted to find so many people, despite him being awakened as a pureblood. He's told that Decker is waiting for him in another room. Without wasting time, Zeke goes to meet him to see what's up. The butler has something to show to his master. He surprises him with a premium pair of gloves that he initially received upon awakening. He's already acquired new gloves, but Zeke's got his eye set on a new sword now too. He picks his blade, which the butler supports without concern. The Duchy of Troy is known to be close to the mountain ranges. That's why it's got an abundance of good iron and skilled craftsmen, who prove to be an irreplaceable source of strength for the alumni. Decker wants to search for a craftsman for the young master, but Zeke is fine handling it himself. He wants to see them in person, and requests Decker to set an appointment in advance. The name Galleon Halbert is someone not even Butler has heard of before. He intends to contact this man for an appointment soon. At the same time, he reminds Zeke to review the documents before his first class begins tomorrow. Later that day, Zeke is busy reviewing the notes when he comes up with an interesting observation. The platinum floor is reserved for him, so he could test out his new draconian skills and help them develop. A maid comes to inform the young master that Reyna has sent a dinner invitation to him. Zeke is surprised upon hearing this and decides to pay a visit. He comes around to her floor and finds himself a little stumped because Reyna is out here playing Al Capone or something. She welcomes him and apologizes for the unique dinner setting. Zeke doesn't mind and takes his seat. They first decide to eat and then talk. Observing her from across the table, Zeke can tell that she's utilizing the aura in her lower abdomen even in a setting like this. He wonders if she's set her sights on becoming a purple knight, which might explain why her sword skills have reached their limit. It's a waste of good potential in his eyes. Finished with dinner, Zeke is exhausted and surprised that she ate way more than him. With their appetites satisfied, she wants to get to the meat of the situation. Reyna offers him full support of the Tarun family. Zeke thinks this is some sort of misunderstanding and reminds her that they're both pure-blood awakeners. She fires back by claiming that he's the one who's wrong. As pure-bloods, they do have a bunch of privileges to enjoy, with the platinum floor included in that bundle. However, they also don't receive benefits in terms of growth. Centuries of academic and practical knowledge is reserved in this brilliant academy. Then there are personal instructors to guide you and evolve your abilities. If someone doesn't have either of these things, they'll definitely lag behind. Reyna strongly argues that the support families are critical. She exemplifies Abel Draker, a man who is also a pure blood of the family and the youngest to ever attain the title of a White Knight. At his current level, he's one of the strongest Black Knights, and even he received support from the Zimmons family. While the patriarch of the Tarun family has yet to explain why, his orders are absolute that he wants to extend the Tarun's family's support to Zeke Draker. Reyna reiterates her point, but our boy is in the mood to fuck around with her feelings and calmly says no. This causes her to experience a shock as she just can't fathom how it's a bad deal for him. Getting up from his seat, Zeke turns to leave, claiming that he's actually uninterested in anything like that apart from being a pure-blood awakener. To pay her back for the meal, he has one personal piece of advice to share. Zeke shares that her sword is much too powerful, and he figures that it has to be related to those men behind her. Zeke offers that her greatest strength results from her flexibility of her adaptable body. He advises against attacking her opponents head-on. Instead, she should use her fluid movements to calmly redirect her opponents to land a precise, single attack. Zeke thinks that if she's capable of doing that, she'll inevitably grow much stronger than she already is. Saying that, he parts ways, leaving her frustrated. She wanted to utilize her family's tradition of strength, which is what she's been doing up until now. Still, Reyna can't deny a part of what he just said. She has been endlessly trying to become worthy of her family's name, which influenced her sword style quite a bit. Zeke was able to catch that. While Reyna was young and praised as a genius prodigy, no one offered her any advice. This interaction with him has left her to reevaluate her opinion of Zeke Draker as a person. Skipping ahead to Zeke's monologue, he's reflecting just how powerful he's gotten with his new skills. After all, even an entire night's worth of training couldn't stop him just now. The dude literally has infinite stamina now. He's gonna last longer in bed than the age of the universe. In his previous life, this place was nothing more than hell for him. But with his newly awakened state, it's actually pretty chill now. Zeke is enjoying the peace that can't be bought with money or power. As he's minding his own business, the representative of the Zimmons family approaches him. Owen is the third son of the family, and he's an expert in manipulation. He blackmailed and bullied our boy in his previous life. Interestingly, he also invited Zeke to a dinner invitation only to get rejected in the face. Surprisingly, Owen is acting way too friendly in this life. Zeke realizes what invitation letter he's referring to and releases a snarky remark. Owen questions why he refused to reply, only for Zeke to coldly respond that he doesn't have to give a damn about the fucker's messages. His rude remark just now captures Owen's friend's full attention, who thinks the boy is being overly blunt to a polite invitation. Zeke pulls a "who the fuck are you" card and really couldn't be bothered about knowing him. So he leaves, realizing that this show-off just wants to suck Owen's dick by appearing strong. Shockingly, this bastard has the gall to attack Zeke unannounced. He managed to block the attack despite it being covered in aura manipulation. Durbin Roswell roars his name and claims that he's the mightiest of them all. Yeah, the mightiest refrigerator maybe. The youngest Draker simply laughs at his little speech, as this man isn't even a knight and barely even a cadet. Zeke lunges forth with his lightning-fast speed, smashing this guy's abdomen with a hook that could rival Mike Tyson's. It knocks the fuckface into the ground, while Zeke happily invites the next person from the Simmons family to come and catch some smoke. Owen draws near him and states that he's unimpressed by Zeke's goading of his own strength. The group leaves Zeke to himself, who thinks of them nothing more than a circus crew. Let's explore the intricacies of the Draker Academy for a second. It's split into two classes. The first is the normal class, where one is taught if they're lacking talent. That class is overcome with effort and a disciplined regimen. The second class is the special class, where certain cadets can choose their subjects outside of the basic subjects. In this academy, the top dogs and the elites gather in the special class, which is also why Zeke had his personal expectations of who'd end up here. But none of them seem noteworthy, and they're just the alumni from the Cradle whom he already knows. He even jokes around that it's not a special class but rather a Cradle class. Class is in session, and the instructor at the podium is pleased to introduce someone very special today. This mysterious person was once the commander-in-chief of the Empire 2 decades ago, and the same person responsible for blocking the Empire's invasion with their impeccable strategy. Dean Howard Draker is welcomed in good hearts, the man who runs the show for this academy. Known as the war hero, Howard is worshipped as a symbol of hope and praised as a standard for tactical war. But in reality, the truth is far darker than his fame implies. The information he coincidentally leaked to the enemy for his personal survival helped him luck out of the situation. In short, he's a lucky sellout who survived to relish the glory. Zeke deeply despises him and claims that he's the perpetrator responsible for getting him kicked from the academy the first time around. With nowhere left to go, Zeke wandered aimlessly and lost in the Duchy of Troy. There he was caught by the slave traders and ended up sold to the Southern Cartel. The very existence of this man is rooted in a traumatic memory for our protagonist, and you best be damned he's going to get his revenge on this fat geezer someday. The dean's speech comes to a close and the teacher takes over to begin their classes. The cadets are instructed to head to the arena at once for some indoor training. Inside the training arena, Zeke is baffled that he has to sit through the basics of dragon slaying. After all, in his past life, he couldn't wield aura and wasted 2 whole years when normally it takes the average person 3 months to do it. The instructor welcomes the students, introducing himself as the Rose Knight, Andre Draker. He's in charge of teaching them the basics of dragon slaying. The students are a little underwhelmed because they don't know anything about this guy. The name strikes Zeke's memory. He recalls that Andre isn't a pureblood awakener who still managed to graduate quickly from the academy, and was praised as a valedictorian from Valhalla. He isn't even from the family, but his talent is simply so remarkable that he earned the Draker family's name. This man is the guy your girl tells you not to worry about. Zeke admits that the special classes teachers all vary in levels, but this dude is notorious for his shitty personality. Andre shows them a demonstration by telling them to keep quiet so he can start the class. He has the cadets drawing their swords, preparing for the training. His eye catches Zeke's special sword, which is enormous compared to the others. Zeke doesn't have any trouble demonstrating just how easy it is to wave around for him. Andre's resting bitch face commands him to step foot in the arena. He thinks the boy is being overconfident by picking a sword unfit for his body. Of course, this is just typical teacher talk, and Zeke wanted this to happen, hence his choice to pick the sword. He arrogantly boasts that he could defeat the instructor with the same weapon. It's quite the provocation that shakes Andre. The scene is getting tense, so much so that the system activates a mental defense skill for our boy to withstand the situation. Happy to oblige, Andre prepares to draw his sword to offer a boy a practical experience. But it's just what Zeke wanted. The instructor even lays out a condition for Zeke's victory. He will not only choose to ignore the boy's arrogant words, but also grant him permission to do whatever he wants in his class. The instructor even gives him a leeway, that he'll go easy and won't even use his aura on the cadet. But that's just playing right into Zeke's advantage even more. He's extremely confident in his ability to best Andre since he knows about the man's weakness. However, since his watchful brother is keeping an eye on him, Zeke doesn't want to risk gaining unnecessary attention like last time, so his battle strategy is to cut Andre's uniform just a bit before accepting defeat. The fight begins as Zeke launches an immediate swing against his teacher's neck. However, Andre deflects his strike even at that range, demonstrating the skills of a Blue Knight. The fight's going to be tough, and Zeke knows it. He bounces around and attacks from every direction, only to get deflected by his teacher's quick reaction time. The rest of the cadets are stumped to see the knight's brilliant ability to withstand Zeke's attacks for 30 minutes straight. Interestingly, Andre finds his blade quivering and his body slowly getting exhausted. He can't fathom how the boy is inexhaustibly performing without getting tired. Despite suppressing his powers greatly, the fight is starting to become difficult for him. This only goes to show just how brilliant the average pure-blood awakener of the Draker family is, to the point it is considered unfair to compare them. As for Zeke, he's capitalizing on Andre's shitty stamina against him. As for his aura, a typical Draker's aura cultivation is known for its uniqueness. It should be activated during training and all kinds of daily tasks, even sleeping. It should be indistinguishable from the basic need of breathing. So in this case, since Andre is so used to maintaining his aura, he's uncomfortable and unnaturally weak when suppressing it. That is the one factor helping Zeke get an edge against his instructor. Andre deflects the cadet's blade one more time, but Zeke hasn't given up. He doesn't want to lose like this. His ego demands that his opponent be forced into using aura. Zeke changes his strategy from creating openings to going for a different approach, an approach that will require Andre to use his aura no matter what. In other words, an extreme situation. He flips back to the ground, but only this time he darts ahead with incredible speed. It's the activation of the swift step skill. Andre finds himself overwhelmed by the cadet's lightning-fast movements. Attacking from his blind spot, Zeke activates Critical Strike as if to put everything in this one attack, while Andre is still left questioning how a cadet can deploy such an advanced skill. The second he turns to face Zeke, he puts the faintest amount of aura in his feet, allowing him to evade the attack in quick succession. Without waiting for another second, Andre activates Sky Slice and sends the cadet flying. It was a really powerful attack, so much so that it chips Zeke's sword and injures him enough for his healing factor to jump in. Despite his broken healing factor, he collapses in the arena, while Andre sheaths his sword and turns away frustrated. He officially announces that Zeke is exempt from the class and asks if there's anyone else like him who is willing to give him a try. Since they're all scared shitless from what happened to Zeke, they don't even dare to raise a voice against his fury. From then on, the class resumes for everyone except for our boy, who's chilling in the hospital bed and glazing at his performance against Andre just now. His original plan to cut his uniform was wasted, but instead, he made Andre use his aura, forcing him to acknowledge the kid's abilities. It's a good outcome as his teacher was humbled in the fight. That said, the final attack that Andre used was actually the most basic move of the dragon-slaying arts. The Sky Slice may be a basic technique, but it was massively amplified with the power of a Blue Knight, resulting in a monstrous output. Still, Zeke is glad that he was able to stand his own against a Blue Knight, and he's confident he's at that level thanks to his infinite stamina and healing. But those two things alone won't be enough for a life filled with freedom. He demands true freedom that could only come from overwhelming strength, the kind of power that would make him immune from the strength of his superiors. As he's busy in thought, a drunkard comes around to check on the boy, realizing that this is the youngest son of the Draker family. Our boy is startled seeing the dipshit's face because a drunkard is the last thing you'd expect in a medical ward. Not only was he unable to sense this guy's presence, he also mouthed pretty bad things about the patriarch of the Draker family. Zeke tries to inquire about his identity, but this drunkard is busy injecting himself with more booze. The man is really curious to ask the boy about his shocking regenerative abilities. After all, he just survived a serious internal wound in his body. The system assesses the situation and activates mental defense for him. Zeke refuses to budge because he knows for a fact that nobody is aware of his healing skill at the academy. He feigns ignorance, prompting the man to take serious measures as he attempts to attack the boy. Zeke dodges his palm strike, which is sharp enough to slice the bed. This makes him wonder if this guy is some sort of assassin. Zeke uses the bedsheet to blind the lunatic and senses extreme danger, so much so that he activates every last one of his skills for an all-out offense. Despite being blinded and unaware, the man easily catches the boy's blade and praises the boy's ability to adapt quickly. Zeke rushes backward anxiously and wonders what he means by mercenary. He assumes the mysterious guy might know something about his past. Seeing a Draker like Zeke throw away his sword and prioritize his life, the man believes he's better suited to become a mercenary instead of a knight. Our boy finally understands his words, and the feeling he gets from the mysterious guy makes his doubts certain. The power gap between them is so huge that the guy can easily kill Zeke if he's here for that. The protagonist assumes he's probably the same level as a Red Knight. The man points to his heavy claymore and believes he just picked it up from the basic supply. He wonders why Zeke, with such insane talents, is wasting his potential wielding a weapon like that. The protagonist becomes certain the man might be even stronger, but out of nowhere, Andre appears looking for the mysterious guy. He shocks Zeke and calls out the garden keeper, Dexter. Zeke finds it hard to believe, while Dexter questions how Andre managed to find him out. The knight remembers seeing Dexter at the training room earlier. He orders Zeke to get lost if his injuries are healed already, so our boy awkwardly tries to leave, but Dexter stops him and offers the kid to come to the academy's western greenhouse if he wants to learn something useful. Everyone goes silent for a second, but then Zeke arrogantly declines and leaves the room. Dexter becomes annoyed and feels nostalgic, as Zeke's father had the same arrogant attitude. Since Zeke's not a gullible kid anymore, he quickly catches up and believes if the gardener has the balls to mention Arthur, the patriarch's name, so casually, then he's definitely the person who only took Andre as a student in his entire life. Duke Draker, the Gale Knight. He's also one of the knights capable of using martial force. The crazy man went against a whole kingdom all by himself. The guy suddenly disappeared out of nowhere after becoming the talk of the town, so Zeke was not expecting him to be living a peaceful life at the academy like this. He guesses maybe Andre also came here because of Dexter. He wonders if Dexter got the Duke title because of his overwhelming tenacity or something like that. He recalls hearing a rumor that the crazy man even became a Black Knight just because he's obsessed with the color black. He finds it hard to believe, and even though he's sure the Duke is interested in him right now, Zeke doesn't care about it because he's not after just some light lessons. He's so greedy for power that he wants to at least learn the man's secret move if he's going to become Dexter's disciple. Zeke smiles and decides to change his interest and greed into tenacity. At the Magic Academy, Professor Phanom awkwardly continues teaching the class and asks if anyone has a question. The whole class ends up sleeping out of boredom, which is a bit demotivating for the professor. So, he continues his lecture, but the protagonist raises his hand and questions about the mana energy transfer law the professor just mentioned. Phanom becomes excited and starts acting differently since it's the first time getting a question. He takes his time and explains everything to Zeke. After the class finally ends, the students wonder why they're being taught about magic theory, but the others just call it nap time. Zeke has a completely different opinion about the class because he was able to understand everything with ease. He believes the professor is definitely a capable man. Phanom stops him and expresses his feelings. He's glad he was able to actually explain something to a passionate student after ages. So he offers the protagonist to come and ask about anything without hesitation if he's curious or doesn't understand a concept. He awkwardly shares he's still an alumnus at the Delphoa Magic University, so he has access to a lot of information. This surprises Zeke, as he wasn't expecting the professor to be involved with the Magic University of Delphoa, the nation that gave birth to magic. He takes Phanom's offer, as there's no harm in getting close to a capable mage. He believes mages who have a good grasp on math are usually great thinkers, so it's better to have one as a colleague instead of a stuffy knight. He hopes the professor ends up being useful in the future. As soon as Zeke exits the academy, he spots Dexter and realizes the guy is already running out of patience just after a week. Dexter asks if it's finally over, and before the protagonist says something, he cuts off the kid and starts questioning why he didn't pull up to the greenhouse. Dexter was hoping he would get the hint when the guy mentioned he was ready to teach something useful, but Zeke repeats his words and lets the guy know he's not interested. Dexter becomes annoyed and starts acting like a kid, but Zeke explains he's sure Dexter is no ordinary person. But he's busy with individual training, so it'll be hard. Dexter understands his reasoning, but all of a sudden he takes back his words, and in an instant, he moves behind Zeke. The protagonist gets no time to react and easily gets knocked out by the Gale Knight. After a while, he finally gains consciousness and still finds it hard to believe that he got knocked out so casually. He guesses Dexter was totally fed up after waiting for a whole week. Zeke observes he's already at the western greenhouse. Dexter asks if he finally woke up. Zeke points out this is clear abduction, but the careless man agrees with him and arrogantly reveals he's interested in our boy. Since he's not even trying to hide it anymore, Zeke assumes he has no patience, but he remains persistent and tries escaping using his swift steps because he believes this isn't the right time. But Dexter appears in front of him, surprising the kid. Zeke tries running away once more but miserably fails because Dexter's able to catch up. Zeke doesn't want to be treated so lightly, so he decides to tease the guy and asks why he looks so interesting to Dexter. The man reminds him about his insane healing capabilities. Zeke smiles and finally understands the cause. He challenges the man to force an answer out of him, so Dexter suddenly disappears. Zeke questions what he's up to, and all of a sudden, a sword almost hits him from behind. But he manages to catch it and wonders what Dexter's hoping to achieve. Zeke takes a fighting stance and questions Dexter's actions, so the mysterious man appears and reminds Zeke that he was challenging the guy first. But that seems boring, so they should make a bet. Dexter challenges him to graze even a single piece of his clothing if he wants his wish granted. But with a terrifying expression, the man demands to know everything Zeke is hiding if he ends up losing the challenge. After 3 whole hours of continuous fighting, Dexter begins to question the kid's tenacity. The guy learns Zeke doesn't just have insane stamina and endurance. He's also capable of limitlessly healing and recovering, making him unstoppable. The protagonist crawls back up, and without wasting a second, he activates his healing skills and infinite stamina, which allows him to keep going all day long. But he admits even such skills won't help him achieve victory, so he recalls his Might of the Dragon skill, which seemed a bit too dangerous, so he never used it. Zeke believes it'll be fine using such a skill against a Black Knight. His gaze instantly changes as he becomes ready to attack once more and continue the fight. Dexter looks at his cold eyes and becomes excited, as this is how a fight should go. Our boy starts emitting a purple aura and activates his swift steps to rush forward so he can land an attack. But Dexter is able to see through his old attacks. He admits the kid is faster than before, but remembers he is nothing compared to some of the people he fought in his past. However, he sees the insane spite in the protagonist's eyes, which surpasses any kind of tenacity. The guy falls in love with it and decides to use a bit of his aura, but all of a sudden, our boy activates the might of the dragon and catches him off guard. Dexter manages to break his sword and push him back, but he becomes confused and questions what happened. He uses the dust around him to keep himself hidden, and wonders if Zeke used a technique to somehow block his vision. He doubts our boy can find him with such a thick screen of dust, but with the use of dragon eyes, the protagonist is able to locate his presence and tries attacking from behind. He manages to finally land an attack, but the Black Knight instantly disappears, shocking the protagonist. He believes it's that Duke's secret technique that allows him to move instantly, causing a gust. He finally understands why Dexter is known as the Gale Knight. But while he's contemplating, the man appears behind him, and without much effort, he moves in and calls it a draw before completely wrecking the protagonist and ending the fight. The system shows the built-up fatigue has surpassed the usual limits because of his excessive use of skills, so his consciousness is going to be forcefully shut down for his own safety. Zeke begins losing his vision. He tries getting up but fails to do anything at all. After a few hours, he regains consciousness and finds himself in his own room. Our boy assumes the Duke probably brought him here. He regrets losing but believes this much is expected of the Black Knight. Despite throwing whatever he had, he still lost. Zeke remembers using the same old attack pattern again and again in hopes of throwing his guard down, and then, as soon as he got an opportunity, he instantly changed, using the might of the dragon and his dragon eyes to finally land an attack. But all of his efforts were still not enough. He's sure the skill Dexter used at the end was his secret move. Zeke regrets getting knocked out just because he abused the draconian skills, but he's glad he got to see the man's secret move at least. The absurd speed Dexter used with his incredibly trained body, it is the same move that allowed Andre to achieve such a high rank despite having weak stamina. Zeke regrets losing the opportunity as he wanted to learn it badly, but he still feels somewhat satisfied. He is sure the skill Might of the Dragon, which was able to force even a Black Knight to hesitate, is surely going to wreck any small fries if they're ever exposed to it. Zeke receives a message from the system. He checks everything and learns his swift steps leveled up. His soul was able to develop, and along with that, his system functions are also available now, so he can unlock them anytime using his karma points. He becomes surprised and sees options to unlock a minimap, an inventory, and a quest book with enough karma points. Seeing a bunch of things pop up, Zeke takes his time and understands what he's looking at. He buys the inventory first, so the system helps him understand he can store items in it and pull them out just by thinking about the name or shape. It explains everything, so the protagonist selects his sword as an item to store. Since he can activate it just by a thought, he enchants it, saving it with the sword in his hand. The claymore suddenly vanishes and appears inside the inventory window. He understands the system instructions now and tries thinking about his sword to pull it out. The claymore instantly appears in his hands, exceeding his expectations, as he thought it was just a subspace for storage. He recalls trying to find a good place to store the artifact he had in his past life. He learns he can easily increase the storage as well just by using karma points, and the whole function is just a low-rank administrator skill. The protagonist is surprised and wonders what he's going to unlock once he reaches the high-rank administrator function. He understands karma points are extremely precious, so it's going to be dumb using them without properly thinking. He decides to make a few changes in his plans, but as he's trying to think, Dexter appears and asks for permission to come inside. Zeke gets a bit surprised but lets him in. The butler shares there is a message for our boy. The man said Zeke will understand if he shares it as from the garden keeper Dexter. Our boy smiles and realizes his efforts were not a total waste as he reads the invitation. Dexter assures him to come whenever he's ready to challenge again. He remembers the man called it a draw before wrecking him for this reason. He gets excited since he still has the awesome opportunity. The butler shares another thing, that he managed to locate the blacksmith our boy mentioned. Zeke asks about the appointment, but the butler awkwardly shares it didn't go as planned because the blacksmith refused any appointments. Zeke gets shocked but learns the guy stopped forging weapons now. The next day, Zeke reaches the blacksmith shop he used to visit in his past life. He finds the name a bit funny and enters the shop. He asks if anyone's inside. In his past life, the protagonist recalls wielding a sword known as the Radiance of Graham. It was a real masterpiece forged by Galleon, who called it a payment in exchange for saving his life. He believes Galleon deserves the grand title Blacksmith of the Soul, because rumors have it that he's able to read the souls of his clients before forging a weapon for them. Zeke remembers that the blacksmith didn't disappoint him in his past life, and forged a weapon with an ability he needed the most. The sword was capable of replacing ether with aura. Galleon used to be the greatest blacksmith on the entire continent, but Zeke feels disappointed finding him in such a drunken state. Galleon notices the kid and orders him to get lost, saying it's not a shop for teens. Zeke is aware the guy had a horrible attitude, but he wasn't expecting this kind of moody temperament. He wonders what happened before Galleon met our boy in his past life. Without hesitation, Zeke throws a bucket of water on the drunk guy. Zeke arrogantly smiles and asks if he finally woke up. He demands an answer for the rejection earlier. Galleon comes back to his senses and recognizes Zeke Draker. He instantly bows down and apologizes for his disrespect. He begins trembling in fear and continues to repeat his apology, but believes a crappy blacksmith like him doubts he's capable of making anything good for others when he can't even make what he himself wants. So he has stopped taking commissions for a while. Zeke is a bit surprised to see even a famous blacksmith like him had a shitty phase. He suddenly recalls the guy was already an incredible blacksmith back when he met Galleon. He never mentioned anything about his life, probably because he felt too embarrassed to share his failures. But Zeke doesn't have time to wait around. Galleon starts going crazy because of his existential crisis, but Zeke snaps him out of it. The insecure guy apologizes for his disrespectful behavior, but Zeke assures him it's nothing and demands to see the weapons he failed to properly forge. While the blacksmith guides him to the back, the protagonist realizes he has no other choice but to help the depressed guy find the right path. As they reach the backyard, Galleon apologizes for the mess, but Zeke assures him not to worry, as it looks cool. Galleon thanks him, so Zeke begins looking around. While he observes the swords, Galleon warns him to be careful because they're all still sharp. Our boy continues checking around and finds out they're not failures at all, but have the same quality as what he used to forge when he was called the best in the entire continent. Zeke's dragon eyes help him see through everything. He notices something and asks the guy if he has any issues with his brazier. Galleon is surprised he knew, but Zeke orders him to just answer. He even points out that the guy goes through smelting using his own methods. He's able to see Galleon mixes multiple kinds of metals to create a lighter but stronger material. But Zeke easily breaks one of his failed swords and calls the durability pathetic. He explains that in such cases, the real issue is that many impurities haven't been properly removed while forging the sword. Galleon feels shocked to see Zeke didn't just see through his whole forging method instantly. He even called out all the major issues and causes with no effort. Galleon gets an idea and calls Zeke. He's sure it might come out as weird, but he wants to make a request. Inside the shop, Zeke asks what he's up to. The blacksmith shows him a blueprint and reveals all the secrets without hesitation. Zeke remembers it's the same blueprint the guy revealed in his past life, known as the blueprint of the magic brazier. Galleon didn't want to hide his secrets from someone who saved his life, so he revealed the blueprint. He does the same this time. Zeke believes the smelting method will become flawless with this. Galleon expected our boy to recognize it, but Zeke wonders why he's not working on it even though he has the blueprint. Galleon explains he's still missing the most important part, but the Magic Tower's commission fee is 10,000 gold coins. Even a normal family only spends 10 golds monthly. It's 10 times more than that. Our boy finally understands why it took him a good 10 years to become successful. He admits the price is totally insane. Galleon knows this is going to sound pretty absurd, but since the protagonist is a Draker and a pure-blooded awakener, he hopes Zeke can help him get his hands on the brazier. In return, he's willing to do any and all commissions for free as long as he is alive. Zeke contemplates and finds the request almost impossible because he's not the family's guardian knight, so there's no way he can gather an absurd amount like that, even as a pure blood. He needs Graham, the Sword of Radiance, so he thinks of a solution. Zeke knows it's an issue regarding the mana energy laws, so all of a sudden, he gets an amazing idea and accepts the request. Zeke takes the blueprint, but Galleon still finds it hard to believe. So, our boy assures him he knows a mage who's willing to help, so he will let Graham know if something works. Before leaving, Zeke orders him to stop drinking, but the guy gets down on his knees and grabs our boy's leg. He bursts into tears and promises to serve the protagonist for his entire life if this works. He continues to show his gratitude while Zeke tries leaving the workshop. At the Draker Academy's professorial research building, Zeke finds it absurd and wonders why the Mage Tower scumbags have the fee so high, even though the task itself looks fairly easy. He remembers Phantom's major was related to this, so he tries recalling the guy's research lab. As he continues to look for it, he notices something happening in an alley. A kid gets his ass wrecked by a few bullies. He tries apologizing with tears in his eyes. The protagonist suddenly recalls the same thing used to happen in his past life. He grits his teeth in frustration and decides to check the alley. Leon calls the poor kid complete trash and continues beating him up. He lets out the frustration and anger he has for Zeke on the poor victim instead. Leon doesn't admit his defeat and calls it all bullshit while he stomps his victim's head onto the ground. Leon thinks his defeat couldn't be helped because of the surprise attack, but he calls it pure luck and doesn't believe Zeke has the right to be called a pure-blooded awakener for it. As soon as Zeke appears and speaks up, Leon's expression instantly changes. The protagonist arrogantly smiles but suddenly becomes serious, and with terrifyingly cold eyes, he orders the bullies to get on their knees if they love their life. Leon calls him out for his arrogance and doubts he actually went through any real pureblood awakening, but the protagonist shuts him up and terrifyingly orders him to bow down, or else he's done. His words send chills down Leon's spine. He becomes scared and starts sweating anxiously, but the bully wonders why he's feeling such insane pressure, even though Zeke was completely insignificant just a few months ago. Leon grits his teeth in anger and frustratingly calls him an inferior guy. He orders his goons to rush and attack the protagonist at once, but Zeke remains unfazed despite seeing a punch coming. He warns them once more and easily dodges the punch. Our boy wrecks the first guy, moves forward, and defeats another. Zeke grabs the kid flying at him and throws him back. With ease, he destroys the whole gang instantly. While watching the whole shit show, Leon sweats anxiously, and it's hard for him to believe this is the same Zeke he knew. The protagonist approaches him and arrogantly assures the wimpy guy not to worry, as it's going to hurt just for a second. Leon pulls out his sword in fear and orders the protagonist to stay away, or else he's going to get injured. Zeke reminds him what it means to pull out a weapon in the training area. The wimp sweats anxiously and becomes speechless, just to save himself from the murderous intent of Leon, who pulled out his sword outside the holy training ground. Zeke announces that he's going to fight back in the name of honor. He pulls out his sword as well and makes it clear that their battle will only end once one of them finally dies. Whoever drew his sword first takes the responsibility for whatever's going to happen, and the opponent is not going to be at fault despite the outcome. Zeke turns Liam, the beat-up goon, into their witness and then starts the fight, but the wimpy bully stops him and apologizes. Leon pisses his pants as well and begs the protagonist to let him go this once. Our boy recalls what happened in his past life, so he calls Leon a trashy scumbag and, in a flash, cuts the bully's ear as payment for what he did. Leon starts screaming in pain, but the merciless protagonist warns him to never attach it back, or else he's going to get his head chopped off the next time they encounter each other. The victim calls Zeke and asks why he went out of his way to save the guy. Our boy brushes it off since he wasn't helping anyone. He was just helping himself. While leaving, he wonders if Galleon made him change, as he almost said something embarrassing. He finally finds the professor and asks if it's doable. Phantom gives him a straightforward answer and reveals it's possible. Zeke leaves it up to him, but the guy stops our boy and requests him to properly listen to what he has to say. Phantom explains the overall composition is not hard, but the real issue is its core that's required for power output. The core is said to be the heart of the machine, but since this circuit has a lot of weird restrictions, it might look small but needs a lot of energy. They also have to manipulate the output on time. Zeke understands everything and asks if there's a way to make it. The professor explains they have two options. He can maybe make a few changes in the design because of the core's condition, but he disappointingly mentions such a task is going to take a whole decade or maybe 15 years. Zeke is shocked by this, but the professor repeats it's going to take an insane amount of time. He continues and explains the second method will help them completely avoid redoing the core's design by just using a different material. He admits this method will help them save so much time, but the material they need for it is a high-compression mana stone. Zeke finds it absurd and gets up as soon as he hears about it. He remembers it's an insanely rare ancient artifact that no one can replicate even with modern technology. Phantom calls him correct and reminds him finding such materials in a ruin is even harder. To get their hands on a stone that will work with their original design, it's going to cost them 3,000 gold. Zeke becomes speechless at first. His frustration is expected, as he might get kicked out if someone catches on and learns he's not an aura user. 15 years is just too long, but he scratches his head and admits he can't manage 3,000 gold coins either. It's hard for him to admit defeat and just forget about the blacksmith. Almost everyone believes he's capable of using aura because of the event during the blessing rite, but the truth is, it was just a fake reaction he was able to show using his ether and healing abilities. He still can't change the fact that he's not capable of using aura. Ether is a power normal humans can't control. Besides the skill Spirit of the Soul, he can't use any sword skills that involve aura, but even with that skill, the only thing he can manage is reinforcing the sword and swinging it around. Compared to Ether, aura is a lot easier to use, so he has to somehow get his hands on Gram, the Sword of Radiance. Zeke remains frustrated and keeps thinking about the Mana Stone to somehow find a solution. Phantom expresses his astonishment and believes whoever came up with the blueprints is probably incredible. He calls it an efficient design and believes even among the Golden Age relics, it's rare for someone to create this. Zeke listens to his words and suddenly gets an idea. He gets up and orders the professor to handle the design until he comes back. The confused professor asks if Zeke wants him to redo the design and spend 15 years of his life, but Zeke clarifies he's going to bring one. He confidently shares he knows how to get his hands on a high-compression mana stone. The Golden Age, the Liberation War began so humanity could finally escape the rule of dragons. It ended once the evil dragon Bahamut died by the hands of Terrakin Draker. Humanity finally got peace for a whole century, but during that time, the ancient relics discovered inside the dragon's lair became the remnants of the Age of the Hero King, the prime age of magic. All of these relics surpassed whatever humans could create. Among them was the high-compression mana stone. It had enough energy to sustain a whole village's mana needs easily, a relic from the hero's era. Our boy reaches the Draker Academy Central Library. Even though no one uses it anymore, the Central Library is still being maintained because everyone believes the hero Terrakin Draker established it himself. Decades ago, when the record rooms were being expanded, multiple relics from the Golden Age were discovered. The Magic Tower and the Archmage of Nirvana didn't waste any time getting involved. During those months, many relics from the hero's era were found, and rumors about them spread through the whole continent instantly. Zeke remembers that's what happened in his past life. He enters the library and believes the relics still haven't been discovered by anyone. He can try all day but doubts he'll find them so easily, so he uses his dragon eyes and roams through the whole library. He finally notices a weird tile, so he taps it to confirm if something's behind it or not. He enables the soul of the spirit and remembers it's the only use for ether his master taught him. Ether is capable of materializing, so the user can apply any kind of properties like cut to use it in different situations. It still has a lot of cons and drawbacks. Ether can't be used unless the user expends a large amount of it to do anything at all. He starts feeling fatigued right after using the technique, but without wasting any time, he enters through the tile. Inside a cave, he lights a fire and remembers the news in his past life never mentioned it was this deep. He suddenly hears something, even though he remembers the ruins were discovered at least a decade later. He wonders if someone already uncovered it, but he takes a peek and notices skeletons with shovels and pickaxes in their hands. He uses his dragon eye to confirm they're not made by a lich, so he decides to enable critical strike and instantly moves forward to destroy them. He receives 2 karma points for defeating them. Zeke smiles and guesses he completely forgot about karma points because he was too focused on getting his hands on the artifact. He suddenly makes a wicked face and believes it is the perfect opportunity to farm karma points. He continues moving forward and wrecks 20 more skeletons for karma points. The system shows all the options he has, so he decides to look through whatever he can buy. After seeing the karma point requirements, he learns that besides a mini-map, nothing's affordable right now, so he quickly buys it. The system shows him his exact location. He finds it similar to a magic map. Something catches his attention, so he wonders what it is. The mini-map becomes 3D instantly. Zeke is amazed by it, but finds out only a single room has a different color. The system shows it's a storage room, so if he says yes, it'll provide directions for it. Zeke is shocked as he remembers the search party took multiple days to find the storage room, but he was able to discover it without any effort. The system gives him the best route for it, which is hard for Zeke to believe, as there's no way he will get lost with such a useful skill. He finally reaches his destination but finds a huge door in front of him. He wonders what he's supposed to do now since the door is not going to open up with just a simple push. He tries it anyway, but a weird magic repels his hand. He guesses this is why the Archmage of Nirvana and the Magic Tower were involved. He looks at his burning glove and believes he would have lost a hand back there. He doubts he can open it, so he asks the system. It replies and connects with the security device because of his request. The system tries but fails, so it activates the manual device instead. Zeke gets shocked and asks to confirm if it really just replied back. The system answers positively, which leaves him stunned. He decides to use it and demands an answer for why he got regressed. The system has nothing to say, so he questions the administrator system. The system has no answer again, so he throws another question and asks who developed the system. He gets no answer once more, so he becomes frustrated and gives up. Zeke orders it to just open the door, so the system confirms his request and opens the door of the Dragonslayer's storage room. Zeke feels astonished as soon as he lays eyes on the chests inside the room. Just like what happened in his past life, all the chests are filled with valuable relics and treasures. Obtaining any of them in ruins is nothing more than a miracle. He goes through all the chests and finally finds the compression mana stones. He finds 4, so he uses a karma point to expand his inventory and keep one. He doesn't have enough storage, so Zeke decides to someday return once he can take everything with him. He thinks it's enough, but as soon as he's about to leave, our protagonist gets a weird, ominous feeling. So he looks back and, out of nowhere, multiple magic circles appear around him and teleport him somewhere else. The magic circle that suddenly surrounded Zeke Draker's body made him falter. Upon opening his eyes, he noticed that his surroundings had changed, so he hurriedly asked the system where he was. It promptly replied that he was currently in the home of the Dragonslayer. In his past life, he had never heard of such a room filled with coffins in the newsletter. Opening the mini-map, he discovered that he was not far from the previous room he was in. But no matter how he looks at it, there isn't any path connecting to the home of the Dragonslayer. If that's the case, there's a strong possibility that this is a hidden area that's never been discovered or documented before. Deciding to make the most of the bizarre situation, he ran to one of the coffins and opened its concrete lid. Lying inside was a medieval armor laid to rest. According to the system, it's a Dragonslayer exclusive equipment. Zeke grabbed the armor and noticed the wear and tear all over its surface. Upon closer inspection, he determined that this Dragonslayer equipment is different from armors hailing from the Golden Age. On its back, he found some sort of circular hole. Connecting the dots, he reckoned that this hole must be connected to the loot he just retrieved a minute ago. Zeke accessed his storage and summoned one of the high-compression mana stones. He can't afford to let such an interesting opportunity pass by. As soon as he inserted the ancient relic, the system notified him of the successful installation of the mana battery in the Dragonslayer equipment. The entire armor set lit up as it activates. Seeing this, Zeke smiled in anticipation. This discovery could be huge. A second later, the armor started tweaking out like a crackhead. His optimistic anticipation quickly turned to frightened surprise. The whole armor set exploded, filling the room with smoke. According to the system, an overload caused an equipment failure, stopping the activation. It even warned him of the imminent explosion, but the warning was a tad bit too slow. The system apologized for the late notice. Thankfully, it didn't cause much harm. At least he had confirmed that the high-compression mana stones were the energy source for these ancient armors. He could not help but wonder just what sort of features this armor had to require such a large capacity energy source. Zeke made a mental note to ask Professor Fannin about the matter as soon as he got out. For now, he decided to roam around the strange room to keep searching. Aside from the room filled with strange coffins, the other rooms were empty. Eventually, he reached the last room. Like the ones that he searched for beforehand, it was a huge and empty space. That was until he saw a glass cube situated in the middle of the room. A system prompt appeared before his eyes, and his eyes almost bulged out of their sockets. He started sweating. All he can think of is how batshit crazy Tarakan Draker really was. The cube in the last room was none other than the Founder's legacy. It is the heart of the cursed light dragon, Bahamut. Who would have thought that his ancestor would leave the heart of the dragon he had slain as a dying gift to his descendants? This certainly explains the ominous feeling Zeke felt when he entered the storage room. But compared to the dark presence from before, the heart of Bahamut is emitting something different. As soon as the system informed him that the heart of the cursed light dragon was reacting to his presence, Zeke felt the dark presence surround him. He heard a voice inside his head, a voice filled with vitriol telling him that he had no other choice. A voice screaming that he should kill them all. Before his mind was totally consumed by the dark presence, his indomitable mental defense kicked in. Snapping out of the brief trance, he felt a sharp pain in his head. For a brief moment, something overtook his mind. Its presence still lingered in his body, turning one of his eyes pitch black. Feeling the gravity of the situation, he felt fearful of the cube housing the dragon's heart. Still reeling from almost getting possessed, the system gave him an urgent quest called Tarakan Draker's Test. He must defeat the strong curse ingrained in Bahamut's heart. The dark presence flared up once more, and when his indomitable mental defense tried to cleanse the effects, the reliable class skills activation failed for the first time. With that, the overpowering murderous thoughts consumed his brain. The voice telling him to kill them all became louder and more powerful than ever. Both of his eyes turned black as the voice demanded to be accepted. If he does accept, it promises that he will be free. Through sheer willpower, Zeke regained a semblance of control and smashed his head against the glass cube as hard as he could. The pain allowed him to clear his mind. He smiled as blood dripped all over his face. Zeke is not a fan of that annoying and murderous mumbling at all. This dumbass voice swore to give him freedom, but he firmly believes that freedom is not given. Freedom is won. The glass cube shattered into a million pieces as he successfully overcomes the Light Dragon's curse, completing the urgent quest. As a reward, he has been granted ownership over Tarakan Draker's dying gift. The mental fatigue quickly caught up with him. If he didn't have the willpower after his skill failed, the situation could have been a lot worse. His body sensed the damage and triggered his healing factor and infinite stamina to recover. With that, the absorption process for the heart of the cursed light dragon, Bahamut, has started. He looked up to see the heart shining with vigorous light as it floated over to his chest. A domineering power filled his flesh and bones, causing unimaginable agony. As far as he can tell, a pure and dense source of mana he had never encountered before is starting to flow into every cell in his body. This is bad news for someone like him who doesn't have a single circle to properly accept such an intense torrent of mana. Without a place to be stored, All that mana is overwhelming and destroying his body in the most unbearable manner. Zeke knows he has to do something, anything, or this process could be his end. With a skillful sleight of hand, he summoned the purple ether. Using the spirit of the soul, he created a mini black hole to seal the unimaginable quantity of mana. With an extremely limited array of skills in his arsenal, he reckoned that using ether was his only hope. Zeke gritted his teeth as he poured all of his concentration to maintain the ether hole seal in his hands. This eventually caused a massive explosion of magic. With him as the epicenter, the entire room was filled with thundering smoke. The explosion opened a massive crater. Fortunately, Zeke is still in one piece. All the nerve endings in his body are screaming with torturous pain. As soon as the pain started subsiding, he sighed in relief. It was tough, but he managed to make it out alive. His uniform was torn up, and on his chest appeared the mark of Bahamut. The heart inside the shattered glass cube had vanished. Bahamut's mana was no joke. It's a miracle that he survived, thanks to his quick thinking. From the shattered remains of the cube, he saw the reflection of the mark on his chest. It seems like the sealing of Bahamut's rampaging mana yielded some surprising results. Finally, the system notified him of the successful absorption of the cursed light dragon's heart. The absorbed mana has drastically changed his body. His constitution has been changed from ordinary to divine. Upon detection of a power that he can't control as of yet, the system compressed and sealed 95% of its force. As the inheritor of the ancestors' legacy, he has obtained the right to open Terrakin Draker's secure library. The beginner quest book has been unlocked, along with the tutorial for the low-level administrator. Zeke scratched his head. A divine body, Terrakin's library, some sort of tutorial. He has no clue what the hell all these things are. Still confused, he dismissed all the prompts except for one. It looks like the first Dragonslayer was feeling generous in his deathbed all those centuries ago. A prompt asking him if he would like to open Terrakin Draker's other dying gift appeared before his eyes. Just when he thought he couldn't be more surprised, Zeke finally laid his eyes upon Terrakin's second gift. Upon finishing his brush with death in that forsaken room, Zeke made his way back to the Platinum Mansion. He stored the treasures he looted in a secure spot while his eyes were fixated on the system prompt in front of him. His title has changed to the one who received the blessing of the ancient dragon, the inheritor of Terrakin Draker. He gained the authority of dragon control and the divine body constitution. Among the new additions in his arsenal, he was most curious about the draconian skill called incantation. This locked skill will fill his words with power. He gained a lot after that close call with the afterlife, but he's still too weak to fully utilize some of the rewards. Draconic control gives him control over Dragonkin. Dragons under his control can be summoned and will follow his orders unconditionally. As for the divine body, it will allow him to perform at the highest level. His rate of learning for combat and the transfer rate of ether within his body have increased. The descriptions aren't really helping him grasp the whole picture, so maybe some practical tests would. Aside from the ancestor's second dying gift, there's another window related to Terrakin. While he has been granted access to Terrakin Draker's secure library, an information update is still needed. As helpful as ever, the system offered to mark the location where he could obtain the update on his minimap. Zeke is not happy with the extra work, but it can't be helped. Much to his surprise, he recognized the location marked on his minimap. From the appearance of the layout, it looked like Valhalla. You see, Valhalla is the most prestigious knight training institution out there. Individuals other than administrators are unable to view, let alone enter, that area. As he is right now, even Zeke would have trouble entering such a place. To make matters worse, he wasn't even planning on joining the institution in this life. But if something related to Terrakin's dying gift can be found there, it might be worth adjusting his plans. It seems like fate is pushing him to keep being a part of this damned family. The next thing he parsed through is the beginner quest book. The tutorial for low-level administrators will soon start. Upon completion, he will be given a quest to boost his growth. With quests come rewards. Zeke likened this quest system to the missions from an adventurer's guild or mercenary assignments. Curious, he asked the system what the tutorial entailed. Without giving him any time to respond, the start of the quest was automatically triggered. His surroundings started to shift. It was as if reality itself was changing before his eyes. A few seconds later, he found himself in what appeared to be a separate dimension. Grid lines appeared below his feet, and endless darkness surrounded him. The young man remained calm. He looked around to get an idea of where he was. It seems like he has been teleported like before. Being transported against his will twice in a day is crazy. But it feels a little different this time. Instead of a physical plane, it feels like the entire area has shifted. It's like he was rendered in a completely different dimension. Without warning, he felt a hostile presence charging from behind. Turning around, he saw orcs lunging at him with their spiked clubs. Finally, the system explained that for the tutorial quest, he must defeat the monsters within 60 minutes using 2 or more different skills. Upon completion, he will be rewarded with points and system store unlock. While still in thought, his battle senses kicked in, and a sword materialized in his hand. It seems like this tutorial is creating situations where he can take advantage of the system. It would have been nice if he had this feature before. As 3 orcs swung at him from 3 different angles, Zeke vanished in an instant. The attacks caused the entire tutorial area to ripple. With quick succession, he activated swift steps and continuous slash to evade and counter appropriately. These types of monsters are no longer a threat to him. He can simply dice their body up without exerting much effort. He noticed that the claymore he'd been using felt light as a feather. This boost in raw strength must be one of the effects of having a divine body constitution. He reckoned that with a stronger physical form, he should be able to easily defeat a purple knight now. After one-shotting the tutorial orcs, he returned to where he was before as the separate dimension dissipated. He wondered if that was just an illusion, even though it felt incredibly real. Aside from the completion of the tutorial, he gained a critical bonus and a time bonus. All in all, his quest reward amounted to an easy 40-point gain and access to the shop category. He was extremely pleased to find out that he can now buy items through the system. Zeke hurriedly opened the shop tab and saw a bunch of amazing items for sale. Among the wares were the giant's flesh, the breath of a flame giant, and many more. Every item listed is a rare relic that costs a fortune to buy in the market. Maybe he can use this tab to make a killing by reselling the items. Aside from buying, he can also sell items in his possession within the inventory. His training claymore can't be sold, but the elven dagger is priced at 4 points. By the looks of it, the shop only accepts ancient relics. His elven dagger can be sold for an easy 100 gold pieces in an auction, yet it's only worth 4 points for the system. He decided to not sell anything unless he's really desperate for points. With that, he exited his personal training room to call it a day. A lot has happened within the past 24 hours, so it looks like he'll get a good night's sleep tonight. The very next day, Zeke headed for the Draker Academy's research center to meet Professor Fannin. The magic professor couldn't believe that this kid really managed to find a high-compression mana stone within a single day. When asked how he obtained the stone, Zeke refused to explain as it would be too complicated to do so. He hadn't even finished the tea in his cup, and Professor Fannin had already finished tweaking the power source. The magic nerd really is incredible at his job. Even if the professor tried to hide it, Zeke could sense that he was feeling suspicious. Every time a high-compression mana stone is found within the continent, they are registered in a variety of ancient texts. It's used to keep track and manage the ownership of such expensive mana stones. By checking the registration number, the current owner and the location where it was found can be determined. However, the mana stones in Zeke's possession are unregistered. No matter how hard you look, it won't be listed on the Central Continent's registration encyclopedia. Professor Fannin's valid skepticism instead of blind belief is valuable. His judgment and skill are the real deal. Zeke reckoned that such a talented person should not rot in a place where he won't be recognized. Finally, the professor tried activating the design, leading us back to Papnir's breath. Upon completing the design, they handed the apparatus to the blacksmith of the soul, Gallion Halbert. Zeke and Professor Fannin watched the master blacksmith at work. His workshop shined with various intricately constructed magic circles. The look of pure joy on Gallion's face now that he can finally realize his dream of making weapons up to his standards has come true is infectious. Zeke and Fannin are witnessing history in the making. After the successful demonstration, Professor Fannin bade them farewell to attend a lecture. Gallion is filled with gratitude for Zeke's help. He thought he would never get to see a completed magic brazier in his lifetime, but making a deal with the young man was the best thing he had ever done. Since Zeke lived up to his part of the agreement, it's time for Gallion to do the same for him. Of course, the blacksmith is eager to return the favor. Zeke pulled a material out of his bag and presented it to Gallion. One look and the blacksmith immediately knew what he was holding. Inside the lavish case was a dragon's fang. Among the many rewards of inheriting Tarakan's will is Bahamut's sharpest fang. The blacksmithing maniac salivated at the sight of such a big dragon's fang in pristine condition. Tarakan Draker's second dying gift really was the perfect reward. From the heart to the fangs, that ancestor of his must have really loved collecting priceless stuff. Suddenly, Gallion started trembling. Tears and snot flowed down his face, confusing Zeke. He made the magic brazier a reality, and now he's giving this humble craftsman a chance to forge a weapon made with dragon's fang. Gallion vowed to thank him by making a weapon that would exceed his every expectation. The blacksmith of the soul swore upon his name to create a blade worthy of Zeke, even if it cost his life. Those words were oddly familiar. It was the same vow he had sworn upon in the previous life. Even at Zeke's second chance in life, Gallion is still the same sincere idiot. That fact made Zeke a little emotional inside. Exiting Papnir's breath and leaving the crafting to the expert, Zeke looked forward to what blade Gallion would forge for him. With the best blacksmith in the continent cooking, he'll surely get something out of this world. After the trip at the forge, Zeke headed straight to his room in the Platinum Mansion. He went through a lot just to secure a weapon, and now he can finally chill. It had been a week since his duel with Duke when he received the note saying he should swing by again for round 2. Just as he was thinking that the unhinged gardener would inevitably do something sooner or later, he felt a familiar presence sneak into his room. Standing behind him was Duke Draker, and he looked pissed that Zeke did not take up his invitation. The eccentric knight looked at him with rage, asking for an explanation while emanating blatant bloodlust. By the looks of it, he really wants to kill Zeke right now. Deciding to play with the old knight's emotions, he insisted that he had no intentions of challenging him again. Duke Draker closed the distance between the two of them in a split second and demanded to hear the truth. Zeke struggled to free himself from Duke's grasp. Before he could make a move, the crazy bastard threw him out of the open window. Caught off guard, Zeke felt his body falling victim to gravity. His room is situated on the higher floors of the mansion, so falling was undoubtedly dangerous. At this height, he might just die before his passive heal could kick in. Panicking, he tried to grab onto the edge of the balcony. Before he could grab hold of the ledge, Duke's hand gripped him by the throat with excessive force. The old knight refuses to believe that the kid does not know what he really meant by that letter. Zeke kept on avoiding him on purpose. First in the treatment room, and this time too. It's almost as if he's deliberately irritating Duke. When he was done with his games, Duke gave him 5 seconds to spill the beans and tell the truth instead of horsing around. Zeke smiled and argued that Duke hadn't even revealed his true identity to him, still insisting that he was just a gardener. Yet here he is, demanding honesty. As soon as he saw the absence of fear in the young man's eyes despite the countdown, Gardenkeeper Dexter loosened his grip and smiled. The old knight threw him back inside the room like a rag doll bouncing on the floor. It wrecked the room, but Zeke's sturdy body didn't sustain any serious damage. Gardenkeeper Dexter admitted that Zeke had a point. He offered his hand to help the young man get back up and confessed that he was once a Black Knight of Draker. Zeke feigned surprise even though he already knew the man's identity from putting together the information he had been previously given. He started acting his ass off and wholeheartedly apologized for disrespecting an esteemed member of the family and an honorable Black Knight. Still skeptical, Duke asked if this was Zeke's plan all along. The young man continued to shamelessly play dumb. Taking advantage of this rare chance, Zeke asked why Lord Duke calls himself a former Black Knight. Refusing to elaborate, the old knight just asserted that he no longer carries the title. While it's common knowledge that one can rise through the ranks, Zeke didn't know that one could drop down too. Still refusing to play along with his incessant questions, Duke put his foot down and changed the topic. Zeke noticed the old knight's trembling hand and dropped his personal inquiries. Since Lord Duke was honest enough to reveal his real identity, Zeke decided to also share the truth. He got on his knees and confessed that he already knew of Duke's identity, and that he was deliberately trying to bother Duke to become an official apprentice. Surprisingly, the old knight smiled, seemingly amused by the young man's boldness. For that, the Gale Knight finally decided to accept him as an official apprentice. Zeke was shocked that securing a powerful teacher would be that easy. He thought he would have to go through more hoops. He reckoned that he better accept the offer before this fickle old man changes his mind. Resolutely bowing before Duke Draker, he formally stated his intention to become an apprentice to the Knight of Knights. He swore to bring honor upon his master's name, to follow his master's orders to gain wisdom and power. Duke was quite surprised that the kid knew of the apprentice's vow, which most of the new generation had forgotten. Zeke added that culture is a necessary virtue of a knight. However, he wanted to ask his new master one more thing. Duke is not comfortable being called a master, but he honored the kid's request. Zeke then asked what made Duke accept him as an apprentice when he was notorious for not accepting any students. Only Andre, the genius of the century, became this old man's apprentice after years of asking and pleading. Though Zeke has a general idea of why, he still wants to hear it through Duke's own words. He reckoned that the old knight must have seen a potential that surpassed that of Andre during their duel. Duke smiled and asked him to take a guess. Zeke candidly answered that he was accepted for being a genius of the family. Duke just laughed at his confidently wrong answer. If he was picking an apprentice based on raw potential, Duke would have chosen that girl from the Tarun family. But he picked Zeke purely based on his tenacity. Talent is not the only thing a person needs to reach the level of red or even black knights. In reality, talented individuals rarely face any serious issues in their lives. As a result, most of them easily fall in the face of adversity, snuffing out their talent and life in the process. After living through a whole lifetime of hard work and adversity, Zeke could not agree more. Most praised geniuses who were projected to reach the level of a red knight not only fail to reach the expectations put on them, but most of them get stuck at the level of blue knights. After answering, Duke stood up and put a stop to their chit-chat. Right now, he wants to take his new apprentice for his first lesson. The two made their way to the empty Western Greenhouse Gymnasium. Zeke didn't even know that there was a gym underneath the greenhouse. Duke simply ordered him to run around the track, and he's been racking his brain to figure out what his new master has been planning ever since. 3 hours have elapsed since he started, and Duke just continues to observe him wordlessly. Finally, Duke yelled at him to stop and threw him a question. Zeke gladly stopped his jog and asked what his master wanted to know. Before he could react, Duke's hulking body had already appeared behind him. The old knight's hand aimed for Zeke's arm, and the young man instinctively reacted to parry the grab. His battle sense kicked in, and every fiber of his being made him retreat to a safe distance. Duke failed to grab hold of his hands and arm, but the brief moment of contact nearly ruined his special glove. The old knight asked his student if he had a problem with pulse checking. Zeke knew damn well that this sly old bat wasn't just planning to check his pulse. Duke knew something was off with this kid right from the very start. When they fought in the infirmary, when they dueled in the greenhouse, and even after running around the track for 500 laps, Duke did not sense a single drop of aura from the boy's body. He even reacted suspiciously as soon as Duke got close to his wrist. So, the former Black Knight outrightly asked Zeke if he was incapable of using aura. The question prodding at his biggest secret shook Zeke to the bone. Duke had done his research. He saw the bronze statue. He was also aware of the uproar over the never-before-seen golden light that Zeke triggered. If he was wrong in his assumption, then he demanded that Zeke let him examine his pulse. He looked his master in the eye and did not see malicious suspicion, just simple and raw curiosity. Despite the serious scandal that might erupt at the news of a Draker who can't use aura, it seems like Duke's curiosity comes first. Zeke is lucky that Duke is an eccentric bastard. He's still banking on getting his hands on his blade, Graham, to avoid any suspicions about his aura. This is a wake-up call, and he must be more cautious until then. He steeled his resolve. There's no need for him spin lies. Unlike his past life, where he was the first failed awakener in his family, things are different now. Zeke carefully removed the special gloves, stripping the symbol of a pure-blood awakener. He demonstrated his mana reflection, proof that his pure-blooded nature is legitimate. But for unknown reasons, he just can't use aura. Zeke is hoping that sharing truths will cover up his other lies. Still, he apologized to Duke. If it's discovered that a Draker cannot use aura, he's afraid that he'll be chased out of the family. Bro can make himself cry on command and look like a scared little puppy. Give this man an award. Zeke then offered his pulse to be examined, and Duke went ahead and carefully spread his aura inside his apprentice's body. Seeing Zeke cry and look frightened, Duke reckoned that a child is still a child even if this child is holding malak unbefitting of his age. Just as he expected, not a single drop of aura can be detected in the boy's entire body, despite awakening successfully. Duke was stumped. He racked his brain for an answer that wouldn't come. Zeke already expected skepticism even after the pulse examination. That's how absolute the results of the blessing rite are for a Draker. Even if it's true that he cannot awaken to aura, Duke will undoubtedly find a reason to explain the phenomenon, to rationalize, and to deny the evidence in front of him. The old knight labeled him an irregular. Of course, that's his conclusion. People who are not aware of the concept of classes tend to think that way. Still, he played along and asked Duke what an irregular is. His master explained that it refers to people with anomalous abilities. For example, some people have the ability to use aura and mana together. There are also irrational abilities, such as peering into the future. As such, irregulars are not treated very well at all, so it would be better if they kept this secret between master and apprentice. As for his irregular ability, Duke posited that it's his insane stamina and recovery. However, like the damage, healing from an internal would take time. However, that immutable concept does not apply to Zeke. He recovered from serious damages almost instantly before. Duke reckoned that such a fast recovery must have consumed an unspeakable amount of energy. That energy is aura. The old knight hypothesized that because Zeke's aura is being constantly consumed in exchange for stamina and regeneration, there's barely any left to sense and use. Zeke was surprised that this old man churned out a plausible explanation. Keeping up the act, he innocently asked if he would never be able to use aura, afraid that he'd fail to meet his master's expectations. Duke just laughed at such a sentiment and told him not to worry. That's because his Gale Arts is a special and potent art that does not use aura at all. He elaborated that a special art is a special technique personally developed by a knight after reaching the peak. Normally, it's an application or specialization of dragon-slaying arts, thus requiring proper use of aura. But as Gale Arts place paramount importance in training the body, Duke wanted to give his students a demonstration, so he asked Zeke to watch closely. Suddenly, the floor he was standing on cracked under the force of a simple jump. Zeke tried his best to keep track of Duke's insane speed. In a span of a few seconds, the Gale Knight roamed around the arena, and with how fast he was going, even his afterimages were invisible to the naked eye. He then casually landed back at the spot where he started. He didn't even break a sweat. When asked if he saw the movements, Zeke asked if it would be okay if he tried it himself. Taken aback, Duke asked the kid if he didn't want to see it again. The eccentric old man laughed and praised Zeke's confidence reminiscent of a black knight and allowed the kid to give it a go. Zeke stepped up and assumed the position. He visualized and replayed the movement that his master had demonstrated just now. His first step left a crater right on top of the Black Knight's footprint. After seeing the technique demonstrated once, he perfectly recreated Duke's movement pattern by following the prints. Now that he's directly mimicking his master's movements and trajectory, he's starting to see things he couldn't before. It's clear that these steps were taken as if he was sparring against someone. Some patterns indicated attacking, dodging, closing distance, and creating distance. Each and every step has their specific purpose. With the final position filled, Zeke steadily decelerated. Duke could not believe his eyes. He knew that the kid was gifted a week ago, but he wasn't nearly this good. What the hell could have possibly happened in the span of a week for such a huge jump in potential? The difference is like heaven and earth. Duke had never seen anything like it. He had never encountered such a perfect prospect. But Zeke had to turn around and ruin it by acting arrogantly. If he could just keep that in check, he would be perfect. Duke playfully grabbed him in a headlock and teased him for crying his eyes out, then busting out a near-perfect replication of such a difficult technique. Time passed since Duke started training him. Today Zeke can be seen in the academy dining hall. On his plate was a hodgepodge of meat, seafood, bread, and everything he could get his hands on. It's been a month since he became the Gale Knight's apprentice. With his continuous training, his appetite just keeps on increasing. Today, his lunch was interrupted by instructor Andre himself asking if he could spare some time to talk. Because he has a packed schedule, he asked Andre to just get on with what he wanted to talk about right here and right now. Andre had a simple question for him. He wanted to know how Zeke convinced Sir Dexter. Since Andre hasn't become Duke's official disciple yet at this point in time, the news that Zeke has been accepted as one likely made him a bit anxious. Continuing to stuff his face with food, Zeke answered that he didn't really do anything special, that Sir Dexter just picked him out on his own. Andre was obviously irritated by such an answer. Andre looked at him with unconcealed disgust and hatred. He jumped to the conclusion that Zeke was picked to be a disciple based on the sole merit that he's a pureblood awakener. Our boy did not like the sound of that allegation at all. He finished his meal and gave the genius of the century a stinging reality check. Zeke pointed out Andre's severe inferiority complex, which the instructor did not like at all. His arms started trembling out of anger. He referred to Zeke as a cadet, hoping to put him in place, but the young man is not done spitting his piece yet. He asked Andre if he believed that Sir Dexter was the type of man who would pick a disciple for such a simplistic reason. Zeke asserted that the fact that he was able to leverage his bloodline as a foundation to become a disciple is a testament to his own abilities. He then gave Andre some valuable advice. Instead of wasting his time patting his ego with that severe inferiority complex, perhaps he should put in some effort in order to be chosen too. As incensed as he was, Andre knew that there were some merits to the cadet's sobering words. Later that day, in the Western Greenhouse Arena, there were 3 people instead of the usual 2. Someone arrived before Zeke and Duke and is running around the track like his life depended on it. Zeke asks his master what's going on, but the Gale Knight is confused too. He doesn't know what got into instructor Andre, but he came begging him, saying he's fine with being a servant if it means he can stay by Duke's side to learn. The old knight jokingly agreed to take him in if he could run 300 laps without aura, which is how poor Andre ended up like this. Duke was surprised at Andre's newfound tenacity. Similarly, Zeke was pleasantly amazed to see that this guy wasn't just some self-righteous nerd. As it turns out, the genius of the century has quite the backbone on him. Every student of the academy has been summoned to show up and line up on the field. Today is a special day. It's the day of the Patriarch's visit. The strong strides of stallions rumbled outside the campus. A lavish carriage carrying the Draker family's insignia enters. The lookout hurriedly informed everyone of the Patriarch's arrival. The fat-ass dean of the academy, Howard Draker, tasked his men to get ready to receive their supreme leader. He waited in front of the gate, making sure that he was the first one that the VIP would see. As soon as the Patriarch got out of the carriage, Howard's pudgy face greeted him. With a deep bow, the dean paid his respects to the master of the Drakers. The knights followed suit, raising their blades and kneeling on their knees according to rank to demonstrate respect. The Patriarch arrived at precisely 12 noon, and the Academy's bell rang louder for today's rare occasion. Master Draker walked with unmatched aura and drip. His mere presence commanded obedience from everyone else. He held Howard's shoulder, towering over the dean, and praised him for his hard work. This absolute giga-chad is Arthur Draker, 3rd Transcendent Household's leader, the Dragonslayer Draker's Patriarch. Howard proposed that they go inside right away given how harsh the sun is today, but Arthur prefers to move at his own pace. Some of the students near the gate caught a glimpse of the Patriarch's silhouette near the gates and were awestruck. Finally, Arthur Draker stepped into the light, showing his face to the students of the academy. He addressed the young Dragonslayers lined up before him, the hope and future of his clan. He urged them to train hard and train more for their development, which will be the family's development. Inspired by his encouraging words and domineering presence, the students committed his simple speech to their hearts and replied with their whole chests. As the sun beamed down brighter, Arthur turned around and ordered Howard to escort him in. Behind closed doors, Zeke was called to greet the leader of all knights, the guardian of the Dragonslayer's name, and his father. Arthur laughed at his overly grand and old-fashioned greeting, a rare occurrence nowadays. After fetching 2 cups of tea, Arthur asked his son to have a seat. He heard that his son likes tea, so he prepared something rare, hoping it would be to Zeke's liking. While this seems like a sweet gesture of a father, Zeke only saw it as his every move down to his preferences being reported back to the higher-ups. There is a saying that there may be things that the Emperor doesn't know, but there will never be anything that a Draker does not. Zeke can feel the truth of that saying right now. Arthur admitted that he called for Zeke after hearing that Duke took him in as a disciple. As expected, the Patriarch is not one to dilly-dally. He prefers getting straight to the point. Zeke downplayed the whole thing, insisting that Duke is doing him a great favor. While Arthur is not sure of his son's goal, continuing to follow Duke's teachings should paint a bright future. Zeke cut his father off and asserted that his goal was to become the strongest man on the continent. Hearing such a lofty goal sparked some sharpness in Arthur's eyes. Zeke added that he will become stronger than everyone else so that he can live just as freely. That is his goal, and he will do everything to get there. He looked at his father's face, unable to interpret how the Patriarch was feeling. Arthur deliberately leaked some of his aura and bloodlust. If his youngest plans to become the strongest, that means he is aiming to surpass even his father. Zeke realized that he might have made a mistake. He was way too enthusiastic to blurt out such sentiments. He felt a palpable chill running down his spine. Swirling around the room is the presence of Astral Sword. It is said to give the user power over all living beings within its effective radius. It is widely regarded as the pinnacle of aura usage that only full-on Black Knights can reach. Arthur looked at his youngest son, a hint of amusement visible in his eyes. Zeke chose to stand on his ground and doubled down on his goal. He admitted that he plans to surpass even his all-powerful father while trying his best to resist the Astral Sword. Hearing his resolve, the Patriarch seemed pleased with his will. Arthur quietly dispelled his Astral Sword while calmly sipping his tea, lifting the pressure from Zeke's body. He admitted that what Zeke said just now was the most interesting thing he had heard in ages. Arthur actually came to this place to support both the Academy and his youngest son. But now that he's seen how much Zeke had grown, maybe that won't be enough. He rummaged inside his intricate suit to retrieve something. Zeke thought that other Black Knights like Duke were already at the pinnacle, someone impossibly strong. But his father was on a whole other level. Arthur slid a black card across the table. The card bears the Draker insignia. This is Arthur's gift to Zeke for becoming Duke's disciple. Seeing a black card in person made Zeke uneasy, making him stumble on his words. By his reaction, Arthur can see that he already knows what a black card means. You see, this thing is a credit card only given to a very select few. Zeke never would have thought that he would get to see one in person at all. Just having one gives you incredible benefits wherever you go, not to mention its non-existent credit limit. It's basically an infinite money glitch. Arthur happily explained that the card would be under both of their names, so Zeke could use it freely. Still feeling overwhelmed by the possibilities, Zeke swore to use it only when necessary. While his dad is making it seem like he's being nice, the veiled intentions behind such a valuable gift are too obvious. Since using a credit card leaves a record, this is just another method to keep track of what he's doing. But if this is Arthur's way of keeping tabs on him instead of assigning a black martial squad to tail him, that means the Patriarch doesn't see him as a threat yet. With this, Arthur kindly dismissed his son and urged him to continue training and work hard to become the strongest in the continent. Zeke bowed one last time and thanked the master of the Drakers once more. He wordlessly walked out of the room, his mind reeling with unknown thoughts. Similarly, Arthur Draker closed his eyes and thought of his youngest son's words. Suddenly Duke showed up, calling Arthur a sickening old man. The Patriarch just asked Duke why he was so angry. Thankfully, Duke is the only one with the balls and the strength to call Arthur out on his bullshit. This guy is suddenly playing father for the kid after a lifetime of neglect. Arthur argued that he had no choice. This is the price of being the head of the household. Furthermore, what Duke just said counts as defamation of the Patriarch's character. Duke sat his ass down on the couch and dared Arthur to cuff him and take him away if he could. The Master of Drakers smiled and dropped all pretenses. Out of anyone on the continent, Duke is the only one he can truly talk to without worries. He retrieved another thing from his lavish suit, a bottle of prized alcohol known as Dragon Breath. Being offered a drink to go with their conversation, Duke's mood lit up as he praises Arthur's taste when it comes to drinks. The Patriarch brought up the strange atmosphere enveloping the continent, and Duke played dumb, insisting that he was just minding his own business inside the academy. But Arthur knows more than anyone else that Duke has eyes and ears all over the map. Duke then asked why Arthur would ask a question that he already knows the answer to. The Emperor has gone crazy over the idea of immortality and is scouring the entire continent for anything he can latch on. In Duke's perspective, such a thing is an impossibility. While magic can make someone look young, immortality has never been and never will be possible. The Patriarch shares the same opinion. However, he's worried that the Emperor is looking for a relic related to the Elder Dragon. That possibility definitely changes things. Patriarch Arthur Draker continued drinking and discussing the minutiae of immortality and endless youthfulness with Duke Draker. Unbeknownst to them, Zeke had been listening in from the next room. Leaning against the wall with hands in his pockets, this boy is aura farming like crazy. Using soul manifestation, he heard the conversation loud and clear. The Patriarch surmised that the Emperor was looking for a relic related to the Elder Dragon. Duke thought about it and agreed with such a possibility. When asked if it was possible that the Emperor had already located the relic, Arthur reckoned that it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. His personal squad, the Order of Black Knights, had reported that the most likely location of this mysterious relic was the northern continent. Sipping his drink, Duke's interest was piqued as soon as he heard the northern continent mentioned. It seems like this valuable information had not been acquired by the Empire's spies. Knowing how competent they are, it will only be a matter of time before they do. This crusade for immortality reminded Duke of the past. That crazy Emperor bastard started a war to unite the entire continent the moment he ascended to the throne. Only after taking over half of the central continent did he finally stop the brutal war. At that time, Duke figured that the crazy monarch would eventually give up on such a decrepit and absurd dream, but he was dead wrong. If that bastard really gets a hold of an artifact that can grant immortality, then the continent will undoubtedly suffer in a sea of flames under a war bigger than anyone had ever witnessed. Given the importance of this matter, Arthur Draker had agreed to take matters into his own hands and head to the north himself. Hearing that the Patriarch will be leaving his seat in the central empty freaked Duke out. If Arthur leaves, that bastard of an emperor would certainly run amok without anyone keeping him in check. But that is precisely why Arthur visited today. Aside from giving a half-assed speech to the trainees, he came to clue Duke into his plans. Knowing that he had no other choice but to agree, Duke sighed and shared a toast with his buddy. The grumpy old garden keeper grumbled in annoyance, but Arthur knew he could count on him to hold the fort. In the next room, Zeke was starting to overstrain himself from listening in for too long. Finally, the pain and fatigue caught up to him, knocking him down to the floor. With bloodshot eyes, he suffered the side effects of using soul manifestation for far too long. Even after absorbing the heart of Bahamut, the drawbacks of such a taxing technique are inescapable. Nevertheless, he gained some interesting and valuable intel from eavesdropping. Now, he is certain that the statue he got his hands on before he regressed was the Elder Dragon's artifact. From that voice he heard before he breathed his last breath to the system messages he saw after waking up in his younger body, all of it makes a little bit of sense now. Unbeknownst to the disgraced version of Zeke, he stole the artifact that the crazed emperor had been salivating for. That dictator even went as far as mobilizing the unit under his direct orders, the hunting dogs, to chase after him to the ends of the world. At that time, Zeke is so obsessed with his revenge that he does not know or care about the reason why he is being hunted. Still, listening in on his father and master's conversation gave him a concrete clue with regard to his regression. The administrator system that sent him back to the past was the real function of the Elder Dragon's artifact. That leaves the question of who would make such a thing, how powerful are they, and why. Taking a deep breath while sitting on the floor, Zeke tried to regain his composure. After getting little crumbs of answers, he ended up with even more pertinent questions. Finally, the top dogs of the Draker family bid their goodbyes after sharing a drink. Duke assured Arthur that he would make his move soon, and the Patriarch entrusted him to get shit done. 3 steps into leaving, Arthur suddenly paused, shifting the energy of the hallway. He looked at the closed doors of the room where Zeke was hiding as if he had X-ray vision. While he was glancing at the door with suspicion, his son was busy solving the mystery of immortality and time travel. If he really snatched away the Emperor's artifact, what could have possibly made them think that it was related to immortality? Finally, hearing heavy footsteps getting dangerously close to the entrance, every fiber of his being told him to run. Arthur Draker swung the door open with his game face on. But the room was empty. Thankfully, Zeke reacted fast enough before Daddy caught him snooping. Arthur lets his guard down while his boy uses the window to escape. Later that day, the ever-so-diligent young lord got his training reps in the Western Greenhouse Arena. Going against his orders to not bother Zeke while in the middle of training, Old Decker apologized to his young master. It's just that a fellow student has come looking for Zeke. Confused, Zeke wondered who would go out of their way to visit him when he did not have any friends in the academy. His curiosity got the best of him and allowed Decker to let the fellow student in. Zeke was not expecting Liam Stone to come through the door and bow his head in complete submission. Just as Zeke was wondering what this dude's deal could possibly be, Liam wholeheartedly pleaded for the young lord to take him in. Annoyed, Zeke regrettably thought that he should have ignored this big oaf while he was teaching the boss a lesson. When asked if he was willing to become a subordinate, Liam sincerely dropped his head even lower and pledged his allegiance to the rising star. Zeke asked what happened with his servitude under Jaken, and Liam exhibited some signs of anger. He answered that he had been abandoned. Without a talented Draker backing him up, he wouldn't be able to enter Valhalla as a trainee. As far as Zeke can remember, Liam was like this in his past life too. He never really found out why Big Liam was so obsessed with Valhalla though. He'd even go as far as begging just to be taken in. Calling him stupid, Zeke suggested that Liam should just go to Turun or Zimmons instead. He waved at the brute goodbye while emphasizing that he is not a support family to cling to. As such, he won't even be able to help Liam enter Valhalla. Besides, there is not a single reason for him to believe a word coming out of Liam's mouth. For all Zeke knows, this brute might just be a spy sent by Jaken to plot his revenge. Hearing the rightful distrust in the young lord's voice, Liam swiftly drew a knife from his waistband. He raised the blade, exuding his overbearing aura. Instead of charging at Zeke, the fool aimed his knife at his own left ear. In one swift slash, he cut his own ear off, staining the arena with blood. Liam admitted that it is reasonably natural for Zeke to doubt his intentions, but he is willing to do whatever it takes to prove himself to the young lord. If Zeke wishes for him to become mute, he will gladly cut his own tongue out. If Zeke wishes for him to become a cripple, he will cut off his own foot. Plopping his bloody severed ear on the ground, Liam Stone looked like a crazed maniac. It was a powerful show of resolve. If Zeke can just take him under his wings, Liam will place his life and soul in the hands of the young lord. Seeing Liam go as far as hurting himself just to get his attention, Zeke remembered the last time he saw a severed ear. It was not a fun time, to say the least. Drooling and gritting his teeth through the pain of his bleeding wound, Liam begged Zeke to take him in once more. Seeing the big oaf push himself to the limits in hopes of aligning with someone, Zeke remembered the night when he begged his past life master to make him stronger than anyone else in the world. At that time, he was a battle-worn and scarred veteran with hate-filled eyes. Liam's voice trembled as he repeatedly asked for a chance to become Zeke's underling. In response to his desperate pleading, Zeke threw a training sword in his direction. The young lord urged him to pick it up and try to withstand one strike. If Liam managed to withstand a single attack from Zeke, the young lord promised to take him in. Feeling delirious from the pain and blood loss, Liam smiled. Hope flickered in his eyes as he thanked Zeke for such an opportunity. For the sake of fairness, the young lord gave him some time to get some immediate treatment for his stupid ear wound. In his mind, Liam was thinking that enduring one strike would be easy, given that he too possesses the Draker aura to a certain extent. But when he looked at the young lord's stance and presence, it felt like gazing into the eyes of a monster. He wondered if they could even be considered peers. Before Zeke made a single move, Liam already felt suffocated by the intimidating aura alone. The big oaf tried his best to remain calm, but his breathing became ragged and his vision blurred. He could barely hold the sword in his hand. When Zeke finally made his move, his speed exploded as his compact muscles containing overwhelming strength contracted. Moving according to his instincts, Liam raised his blade and fought through the tension. The young lord unleashed a straightforward stab, and Liam tried to slash it away with a downward swing. The collision scraped the training swords as sparks flew in the air. Eventually, one of the blades flew and spun into the air, escaping the user's grasp. As expected, Liam Stone was thoroughly overpowered, his weapon knocked away from his hand. If this was a real battle, he would have died by now. With a hint of disappointment in his voice, the young lord asked if this was the extent of Liam's ability. Looking at the big fool sitting flat on his ass, even Zeke felt pity at such a miserable sight. Even though Liam fell in one swing, Zeke can tell that the big man is really determined. So he advised that he should just give up on Valhalla and carve his own path. Still, Liam refused to give up. It is likely true that he was cast aside by Jaken after Zeke gave that spoiled brat the beating of his life. Liam has descended from such a distant branch family that, if he weren't Jaken's attendant, he would not have been able to enter the cradle in the first place. Considering that this academy had the juice to expel a direct Draker descendant like Zeke in his past life, they won't bat an eye for a trainee from a distant family branch. While Zeke walks away thinking that the matter is settled, he feels Liam's big-ass arms clinging to his leg. He could not help but wonder why the kid would be in such a desperate state. In the first timeline, Liam was expelled from the academy, and the order he worked for fell into ruin. But in the end, through grit and experience, he made his way up to the level of a Red Knight and became known throughout the continent as the Mercenary King. With tears streaming down his face, Liam continued to beg for another chance to prove his worth. Seeing how hard-headed the big oaf was, the young lord is starting to get really annoyed now. So, as a test, he agreed to give him one last chance. Zeke will accept him under his wing under one condition. Since the oaf claimed that he would cut his tongue if Zeke wanted him to be mute, and would cut his feet if being a cripple is what it takes, the young lord gave him a nearly impossible task. Gripping Liam's shoulder, Zeke grimly asked him to cut off his right arm. Hearing such an extreme condition made Liam's blood run cold. Zeke continued to egg him on, asking him if he valued his right arm more than the idea of serving under the young lord. Zeke knows what he's demanding from Liam. He's basically telling the kid to give up on becoming a competent swordsman. He thought that Liam would chicken out if he was sane. With that being said, Zeke turned around to continue his training and dismissed the big oaf. While Zeke assumed his training stance, Liam stood up with a blank look on his face. Zeke doesn't know why he's so desperate to enter Valhalla. Knowing what Zeke knows, it won't be too big of a deal if Liam gets expelled right now. Even if he doesn't make it to Draker's prestigious institution, he'll become a prominent figure in the future as a Red Knight regardless. But Liam was not heading for the door. He was walking towards the sword. Alarmed by what this meant, Zeke watched as the desperate Liam raised the blade and aimed at his own right arm. Halfway through the swing of the crazy bastard, Zeke pushed his legs to the limit and closed the distance between them with gritted teeth. Thankfully, he made it in time before the future mercenary king ended his promising career as a swordsman. Zeke slashed Liam's blade in half. The sound of metal bouncing off the floor filled the arena. Liam, the crazy fool, was really going to do it. He stared at his right hand, confused that it was still attached. Pissed off at Liam for doing such an insane thing, Zeke grabbed him by the collar and lifted his big body off the ground. Irate, he asked if the fool had finally lost his goddamn mind. Even though he gave an unreasonable condition, it's not an ironclad agreement. What if he was an asshole that goes back on his word? Liam would have lost everything right then and there. But Liam only dared to do such a crazy thing because if he did not, he might lose something more important than his arm. Zeke dropped him back on his feet and asserted that if Liam ever did something so foolish again, he'd be tossed out no matter how loyal he might be. He must keep that in mind now that he'll be working under the young lord. The perpetual pain and anguish in the big oaf's face vanished upon hearing Zeke's strongly worded instruction. Also, they need to hurry and get to the infirmary. What would people think if his subordinate is a one-eared freak? After getting his ear situation fixed, Liam was brought up to Zeke's personal banquet hall to share a meal. Liam stroked his reattached ear, still in awe of how it was fixed so quickly. As it turns out, Zeke shelled out one of his healing potions to help with restoring the ear. Liam felt bad that his new lord had to expend such a valuable potion on him right from the get-go. Zeke claimed that he is simply investing in his new employee, so there's nothing to worry about. Now that things have calmed down, Zeke confronted the big oaf about his reasoning. He asked what Liam values more than his right arm. No, more than life itself. Liam's answer was short and simple, and it made a ton of sense. He was pushed to the brink of desperation because of his mother. A few days after he was abandoned by Jaqen, he received news that his mother had collapsed from an unnaturally high fever back home. Fortunately, the fever soon broke, but that was just the start of her suffering. Her entire body became covered with rose-like patterns, causing her to grow weaker and weaker by the day. Hearing these bizarre symptoms, Zeke was disturbed. Hearing about his mom's condition made Liam take drastic measures. The village healers don't even know the name of the disease, let alone the cure for it. The only answer he could come up with is to join Valhalla. The students of the prestigious institution and their families are offered the greatest medical treatments available on the continent. Zeke sighed. He now understands why Liam would go to such extreme lengths. He grabbed his pen and dipped it into his inkwell. Curiously, the young lord started scribbling on a piece of paper, repeating the symptoms that Liam listed. Rose-like red spots appear all over the body and periodically high fevers. Zeke is all too familiar with this illness. 5 years from now, the entire central continent will be plagued by the rose disease. It is a highly contagious illness with a sky-high fatality rate. Countless people will lose their lives, succumbing to this loathsome plague. But a radical treatment will be invented, and the rose disease will be eradicated. Finishing his scribbles, Zeke handed the piece of paper to Liam. Written down is the method for producing the medicine to treat his mother's illness. It's not very difficult to make, and the ingredients should not be hard to find. Even village healers should be able to brew it. Confused, Liam gladly accepted the paper. If the healers who dedicated their lives to medicine were stumped, how could a young swordsman whip out the cure in just a few seconds? In the future, the genius alchemist brothers, Al and Jeff, will invent the treatment for the disease rampaging through the central continent. The greedy Alchemist Association will take advantage of this discovery, making a profit by taking advantage of desperate people's lives. Upon learning about this disgusting practice, the brothers would publicly reveal the method of production. It quickly spread across the entire disease-ridden continent to the point that even a warrior like Zeke would come to know the formula. Nonetheless, he can't say all that to poor Liam, so he simply answered that he knew a very good alchemist. Since he has the treatment method in his hands, Zeke basically solved Liam's problem in one sitting. He does not need to go to Valhalla or become a young lord's subordinate anymore. Hearing such insinuation made Liam stand up from his seat. He is a man of his word, and he vowed to dedicate his life to serving Zeke in any way he can. With a clenched fist and a stalwart pose, Liam bent his knee and swore his lifelong loyalty to Zeke Draker. Even though he tried to push the big oaf away so many times, hearing the future mercenary king recite an oath of loyalty felt quite reassuring for Zeke. Accepting the pledge, the young lord asserted that Liam should not lag behind, or he'll be abandoned. Before the day ended, an interesting discussion happened inside Dean Howard Draker's office. Cadet Owen Zimmons sought the fat-ass Dean out to discuss an important thing. He came to Howard with a proposal. He suggested that they should raise the difficulty of the examinations for the coming semester. The Dean was surprised. This was definitely unconventional for a cadet. Owen politely apologized for sounding arrogant, then claimed that the first years are quite skilled this year. The stars have aligned, and most of the great families had their own candidates in this batch, not to mention the appearance of 2 pure-blood awakeners. Owen simply thinks that if the examination has the same difficulty as the previous year, it may end up being a poor assessment for the young talents. Dean Howard briefly considered the idea and admitted that what the Zimmons child proposed made sense. With a polite bow, Owen exited the office. The fat-ass Dean looked out his window, lost in thought. He reckoned that the apples really don't fall far from the tree. Owen Zimmons thinks so similarly to his old man. He is already considering any future problems and making moves to nip them in the bud. Days passed, and the semester exam day for dungeon exploration commenced. All freshmen gathered outside of the ruins. This semestral evaluation performed only at Draker Academy pairs 2 to work together and escape a dungeon within a given time limit. There are a multitude of difficulties with these dungeons. Each group is assigned one at random. Of course, Zeke and Liam came as a pair. Even though they are packed and ready to go, the big baby can't help but feel a little nervous. So his lord assured him that being nervous is natural, but he cautioned him of being too anxious and making a mistake. The same goes for going in too lax and becoming arrogant. One must maintain a suitable amount of tension and nerve to stay sharp. Some students happily chatted, and some waited for the proctor with bated breath. Suddenly one of the guards yelled Zeke Draker and Liam Stone's names. Without further ado, the freshly paired duo walked towards the nearest ruined door from where they were standing. That was until a black-gloved individual barred them from entry, ordering them to wait. An armed guard working under the academy then pointed at another door on the other side of the room, insisting that Zeke and Liam had been assigned to that one. Zeke shot a quick glance at the guard, immediately sussing out that something fishy was definitely going on here. With a forceful yet stoic expression, the guard urged the duo to hurry up and listen to his instructions. Zeke sighed and accepted the bullshit that's about to unfold, confident that he'll be fine. And so, he and Liam headed for the opposite door that reeks of plotting and trapping. Although difficulty varies between dungeons, these ruins are still specialized exam-exclusive dungeons under the management of Drakers. There should not be much danger. Furthermore, escaping within the time limit is the primary goal. Each group is given a timer that automatically activates upon entry. Everyone is given 96 hours to get out. Time is the enemy. As an added layer of scoring, basic battle abilities are observed and graded as well. One can earn extra points by bringing the heads of monsters subjugated within the time frame. Extra points are nice, but the most important part is leaving the dungeon. Failing to escape within the time limit will automatically yield a failing grade. After a frankly peaceful first part of the journey, Liam and Zeke had just finished filling their bellies up, and it was about time to nap. Since the young lord set up the camp and prepared the meal by himself, Liam, the supposed subordinate, urged his boss to sleep first. Zeke assured his new employee that there was no need to worry. With his current constitution, he'll be fine even if he doesn't get a wink of sleep for 4 days straight. He's just like me, for real. Although a bit shameless, Liam knew better than to argue with his lord. He lugged his huge body inside the tent and reluctantly got some rest. With Liam retired, Zeke was left to his own thoughts, sitting beside the bonfire. It has been 16 hours since they entered the dungeon. He had been training for 3 days straight beforehand. Currently, he's been awake for about 90 hours. While his infinite stamina recovers physical fatigue like a charm, it does not apply the same recovery ability to mental fatigue. Within a dungeon, where everything is uncertain, and you never know what will come from the shadows, Zeke must minimize as many risk factors as possible. The slow crawl of the night and the eerie silence of the dungeon are starting to get into his head. Feeling mental fatigue catching up, Zeke wanted so badly to switch out with Liam. And then, Zeke made the gravest mistake one can make inside these dungeon walls. He dozed off. His dreams brought him back to the icy plains of the northern region, the land where the Emperor's imposing red flag symbolizes cruelty and tyranny. Zeke's mind painted the picture of a woman's corpse, blood pooling all around her body as they seep into the snow-covered ground. He opened his eyes back to reality, panting and sweating as if he just saw a ghost. Well, he might as well have. Thankfully, those few nightmarish minutes of dozing off did not get them into trouble. Zeke is still sitting in front of the bonfire. Nothing sneaked up. Still, he would rather fight a fearsome monster than dream that dream of death again. Zeke immediately locked in. He's convinced that he was woken up by the sound of one of his bell traps getting tripped. Just as he expected, something was coming at him from the door behind. He hurriedly grabbed a water canister and dashed the flame of the bonfire to lower visibility in the dark. Zeke then yelled at Liam to wake the hell up. Zeke plans to check out the situation first while Liam follows. Hugging the wall near where the disturbance came from, Zeke contemplated his plan of action. Using his dragon eyes during a 4-day exam is too risky. Letting his eyes adjust to the darkness would be better for now. As he waited and waited, a strange smell wafted over, kissing his nostrils. It was the scent of sulfur. His thoughts immediately jumped to a creature that reeks of sulfur, a monster that hunts in packs. A beast with a danger level of rank 3, the dog from hell, the hellhound. In his past life, during this year's semester exam, Reyna, the frontrunner, hunted an orc. Zeke had never heard of a dungeon room containing hellhounds. Zeke waited a few more seconds. The grand entrance of the hellish monster did not come. He then started noticing another odd thing. An alpha of a hellhound pack should weigh at most several hundred kilograms. But judging from the echoes bouncing off the cavernous walls, the enemy coming sounds like it weighs several tons at least. Maybe it's a freaking mutant. Using his blade as a mirror to look around the corner, Zeke held his breath in anticipation. Thanks to his creativity, he spotted the speeding freight train of a beast in the nick of time as it crashed through the door and walls by sheer force. Zeke was sent flying by the impact, but quickly regained his stance with a perfect landing. Liam hurried to his boss's side. Zeke cursed the Zimmons. Outside, he got a quick peek at the guard's uniform, where a curious trinket connected to the Zimmons was tucked away. He never would have expected that they would have the clout and enmity big enough to warrant such a dirty play. This is not only a battle for survival. This is a battle to uncover his enemy's plans. The hellhound Zeke was expecting has been freshly decapitated, its fearsome and lifeless head displayed by the merciless butcher. It has green skin, a white beard, and a stout body, and it is violently mad. Whoever planned this skipped on hellhounds and jumped right into using trolls as assassins. One look at the gigantic beast made Liam freeze out of fear. Zeke, on the other hand, is furiously assessing the situation. You see, trolls are rank 1 monsters. They are dangerous enough to casually munch on hellhounds and orcs as snacks. Their blood is a popular raw material for most healing medicines. They have incredible regenerative abilities that befit that. After composing himself, Liam finally acted like a real loyal sword and stepped ahead of his young lord. Drawing his sword, he decided to be a decoy so Zeke could take that opportunity to flee. Zeke silently smiled and tapped his subordinate away. He urged Liam to never say something so depressing and martyr-like again. Besides, he is not the kind of lord who would abandon a subordinate when it matters most. Dropping some hints of wisdom in the face of adversity, Zeke advised Liam not to believe in the boss but in his own efforts instead. For he is not weak. As a trial, Zeke decided to take on a more supportive role, letting Liam do as he'd like. With a smile as if a huge burden had just been lifted off of his shoulders, Liam locked onto the troll and thanked the young lord. Moving in sync, the duo ran in from opposing angles to maximize their coverage. As a result, they left the troll standing like an idiot, open to being sliced and diced mercilessly. Zeke had been holding himself back, matching Liam's tempo and seeing a lot of potential in the future mercenary king. It's already impressive that the gentle giant managed to wound the troll despite the unreasonably tough skin. What's more impressive is Liam's targeting. He's aiming precisely at the monster's joints. That means he's been studying monsters and their anatomies in his spare time as well. Zeke could not ask for a more productive underling. However, there are things that Liam still lacks. One of those things led to him being within inches of becoming meat paste under the troll's spiked club. Thankfully, Zeke can turn on his engine and close the gap in an instant to parry the filthy casual. Showing a bit of his real capabilities, he sliced the troll's weapon in half without even looking at it. This kid is an S-rank aura farmer. Liam apologized for needing to be bailed out, but Zeke praised him for doing so well in his first real life-and-death battle. While the troll is getting red with madness, Zeke gives his buddy some constructive criticisms. While it was a good decision to target the monster's joints, overlooking the troll's regenerative ability is a death wish. One must keep in mind that a troll will heal small cuts like they are nothing. If your attack power cannot exceed their regeneration, you're done. Without a weapon in hand, the monster raised its arms, seemingly motioning to fight barehanded. Seeing as the situation was getting a little too much for Liam, Zeke raised his blade and declared it was time to wrap this shit up. With a blisteringly fast flurry of offense, Zeke killed the giant troll, leaving a bloodied and mangled monster corpse. Subjugating the troll earned him a hefty reward of 30 karma points. Aside from karma, This kill should net the duo with plenty of extra points for the exam. It's up to Liam to pick up the loot. While the gentle giant dismantles the troll, Zeke checks on a new prompt the system provides. It was a sudden quest to hunt 100 monsters of 10 different species within 72 hours. Upon completion, he'll earn double karma points for every kill and 2 random boxes. Seeing the word double made his eyes shine with greed. There are approximately 79 hours left until the exam ends. By Zeke's estimation, killing 100 monsters within that time won't be a problem. But the issue is having to hunt 10 different species. However large a dungeon may be, an exam-use dungeon typically won't exceed 4 different species. However, since it is obvious that those Zimmons bastards have set a trap, there should be 10 species of high-class monsters here if Zeke looks thoroughly enough. Finishing this urgent quest on top of escaping and being mindful of the exam is a lot to juggle, but the young lord can probably pull it off. Just in time, Liam finished dismantling the troll corpse. For the test, they were provided with head collection bags alongside their timers. While it's inferior to a subspace pocket, it's good enough to carry monster drops. With their first enemy felled, it's about time to move on deeper to the dungeon. Time ticked by quickly. The duo came upon a pack of burning wolves and easily wiped them out with 56 hours left on the clock. Halfway through the exam, they encountered goblins, quickly racking up the kill count by quite a bit. Their loot bag is also getting heavier and heavier. With 39 hours left on the timer, they encountered a giant bat adept at using sonic attacks. It was a tough opponent, but the duo was tougher. Their routine has been killing, camping, and resting for 2 days straight. On the last day, they've hunted plenty of monsters to secure a really good score for the exam. Zeke asked Liam if he'd gotten used to real combat after hunting non-stop. Humble as ever, Liam claimed that he was not sure of his progress yet, which is normal considering how hard it is to get used to real bloodshed. Zeke is starting to stress out the timer. With less than an hour to complete his sudden quest, he subjugated 99 monsters from 9 different species. He's been looking everywhere for that final kill to fill his quota to no avail. He even targeted leeches and bugs the size of a finger, but they're not moving the needle. He couldn't help but curse those Zimmons for being useless. Those guys are trying to sabotage him by cramming powerful monsters in an exam dungeon, but they can't even do it right. Suddenly, a chill crawled up Zeke's spine. His instincts warned him of upcoming mortal danger. The ground shook, surprising Liam sitting near the campfire. The rocky floor continued to tremble, eventually cracking and forming fissures. Zeke drew his sword and ran towards Liam while yelling at his buddy to drop the bag of loot and move. Unfortunately, the big oaf was a bit too slow to heed his young master's call. Zeke had to bail him out, pushing his big body out of the way. Blood spurted everywhere. The sudden attack caked the floor with crimson. Seeing the effects of his slow reaction, Liam felt a jolt in his brain. The sleeve of Zeke's uniform had been torn to shreds. His left arm looked mangled with blood. Liam worriedly ran to the young lord's side. Zeke assured him that he was fine. The blood in his arms is monster blood. As sudden as the attack was, Zeke had the presence of mind to push his boy to safety and deliver a fierce attack. This time he advised Liam to just stand by and watch. With a gargantuan, disgusting beast hellbent on tasting their flesh, it will be hard for Zeke to pay attention to an inexperienced ally. One look was all it took to identify the monster as a dungeon worm. It's an incredibly dangerous breed of monster that normally requires 8 well-trained purple knights specialized in subjugation to eliminate. As it turns out, those damn Zimmons are hiding one more troublesome trap card for the final hour. Liam watched helplessly on the sidelines as the dungeon worm blitzed through the cavern like a burrowing freight train. As much as he wanted to help, he knew that he would just be a massive liability right now. Still, that did not discourage him from rummaging through their supply bag for anything that could help. Meanwhile, Zeke is trying his best to fend off hundreds of dungeon worm fangs intent on mutilating his body. This time, his skills and veteran-level experience shone brightly with every slash of the sword. He estimated that even a blue knight would want to avoid encountering a dungeon worm in such a disadvantageous location. You see, these things voraciously consume the earth to move underground. That means Zeke is on a narrow time limit. If he takes too long to subjugate the beast, he and Liam will likely be buried alive or chewed to shreds. As the worm surfaces once more, Zeke locks the fuck in. He dodged the straightforward mad dash of the beast, ducking inches away from its body. Gaining enough space to prepare for his next move, the young lord raised his blade. As soon as the window to attack presented itself, he lunged and planted his blade deep into the bug's disgusting abdomen. The stab worked, but that's not nearly enough. He gritted his teeth and slashed through the monster's flesh. Purple bile and blood spurted from the worm's mouth. It's starting to take a lot of damage, which is only natural when you're getting gutted alive. As monster blood flew all over the place, Zeke's killing intent reached its peak. He is fully intent on cutting this worm in half if that's what it takes. Unluckily, he stepped into an area hollowed out underneath, causing Zeke's stance to waver. The ground completely gave in, giving the dungeon worm a bit of breathing room while Zeke dangles by his sword. The overgrown bug did not miss its chance to turn the tables. It pulled out its massive body from the ground below. With one swift motion, the sinuous body coiled around the young lord's body, crushing him with sheer strength. The coil continued to tighten, making Zeke throw up a hefty amount of blood as his body and organs got smushed. That's when a certain desperate underling swallowed his fear, drew his sword, and stabbed the worm to get its attention. Liam disobeyed his lord's orders to stand by and watch. He joined the fray in his own way. The stab might have just saved Zeke as it caused the worm's attention to waver, reducing the crushing pressure he was trapped in. His automatic healing also came in a clutch to recover from internal injuries in a flash. He quickly freed himself from the worm's deadly embrace, parkouring his way into safety. Zeke asked Liam what he did to cause such a drastic reaction from the worm. Liam explained that he added anesthetic to his sword in hopes of landing a significant blow to the monster. Zeke understood what that meant immediately. The main ingredient of the anesthetic is belladonna. For humans, it simply weakens one's senses. But for a worm, no matter how gigantic, belladonna might as well be a deadly poison. In an urgent and supremely stressful situation, Liam managed to recall the worm's incompatibility and adapted by using the anesthetic as a substitute. His snappy judgment and adaptability certainly reflect Liam's potential. At such a young age, he's already showing signs of the mercenary king in Zeke's past life. Taking Liam in is one of the best decisions he's made recently. Acknowledging Liam's contribution, Zeke included him in the following plan of attack. Completely recovered from the crushing injuries, Zeke pushed his speed to the limit and traversed the worm's body expertly. Upon reaching his sword, he pulled it out of the monster's open wound. Blade in hand and ready to strike, he gave Liam the signal to do a coordinated attack. The gentle giant gritted his teeth as his 3-day non-stop hunting experience culminated in a desperate stab. Another dose of belladonna wrecked its system and made the worm crash out. While the poison considerably slows the beast down, the real monster in the cavern activates soul manifestation, covering his blade with a hazy purple light. Just like he promised, Zeke gave the worm one smooth, straight, and silky slash, lacerating the gigantic body and cutting that bitch in half. With that, the worm fell down to its demise. Zeke landed back on the ground to look cool and auriform. Notifications ring in his head. The sudden quest has been completed successfully. As promised, the karma points he had earned thus far have been doubled as a reward. Not to mention the 2 random boxes to open as he pleases. That brings his karma points up to a whopping 790 in the bank. While Zeke is basking in the crap ton of karma points that he just earned, the dungeon exterior is bustling with exiting cadets to be evaluated. Standing in front of the line to be graded was Reyna Tarun and her group. The base grade for a safe exit is 30 points. She also brought out 20 goblin heads, 2 hobgoblin corpses, and an orc carcass. In total, she netted 180 points. She scored close to Sir Abel's record of 200 points, making the other cadets gasped in awe at the power level of someone with pure blood. The passing grade is set at 130 points, and she has handily surpassed that. Next in line was none other than the conniving son of a gun, Owen Zimmons. He netted a total of 120 points. Normal cadets only need to reach 70 points, so he did pretty well. Still, it pales in comparison to Reyna's grade. Mr. Inferiority Complex felt a burning jealousy towards Reyna. If need be, he'll just devise another devious plan to take her out of the picture, so she won't be able to overshadow him in the future. Owen is already cooking up a scheme to take care of her like he did with Zeke. Speaking of the devil, Owen's ears grated upon hearing that familiar, confident voice coming out of the dungeon. He turned around and saw Zeke Draker leisurely strolling past everyone. His attendant, Liam, is carrying a gigantic corpse of a dungeon worm. Everyone made way for them as hushed murmurs about the worm spread. As far as everyone knew, orcs were supposed to be the highest-ranked monster inside. Liam threw the worm's head down to the ground. It made a loud crash from its sheer mass. Zeke stood next to Owen and asked why he looked so surprised. Knowing that this dipshit was responsible for the worm trap, Zeke shot him a knowing glance and a sarcastic question. All Owen could do was bite his tongue. Having a ton of fun teasing the conniving bastard, Zeke goaded Owen to put his usual poker face back on. On second thought, the deathly grimace on Owen's face suits him a lot better. Unable to take the goading any longer, Owen walked out like an angry child. This only served to fuel his hate for purebloods even more. He silently swore to make Zeke pay for looking down on him. Zeke was quite pleased with the dipshit's reaction. With that out of the way, the instructor who was assigned to evaluate Zeke and Liam pulled out a score sheet. It was Instructor Andre. With a stoic look, he started the scoring process. Zeke was actually a bit worried since this worm was the only survival proof of kill that they had, but Andre was not the type who would carelessly gloss over things. This worm, who ate the bag holding the heads of nearly 100 dead monsters, really messed with Zeke's game. Still, Instructor Andre dug into the gruesome head without hesitation. Watching such a scene is not for the faint of heart. Zeke thanked his lucky stars for having Andre as his evaluator. While he lost the bag to this bug, he could not afford to receive a failing grade, so he gambled on just bringing the worm's head as proof. Andre might be the only instructor in this place who would examine the flesh and skin stuck between the worm's fangs. After a thorough post-mortem examination, Andre threw the blood-stained gloves away. He firmly confirmed the fleshy remnants of gremlins, goblins, hobgoblins, hellhounds, orcs, and a troll in the worm's disgusting maw. Trolls weren't even on the list of existing monsters in the dungeon. Furthermore, taking the amount of blood and gore into account, Andre assessed that the beast munched on dozens of heads. However, counting everything without definitive proof would be unfair. He decided to just count one of each species. Since the troll and dungeon worm are not supposed to be included in the exam criteria, Andre referred to records stating that a troll is 3 orcs strong and a dungeon worm is equivalent to 6, that is 90 and 180 points, respectively. This brings Zeke's total up to 368 points, an easy pass. Even other instructors were taken aback. Back in their day, hellhounds weren't even included in the criteria. Other bitter cadets protested that this was an unfair evaluation given that Zeke only had definitive proof for a single dungeon worm's head. They're really trying to tear Zeke down when not a single one of them could have survived a tryst with such a troll, let alone the worm. Taking that into consideration, it's fair to assume that Zeke Draker is simply built different. Zeke doesn't like the silent whispers around, but it sure feels different from how it was when they used to just mock him. However, he's worried that he might have done something to stand out a little too brightly. Owen Zimmons should not have the clout to manipulate the exam use dungeon on his own. That brat would not dare to mess with the Academy's system. It could be that the whole Zimmons clan is behind this deadly stunt. There are more eyes on Zeke than he initially thought. Hiding his strength now could be counterproductive. All he can do is try to be more flexible with his future decisions, while keeping a close eye on the situation. As he was about to make his exit, Raina stopped him on the way out. With a determined look in her eyes, she conceded that today was her loss. He didn't even know what that girl was talking about. He's never really paid close attention to that child. Later that day, Zeke found himself deep in thought in the Western Greenhouse arena. With his stockpile of 780 karma points, he's considering splurging a little bit on skills. The Draconian level 1 skill includes Gluttony for 50 points. He's been ignoring such a useless-sounding skill, but he can easily invest 50 points without hurting his bankroll. So, he accessed the system prompt and confirmed the purchase. As soon as he did, the skill description retroactively changed. Gluttony will now grant him the ability to eat and digest anything to be converted into energy. In addition, consuming monsters with bloodline abilities will grant him those skills. He felt a pang of regret for not buying this skill before the exam. To test this new skill, he pulled out a piece of meat to get a feel for the energy conversion effect. Upon Gluttony's activation, Zeke was taken aback when a black light skewered the meat out of his hand. He looked at his shadow, which had expanded like a void absorbing the meat. The jerky was swallowed up by the pure dark bog with a single thought. Upon complete absorption, he felt the effects of energy conversion right away. His light migraine completely vanished, as if he had just taken a nice nap. Even if only lightly, he feels as though his mental fatigue has been reduced. He felt rejuvenated as his mental and physical exhaustion was alleviated. Even his ether was replenished. From this little test, he can tell that Gluttony is definitely worth 50 points. With this skill, he can significantly reduce various risk factors. Combined with his infinite stamina, Zeke might have just discovered a broken combo. Now he will be able to train for 24 hours straight without the need for sleep or traditional food. Just as he was about to start on a new diabolical training routine, Decker interrupted with a knock at the door of the training hall. The butler apologized as he had come to inform the young master of some important news. You see, Zeke's new sword has been completed. Hearing that lifted his spirits. So, he went straight to Galleon's workshop to take a look at his new weapon. In his past life, Galleon gave him something made of mithril and pure iron. The Sword of Radiance Graham served Zeke until his dying breath. It had become a famous blade that any competent fighter would recognize with just a glance. This time, he gave Galleon the fang of a dragon to work with. He thought a single additional material would produce something similar to Graham's appearance, but that doesn't seem to be the case. In front of him, lying inside a sword box, was a pure black greatsword surrounded by suffocating dark air, the complete opposite of the Sword of Radiance he was expecting. He grabbed the handle and lifted the blade with one hand. Judging by its appearance alone, Zeke would be the first to admit that it's not a very pretty sword. He asked Galleon if the lack of sharpening was on purpose. The future legendary blacksmith explained that it's supposed to be rugged. Even though Zeke has his doubts, he trusts Galleon's judgment when it comes to blades. If the man says it's the sword that suits him best, he'll take it as the absolute truth. Thankfully, it seems like Galleon hit the nail on the head when it comes to the sword's properties. The truth is the blade doesn't have a name yet. Galleon racked his brain for one, but he couldn't find the right fit, no matter how hard he tried. So, the honor of naming this new creation falls on Zeke's shoulders. Graham, the Sword of Radiance, was named by Galleon himself. It seems like the addition of the Dragon's Fang really changed the trajectory of history. Wordlessly, Zeke summoned a dagger and cut his wrist open. The sudden violent action scared and confused Galleon. After wounding himself, Zeke tried to deactivate his passive healing factor to continue the bleeding. Fortunately, he got it working on his first try. With his blood flowing free, he closed his eyes and dripped the crimson drops onto the sword's surface. Galleon finally understood what Zeke was trying to do. This is the Lost Sword naming ritual. It's a traditional dwarven rite in which one grants a weapon its fated name. The owner would infuse their blood with their aura and mana before staining the blade to initiate the ritual. Once the ritual begins, the initiator enters the depths of their subconscious mind. They will spend however long inside until they find the perfect name. This ancient dwarven rite had been lost to time, forgotten by even modern dwarves because of how dangerous it can be. Inside Zeke's subconscious, he fell deeper and deeper, establishing a connection with his new weapon and floating amongst an endless sea of scriptures. Of the infinite names whirling around him, he must pick the fated one. He opened his eyes and bravely dove down untold depths for the sake of his blade. After what felt like forever, the chaos of scriptures vanished. He grasped a single droplet in an infinite ocean. He felt the presence of a dragon roaming his mind palace, the Stygian blade Bahamut. With that, his new weapon had been registered and bestowed an awe-inspiring name. Zeke opened his eyes as the rain of blades singled out Bahamut. His subconscious settled on the name of an evil dragon. Once he woke up, Galleon sang him praises for knowing a traditional rite that was supposedly lost in time. After wrapping his wrist up and losing a ton of blood, he explained that he had just come across the idea while studying dwarven history. With an expectant smile, Galleon asked Zeke to stay a bit longer while he retrieved something to gift the young master. Today Zeke gained a new beastly weapon, and he found out that he could suppress the activation of his passive skills. That means he'll be able to prevent stronger people from peering into his hidden abilities like that time with Duke. This would be huge for keeping his cards close to his chest. For now, he'll have to keep the bandages on even though he's already healed underneath. More importantly, his evaluation of his new weapon just went through the roof. The Stygian blade, Bahamut, has an indestructible property and the ability to convert aura. In addition, some of its features have been sealed and will be released based on its growth. Even in his past life, Zeke had never encountered a weapon like this before. The indestructible property must have come from the Dragon's Fang. Right now, he's over the moon at the prospect of aura conversion. The reason he overexerts himself to create magic circuits for Galleon when commissioning this sword is partly because of this broken ability. Graham's core ability made Zeke a beast. Like the ability dictates, his mana, ether, or any other kind of energy can now be converted into aura. As someone born without the ability to use such an integral power for warriors, aura conversion allowed him to reach the level of Black Knights. Finally, Galleon apologetically comes out of his workshop after rummaging through his stuff. When he looked at Zeke holding his new blade and emanating a fearsome force, he almost dropped the box he was carrying. He could clearly see the rich and clear aura wrapped around the sword. That is a feat that even Purple Knights struggle to achieve. More importantly, in Galleon's hands is something that could elevate the blade to an even higher level. Zeke looked at Galleon's gift. It was a black and gold sheath. It is personally crafted by Galleon's master. Zeke had never heard of the legendary blacksmith's master in his past life. When he looked at the markings on the sheath, Zeke nearly stumbled in shock. It clearly spelled the name of Gollin Jobert, the man who was widely regarded as the pinnacle of blacksmithing. Gollin is the undisputed goat on this continent, unrivaled even among dwarves. His creations were all crafted to perfection, and all of them have special abilities. Collectors would gladly pay ungodly amounts of wealth to get their hands on such pieces. It makes sense that Galleon was taught by the best of the best. If it's the Gollin they talk about in legends, then there's no way that this gift is just a simple sheath. Galleon demonstrated that by using a dial located by the opening of the sheath, it can transform into an impenetrable shield. This thing is made with mithril and wyvern bones, so it's guaranteed to withstand a good deal of abuse. Galleon happily offered the legendary item to Zeke as a form of giving back for all the grace the young master had given him. In truth, Galleon could have just sold this thing to make a furnace while he was struggling, but the man couldn't bear to sell his master's work to just anyone. When Zeke told him the estimated value of the market, Galleon was quite shocked. Regardless, Zeke accepted the gift with glee. However, the sheath looks too small for Bahamut. But if it's Gollin Jobert's handiwork, then size should not be an issue. Just as he expected, the sheath immediately resonated with Bahamut and reformatted itself to perfectly fit the great sword. With the legendary sheath on, the look of Zeke's new weapon far exceeded his expectations. He thanked Galleon for the stellar service, and the humble blacksmith was glad that Zeke liked his creation. Afterward, the young master went back to his base camp. This time he's gawking at the meteoric iron gauntlet he has equipped. Unfortunately, its complete properties will only be activated upon equipping a full meteoric iron set. He received the gauntlet from one of the 2 random boxes he was awarded from the sudden quest. Satisfied with his first pull, Zeke turned his attention to the second random box. Upon opening, a look of utter confusion appeared on his face. He retrieved the item, a piece of dilapidated paper, and rolled it up, revealing a tattered map. The system prompted that this thing was an incomplete map containing traces of Grandmaster Kaiser. Zeke knows of only one person who bears that title, the Hero King Kaiser. The biography of the Hero King and the Knights of the Clock Tower is widely known across the continent. Along with his knights, Kaiser founded the brilliant Kingdom of Kronos. However, the stories were deemed so overtly absurd, and without any historical records backing up the claims, the tales have never been proven. With the passage of time, those grand stories have been considered nothing more than a work of fiction. On Zeke's hands is a definitive proof that the Hero King really did exist. To add to his glee, his system activated its ability to restore and analyze the damaged parts of the map. Upon completion, the final position has been marked on the mini-map. Zooming into the blotted spots, Zeke identified the topography of the giant mountains near a barbarian territory. If this is the place, venturing out would be easier than he thought. Upon claiming all his rewards, the system prompted that the tutorial period would now be concluded. The completed map was classified as a potential quest item. An achievement quest had begun for Hero King Kaiser's secret technique. Without a time limit, acquiring Kaiser's inheritance at the ruins of the Old Kingdom will upgrade his system to the intermediate administrator level. With the tutorial period finished, quests to develop administrator access will start appearing from now on. The training wheels are off. The real game is about to start. With higher administrator levels, the rewards should become more impressive too. Zeke Draker is just itching to claim everything the system has to offer. First, he decided to use up the points he'd been saving. For 50 points, he unlocked level 2 Draconian skills. Gated behind the upgrade were 2 domineering abilities, Dragon Scale Armor and Dragon Claw. Just as the name implies, Dragon Scale Armor gives the user draconic scales that provide high magic resistance for a price of 80 karma points. On the other hand, the Dragon Claw will allow him to summon a powerful Dragon Claw to strike down enemies in a single strike. Like the armor, it costs 80 karma points to unlock. Right now, he can afford to buy both abilities. However, it's unclear when he'll be able to amass points in one go again, so being a bit frugal would be wise. Eager for a power-up, he bought the skills along with a few more things and saved 400 points for the future. Without wasting another second, he tried using the Dragon Claw, summoning a projection made of pure energy. With one efficient sweeping motion, the floor of his training arena was torn asunder. Looking at the damage done, Zeke was elated. The destructive power was way better than he expected. To test the Dragon Scale Armor, he grabbed the Stygian blade, Bahamut, and raised it for a wild swing as he coated his arm with dense dragon scales. Without holding back, he tried to cut his armored arm, but Bahamut rebounded instead. He didn't use aura, but he struck with the intent to cut through. Using dragon scales is no different from having a full plate of armor on, even when he's completely unarmed. Dragon Claw is used for offense, and Dragon Scale Armor is used for defense. It's simple, intuitive, and effective. The next few days passed with Zeke completely engrossed in his training until the semester exam finally arrived. Students lined up inside the Draker Academy Central Training Hall as they listened to the instructor's explanation of rules. For this exam, they will be going up against training dummies specially crafted to withstand physical force. The only way to damage these things is by pouring aura into their weapons. Forget about destroying these dummies. Those who fail to make even a dent will fail. All the following assessments will be considered null, and failures will be forced to start over from the basics. Without giving the cadets any time to process the weight of this exam, the instructor rattled off names one by one. Those who were called first were visibly flustered. Owen Zimmons watched his incompetent peers with disdain. He's been training with these dummies at home. He's got plenty of aura training. This is only possible because the Academy's aura education was established by his family. He's confident that even pureblood awakeners won't be able to match him when it comes to aura control. When his name was called up, Owen smirked and confidently unsheathed his sword. Taking up position in the middle of the dummies, he shocked his fellow cadets by showing off his sword resonance. Even some instructors were impressed that he was already adept at such an advanced skill at such a young age. With swift and practiced footwork paired with textbook swordsmanship, Owen left fatal slashes wherever he went. He was precise and sharp as the dummies were torn one by one. No other cadets that have gone up could match up to such a dominant display of skill. Once he was done, Owen stood in the middle of the stage to aura farm while his cloak fluttered. The instructors were hyped, praising the Zimmons kid. Some even lauded that it's only a matter of time before he surpasses Sir Abel at this rate. If there's anything Owen hates, it's being compared to those purebloods. As he walked away after throwing a childish tantrum, the instructors were confused. After Owen's turn, it seemed like the cadets felt more pressured to perform, resulting in increasingly poor performance. It's evident that they were intimidated by the kids' stellar performance. Even so, there hasn't been a single failing student. Every cadet has been able to pour aura into their swords, no matter how little. This much is to be expected for the special class. However, even in a place filled with geniuses, the real prodigies will always stand above the rest. Reyna Tarun stepped up to the stage and gave a polite bow. Before starting, she turned to the instructor with a request. With a strong-willed gaze, she asked to be graded according to her dragon-slaying arts. She is fully aware that these are the grading criteria for higher-ranked cadets. In the crowd, Owen scoffed at Reyna's arrogance just because she'd been hailed as a pureblood awakener. Pouring aura into a blade and being able to use dragon-slaying arts are two entirely different feats. The mere act of maintaining an aura blade already requires an incredible degree of concentration. In the case of dragon-slaying arts, fine adjustments must be made for each and every movement, making it exponentially harder. Owen reckons that the best she can do is make a swing or two before her aura completely dissipates. He's already praying for her downfall, thinking that Reyna is just trying to one-up him. The instructor made it clear that the condition for failure in this criterion is much harsher, but she still wished to proceed. Finally, she raised her slim sword and coated it with aura. All eyes were on her. With a sword in hand, her demeanor only became fiercer. When she moved for the first attack, the nearest dummy was sliced in half, shattering into pieces. The second, third, and eventually the last dummy suffered the same fragmented fate. When she reached the last target, Reyna's aura was still going strong, a testament to her control and power. From just a single glance, anyone could tell that this display makes Owen's performance look like child's play. The cadets picked up on this. Owen and Reyna aren't even in the same league at this point. Owen's pride and his aura control don't even compare to Reyna's. The dipshit couldn't even lift his head up to look at the stage. He bit his lip so hard it was almost torn. After such a high-handed display of skill, Reyna turned to the lineup of cadets and raised her sword to point at someone. Owen, ever the narcissist, thought that Reyna was mocking him. Then he realized that he didn't even register in her eyes. He's just a nobody. Reyna was looking at the young man standing all the way at the back of the queue. She had no interest in competing against delusional and irrelevant side characters. She's trying to go up against the main character himself. Zeke, on the other hand, scratched his head from the hassle this brings. He can't just pretend to ignore Reyna when she's publicly challenging him with a death glare. Since that's the case, he'll just try to match the expectations. Raising his hand, he asked the instructor to be graded according to the criteria of the dragon-slaying arts as well. A junior instructor was pissed. He thought the young man was just trying to show off after seeing Cadet Reyna accomplish it so easily. Fortunately, the lead instructor stepped in and did not give Zeke any more grief, granting him the approval. With a sly grin, Zeke made his way onto the stage. The junior instructor wanted to reprimand Zeke because he'd never seen the kid attend class even once. He must not have been informed that this cadet won a bet against Instructor Andre, exempting him from all required lectures. Furthermore, Zeke Draker is a generational talent, a golden light pure blood awakener. More recently, he even broke Sir Abel's unprecedented record in the dungeon escape exam. Zeke Draker is more than qualified for some special treatment. Stimulating his ether, the Stygian blade Bahamut activated aura conversion. Now that he's doing it seriously, Zeke noticed that harnessing his full strength was extremely difficult. Once he reached critical mass, he held the black blade with poise. Upon raising his sword to initiate his move, Reyna's eyes widen in recognition. This is a move that belongs to the first chapter and first verse of Dragon-slaying arts. The Sky Slice stance. Reyna can recognize the degree of perfection that Zeke was exhibiting. His form far surpasses her own. It's even comparable to Instructor Andre's mastery. This is only natural considering how many hours Zeke spent thoroughly imprinting dragon-slaying arts into his body before he regressed. His sword and movements are flawless. His positioning and footwork are swift and precise. Even the minuscule changes in the flow of aura have been ingrained into his body to the point of not requiring conscious thought. He can do this shit in his sleep. In his past life, he came to the point of growing bored of dragon-slaying arts. But starting over from the basics doesn't feel too bad. After cleaving his way through the dummies with ease, he sheathed his sword and walked away. He overheard the shocked discussions about how he effortlessly wrapped his huge sword in aura. Zeke might have overdone it and shown off a bit too much. Unlike Reyna's wild demonstration, his form of destruction was clean, precise, and overwhelmingly lethal. He wanted to be evaluated on a similar level to Reyna, but he ended up overshadowing everyone again. Even the instructors could tell that he had the combat level of a purple knight. In the crowd, Owen Zimmons was utterly defeated. He really tried to mess with such a monstrous cadet. Reyna, on the other hand, felt as though a fire was lit on her underside. After that performance, Zeke was called up to the dean's office. His results have reached all the way to the top brass. He tried to be humble while being praised, but everyone knows that reaching the level of a purple knight at his age cannot be attributed merely to luck. So, the dean asked if he would be open to taking the grade advancement exam. Depending on how he performs, he could skip one or more grades. It's a system designed for remarkable students like himself. This would expedite his plans immensely. So, with a confident grin, he accepted the dean's proposal and made his exit. Since it looks like the fat fuck already has something planned, it would be best to keep playing along while staying vigilant. Back in the dean's office, the lumpy leader passed down the orders to one of his people to take special measures. Raina and Zeke Draker, both pure-blood awakeners, have decided to take the exam. Things are starting to get interesting. A few days later, the top 2 freshman cadets were called to the Draker Academy's upper-class Aura training hall. Zeke and Raina awkwardly stood next to each other while waiting for the exam to start. He could feel her eyes peering into him, not even trying to hide her competitive spirit. Finally, the examiner for the grade advancement exam had arrived. He's one of the main family's upper-class knights, the man known as Sir Owl Draker. Upon seeing Owl, his eyes widened in surprise. He only knew this man as Dieback Blade. In his past life, he once saw this man carry dead civilians in the middle of a battlefield. At that time, simply seeing the Draker uniform would cause Zeke to raise his guard. Just as he was about to challenge the damned dog of the Empire, he sensed not a single iota of hostility, only grief and desolation. The man didn't come here to kill or conquer. He came here to make graves for the victims of war. In fact, the dirt caking his uniform and the plethora of graves littering the land is a testament to the man's feelings. Zeke grabbed a pair of shovels and offered to help. Even if the man refuses, he'll just help anyway, so they might as well work together. He introduced himself as Zeke Murray, a member of the Northern Allied Forces. When asked if he's a Draker, the man vehemently said no. He had decided to abandon that accursed last name. Zeke and the man have that in common. That day, Owl Draker decided to take the moniker Dieback Blade. Now young Zeke is seeing that man, but only now does he know that Dieback's name is Owl. It suits his curt character perfectly. The 2 cadets bowed and respectfully extended their greetings. Zeke didn't expect that an upper-class knight would conduct their advancement exam. In reality, these knights are the supporting pillars of the Draker clan. They hold a high-ranking position and wield a ton of power. Another instructor explained that the exam format would be simple, a swordsmanship battle. The fight will continue so long as the cadets have not lost consciousness or have given up. Raina grabbed her slim sword and offered to go first, only to be reprimanded by Owl. There is no need to go separately. Owl wants these 2 to come at him together. He wants all the smoke. Raina felt insulted, but Zeke calmed him down with logic. She should be aware that there's a giant chasm in skill level between them and Owl. On top of that, the test had already begun the moment the knight spoke. Raina would have lost a lot of points if she failed to control her emotions and rushed in. With a deep breath, she composed herself. Swallowing her pride, she asked Zeke how they should tackle this exam together. As expected of a combat genius, Raina can set aside their rivalry with quick judgment for the sake of a win. It just so happens that Zeke has already figured out a perfect strategy for this sort of situation. All they need to do is land one good strike. After giving Raina a rundown of the plan, she took her position behind Owl. Zeke paid attention to Owl's blade, an odd sword with a single edge hailing from the Eastern Empire, the Huando. It's the same type of weapon that Dieback Blade used before the regression. It's evident that Raina's pride has been bruised a little, but the weak cannot afford honor and pride. She must learn to cast her feelings aside and focus on the winning strategy. After giving the signal, Zeke and Raina launched themselves toward Owl at the same exact time. Even with the numbers advantage, they can't seem to land a clean hit against the knight's experienced and precise defense. Judging by how easily he's thwarting Raina's flank attacks, one would assume that the man has eyes behind his back. He wasn't just blocking either. He's even parrying some strikes like a pro. After the first bout, the cadets failed to connect with even a single attack. Raina was quickly humbled upon experiencing how skillful an upper-class knight really is firsthand. She's sticking with Zeke's plan to focus her attacks on Owl's blind spots. Even though she's moving with textbook perfection, she can't seem to pierce through an ironclad defense. Growing increasingly impatient, she pulled out the Dragon-Slaying Arts Chapter 3, Verse 1, and charged in with the intent to kill. Pushing her speed to the limit, she performed the half-moon swing and missed. The big movement left her open for a counter, and Owl mercilessly kicked her in the throat. She was forcefully sent flying towards the wall, kicking up a storm of dust and worrying her attendants nearby. Still, she took that kick like a champ and quickly got back up after losing consciousness for a moment. Meanwhile, Zeke was saddled with dealing with the knight on his own. With Raina's current skills, creating an opening is practically out of reach. But for Zeke, who was going toe-to-toe with an upper-class knight with a smile on his face, it seemed possible. Before they executed the plan, Reyna protested that she was not one to participate in such shameful strategies. She wanted an honorable duel, but Zeke gave her a reality check. Honor would never put food on the table. They didn't come here for a match between knights. They came here to pass an exam, and the academy was testing their ability to kill. Even though it's against her principles, she eventually bit her tongue and accepted her role. Even though the chance of victory is slim, they'll just have to force a situation where they can get the dub. Zeke asked her what she lacked back in the cradle when he easily defeated her with a rock throw. Reyna admitted that she didn't expect such an unorthodox fighting style. Most nobles commit that blunder. They just have to push Owl to make the same mistake. All Zeke needs is a small opening, and the rest will be easy. Finally, he turned up the heat and activated Gale Arts, shadowless steps, creating multiple after-images to surround Owl. The upper-class knight was taken aback. He recognized Sir Duke's technique. After a few seconds of tricky movements, Zeke attacked, forcing Owl to get a lot more serious with his blocks. Afterward, the light fixtures in the entire arena went out all at once, plunging the Aura Training Hall into darkness. Reyna used her Pure Blood Awakener trait, Mana Interference, to mess with the lights, limiting vision. The only source of light was the sparks of blades colliding against one another. Owl chose to stand his ground and limit big movements to focus on Zeke's seemingly relentless barrage. The knight found this trickery a bit childish. They should know that simply obstructing the vision of someone of his level won't provide an opening at all. But his conceit might cost him a ton. He felt like a prey being hunted by an invisible predator. While Owl relies on his other senses, Zeke seemingly moves without any visual obstruction in pitch darkness. In fact, he is attacking as if his vision is clearer than ever. Zeke has been waiting for a chance to try his new draconian skill in combat, and this should be a good time to do so. Sheathing his blade and starting from a safe distance, his hand turned into a vicious claw. Since Owl isn't the type to yap about a foe's capabilities, using a secret tech shouldn't hurt. Zeke activated Dragon Claw, lighting up the training hall with pure energy as Owl raised his Huando to deflect. He simply couldn't believe that this was a first-year cadet's sword strike. It doesn't feel like a sword strike at all. Owl felt the oppressive force of a mythical beast weighing him down. Regardless, it's safe to say that Zeke Drake had already long surpassed the level of a cadet altogether. Since Reyna doesn't seem to have the same freedom of movement in the dark, Owl focuses solely on the young man. Still, disregarding unnecessary forces for restriction only works against an opponent of a similar level. And that is not the case in this battle at all. Eventually, Owl Draker pinpointed Zeke's location and went on the offensive. They clashed dozens of times in a matter of a few seconds. Surprisingly enough, Zeke kept up with his stoic intensity. However, Zeke could tell that Owl was starting to acclimate to the darkness. He's moving like his vision is not impaired anymore. With both hands gripping his Huando, Owl struck a decisive blow. But he hit nothing but air. Zeke had vanished, leaving only a hazy figure of a shadow. He felt the young man reappear behind him and struck once again without hesitation. With a second swing and a miss, the knight realized that the lights were being tampered with again. They started falling from the ceiling to the floor, one by one. Zeke used extraneous noises to cover up traces of his movement. While Owl was tunnel-visioned on locating Zeke in the ceiling, he almost got sliced by an out-of-tempo attack. Capitalizing on the knight's brief disorientation, Zeke gave Reyna the signal to pounce. In addition, the young man threw something in the air. He got it from his buddy at the magic department. The structure and ingredients are simple. It's a single-use item that can store a spell. Locked inside the canister is a replica of explosion magic with only the flash of light and deafening sound included. Zeke closed his eyes and covered his ears, leaving Reyna with the most important job. Unable to account for such a disruptive trick, Owl Draker was caught in the noisy explosion. He felt stupid for falling for such an underhanded trick. The upper-class knight also admitted that disregarding Reyna altogether was a massive error in his judgment. In his most vulnerable state, the two cadets pushed forth with the intent of grabbing the victory. Since he simply can't afford to lose to kids, Owl Draker unleashed the 4th chapter and 1st verse of the Dragonslaying arts, a full moon slash, blindly performed to push the cadets away. The mere fact that he was forced to use a serious technique against these brats made Owl Draker feel like a scumbag. When the test concluded, both cadets were put on stretchers to be treated. Despite the last bit of the test, Owl Draker did a good job. While the upper-class knight was settling the last bit of the test, he heard a familiar gruff voice. He bowed and politely greeted Duke, the Knight of the Gale, who came by to tease Owl. When asked how Zeke did on the test, Owl fell deep in thought. At the final moment of the showdown, he could tell that the kid intentionally abandoned his sword and raised his guard instead when he could have launched a counterattack. Owl reckoned that the clever young master wasn't aiming for a complete victory, he just wanted to advance. He only revealed his abilities to the extent that he felt was necessary. So, he answered Duke's question with honesty. Evaluating Zeke Draker is far behind his capacity. Later that day, the result of the test was discussed by the higher-ups in the Academy Grade Advancement meeting. By the looks of it, they've already come to a mutual agreement regarding the decision. The next day, it was announced that Reina and Zeke would advance to 3rd and 5th grade respectively. From that point on, Zeke lived as quietly as possible. He continued learning all the Gale arts from Duke, and Andre continued working hard. He maintained a good relationship with Professor Fanon until he was chosen by the Royal Magic Lab in Delphoa. Zeke actively avoided getting involved with the heirs of the great families. Another interesting thing was that Owl came to see him every quarter to request a duel, which he accommodated. After a few sessions, Owl must have awakened to a sudden realization, handed a leave of absence, and isolated himself for close training. Just like that, 2 years have passed, and Zeke graduated from the academy. Today Decker is in good spirits. His young master had just become the youngest person to have been admitted into Valhalla after all. The old butler believes that the patriarch would be elated with how much the 15-year-old Zeke had grown. The dean even personally wrote a letter of recommendation for Zeke. Being bestowed the title of the youngest prodigy admitted to Valhalla effectively rendered his 2 years of low-key living null and void. The entrance ceremony will take place in 3 months. Zeke wants Decker to go back to the family estate while he allegedly rests quietly by himself. When the young master claimed that he didn't want to be disturbed by anyone, Decker immediately knew what he was implying. In truth, Zeke is itching to head to the giant mountains where Kaiser's remains lay. He'll use this 3-month vacation as an excuse to explore the lands of Argos Kingdom through the Adventurers Guild. Zeke wanted to err on the side of caution and conceal his identity when venturing into a foreign land. Before going, he wanted to see another person, his loyal attendant Liam. In the past 2 years, he kept on telling the big guy to ease up, but he still preferred to be formal with Zeke. Zeke heard that Liam had been transferred to the special class after standing out. As the boss, he can't just stand by and do nothing to celebrate such an achievement. So, he went ahead and organized everything that Liam would ever need during his time in the academy. Exam materials, training manuals, and essential items have been prepared for his use. All Liam has to do is claim all the required items in Fafnir's breath. Also, the big guy will need a personal weapon in his 4th year. So Zeke had already arranged for that with Galleon. Everything has been paid for, so there's no need to worry. After all, he truly has faith that Liam will follow after him in Valhalla sooner rather than later. Hearing everything his boss had done to set him up for success moved the gentle giant to tears. With determination, he kneeled down and assured his liege that he would live up to those expectations no matter what. With Liam set up, Zeke turned his attention back to Argos Kingdom, a powerhouse that lies at the northernmost edge of the central continent. It is one of the 4 central powers alongside Delphoa, Thebia, and Alencia. All sorts of dungeons litter the giant mountains that divide the continent. These dungeons draw an adventurer hoping to try their luck. The first king of Argos realized this opportunity and tied the kingdom's central business to dungeons and adventurers. Under the support of the royal family, the giant mountains have been divided into hundreds of regions with unique shipping routes and bases. Eventually, the Argos Adventurers Guild spread all across the continent. Right now, our boy is inside one of its many branches. He took on his pre-regression name, Zeke Murray, to register and donned a very convincing disguise. Zeke got some heavy-duty brown wig and green magic lenses. He wants to operate in peace, and hiding his identity as an adventurer is practically a requirement. The mere mention of the Draker name would undoubtedly make him stand out. Now that he's back in the outside world, it's time to stretch his legs and go on a treasure hunt. He boarded one of the many caravans heading for the giant mountains. It's a relief he managed to share one, given that it's currently peak season for adventurers. Inside the caravan, some plucky adventurers tried to make conversation, asking if he was a first-timer. Their leader, a particularly pushy blonde, tried to recruit Zeke with a smile. He bragged that they were veterans who knew their way around the mountains and warned Zeke of the dangers of going solo and ending up as Monster Chow. One glance was all it took to peer through their real intentions. These garbage people are evil. They love taking in new adventurers to use as monster bait or sell them off to slave traders. So Zeke didn't bother replying to their advances. Then, he noticed something odd, told the blondie to shut the hell up, and walked over to the caravan coach. He warned the coach that there were monsters tailing them from 500 meters to the left. Judging by their presence, it seems to be a mob of orcs. The coach insisted that they were on a secure route, so they should be safe. Overhearing Zeke's warning, the blondie called him a nervous rookie. Everyone knows that routes managed by the Adventurers Guild are completely secure. Forget monsters. Not even wild animals would dare to get inside the safe zone. If that's the case, then what the hell is that thing behind Blondie? The caravan was absolutely clobbered by the mob of orcs. The monsters were swift and decisive with their ambush. They killed the horses pulling the carriage and absolutely demolished the entire thing. The orcs killed the passengers one by one. While his crew was being massacred, the blonde adventurer was pinned down by the remains of the caravan. When an orc heard him screaming in terror, he joined his garbage crew in their bloody graves. Meanwhile, Zeke had already bounced out of that supposedly safe route. The presence of roaming orcs around the safe zone means that the base isn't operating properly. With his decades of experience in tracking, it didn't take Zeke long to find the kingdom's base. He was greeted by the sight of blood and gore. Corpses of knights littered the place. Judging by the size of the base and the manpower concentrated in this place, most monsters would not have stood a chance. So Zeke examined the corpses a little more meticulously. He could tell that these people weren't butchered by a monster. They were slaughtered by a human. Whoever's the culprit intentionally left massive lacerations on the corpses to disguise it as a vicious monster attack. However, a monster can't possibly leave cuts this clean. On top of that, there are almost no traces of resistance. These soldiers must have been killed by a wicked ambush from someone at the Purple Knight level. If Zeke stays any longer, he might even be implicated with such a heinous crime. Right now, he can't afford distractions. Finding traces of Kaiser is his top priority. Venturing deeper into the woods, he started seeing more and more symbols that mark barbarian territory. According to the mini-map, he should be close to his destination. However, the Empire's hunting dogs are sniffing around and are trying to tail him, thinking he would not notice. These dogs have been recruited from the greatest talents among knight trainees. As a unit under the direct orders of the Emperor, they are trained in tracking and assassination. Currently, only those in the highest positions of the Empire are aware of their existence, but the dogs will make a grand display in the public eye when the Continental War starts. While Zeke is heading deeper into the woods, he's been watching their movements. The tracking techniques they are using are painfully familiar. This is precisely what they used to take his life before regressing. From Duke's conversation with his dad, Zeke finds out that the Emperor is obsessed with immortality and is willing to turn the continent inside out to find it. Even in his past life, the Mad Emperor was obsessed with all sorts of rare artifacts. That man wanted to unify the world and rule over it for eternity. With that in mind, there's a possibility that the Empire is also targeting Hero King Kaiser's ruins. Zeke will have to confirm it himself. Suddenly, he bolted out of the hunting dog's vicinity. Just as one of them was about to shoot a flare up into the air, Zeke cut the man's hand off with a single strike. The one holding the gold emergency flare should be this group's leader. While the leader bleeds out, Zeke asks if they're the perimeter guard team, since a standard team should consist of 12 men instead of just 3. Hearing that the young man figured them out so quickly, the dogs barked. To shut them up, Zeke beheaded the leader to make them understand the situation better. He's not the prey, he's the fucking hunter. All he can see is 2 mouths that can talk. They had better start doing that before the number reached 0. After a lot of convincing, Zeke found the location of the dog's temporary base. Inside a cavern, dozens of Imperial hunting dogs have gathered. They're probably responsible for the massacre of the Argos Kingdom base camp from earlier. Since they're taking such drastic measures, it's possible that they really found Kaiser's ruins. Before checking out the hunting dog base, Zeke arranged the corpses of his victims neatly and scribbled some sinister symbols on a tree using their blood. Even though it's just a temporary base, the hunting dogs sure know how to make decent accommodations. Still, most of the dogs are deathly bored of guard duty. Since they're inside barbarian territory, no one in their right mind would dare to intrude. The guards went from deathly bored to just plain dead. One by one, they were sniped by an unstoppable force. The kills were so discreet that the dogs inside barely noticed. Before they knew it, their death sentence had already infiltrated their little base. Zeke was brutal, meticulous, and decisive. All his kills were done in one strike. When one of the dogs tried to warn his fellow puppies, Zeke shoved his whole hand on the guy's mouth and slit the dipshit's throat. Holding a dagger stained with the Empire's blood reminded Zeke of old times. He felt nostalgic for the days when he acted as the blade who stifled a 5-year-long power struggle. Once he was ordered by his boss to raid the Pabella cartel. Of course, the hunting dogs spotted and encircled him eventually. The one in charge recognized Zeke's style as the knifemanship of a southern hitman. The only ones who practiced such a brutal style were the McCains and Pabellas. Either way, they need to deal with this masked assassin. With a single glance, Zeke evaluated the battalion's leader as nothing more than a low-quality blue knight at most, far weaker compared to the standard of hunting dogs in his past life. Zeke stirred the pot even further, insulting the survivors after slaughtering their comrades. Finally, he burst into action and took on dozens of hunting dogs at once. No matter what they tried, they couldn't get past Zeke's infallible knife. As the fight continued, he found it odd just how weak these dogs were. Are they too weak? Or did Zeke just get too strong? Right now, it doesn't matter. To expedite the carnage, Zeke used his mana reflection skill to kill the lights. The leader correctly suspected that this was the Dragonslayer's mana interference, but the intruder didn't fight with a sword and didn't use aura either. The power outage must be a coincidence. Mr. Leader tried to rouse his men up, assuring them that power would be restored soon. All they have to do is focus on defense. A few seconds later, the power did come back. The lights exposed dozens of hunting dog corpses neatly lined up on the ground. The only one left was the dumbass leader, and Zeke's already got his eyes on the man. When he mentioned Kaiser's ruins, the leader unconsciously reached for his sword with his trembling hands. Zeke is not expecting to extract any valuable intel from this man. It's better to just find the ruins on his own. The leader tried insisting that they're not here for some ruins, but that doesn't really matter. With one more slash, the hunting dogs were completely annihilated. Thanks to the blade he used to kill everyone and the symbols he left, all of the events that occurred here will be blamed on the McCains. In his previous life, Zeke poured blood, sweat, and tears into that criminal organization based in the South. After the Cusco Kingdom fell due to a civil war, the McCain cartel divided the resulting land in two and took power. Zeke could have easily covered his tracks had he used his draconian skills, but intentionally using southern knife techniques and pinning it on the cartel was more fun. The Empire would simply blame the criminal organization. If the Emperor launches a crusade to eliminate McCain, Zeke also stands to benefit. Anyway, after searching the base, Zeke found a letter that proved just how crazy the Emperor had become. His only command was to find any kind of ancient ruins. The most shocking thing was the enclosed operation map. Checking every nook and cranny of the central continent is a given, but the dogs are even searching the eastern regions in the middle of a ceasefire agreement. Every hunting dog has been mobilized, extending past the dark seas. They are scouring every place suspected of housing ancient ruins. This would mean that the hunting dogs are already operating on a massive scale. Thankfully, they haven't encroached on Kaiser's ruins. Nevertheless, it would be best if Zeke hurried up since bad news was coming. Looking up to the sky, a red flare shined. The hunting dogs used this special flare to signal a disaster. Zeke immediately pulled up his mask and made a run for it. No matter how swift and tricky he was, the hunting dogs had nearly caught up. The 5-part red flare they shot is an absolute snare. They are under orders to kill the hazard no matter what. Using the flare as the center, they will search, secure, ensnare, and kill. This is their archetypal assassination method, and is synonymous with a death sentence. When Zeke stole the artifact that the Emperor was after, even he fell victim to the absolute snare. But things are different now that he has the system. With a sneak attack, Zeke was boxed in by the dogs. Their swords were fast and sharp, all of them aiming for a kill shot. But Zeke didn't panic. Even with just a knife, he's confident that he can take them on. After waltzing his way out of a disadvantaged position, Zeke assessed his assailants. These guys are definitely on a different level from the noobs in the cave. He tried to keep some distance, but more and more dogs kept on coming out of the woodwork. Surrounded by dozens of the Empire's best and brightest, this simple excursion has turned into a real hassle. Based on these people's skill levels, Zeke can still escape, but that would mean tearing down his attempts to frame McCain. He still has one more trump card that he really didn't want to use, though. Zeke pulled out a tiny horn and put it in his mouth. He blew on it, and the thing produced a guttural sound that blanketed the entire forest. The dogs stopped their advance and observed the situation. Taking advantage of their confusion, Zeke threw some smoke bombs to limit their vision. They tried to close in on him, thinking that the sound was just a distraction, and failed. Still, while the absolute snare is in effect, not a single soul can outrun the dogs. The leader quickly adapted and ordered his men to start tracking for suspicious movements. Zeke seemed to be traceless, but it would only be a matter of time before these dogs picked his scent back up. While the leader was deep in thought, his men started dying off. Coming out of the woods were throngs of barbarians thirsty for blood, even though the dogs tried their best not to provoke these savages. While they can take a few of them, going up against an entire army is just asking to be wiped out. Some of the dogs tried to stand their ground, but their aura blades couldn't even tear through barbarian skin. In contrast, a single punch from a barbarian can crush a man's head. The leader of the dogs had never seen these savages so enraged. At this rate, they'll all die. So he pulled out a flare and shot the signal to withdraw, canceling the absolute snare. As they retreated with their tails tucked between their legs, the barbarians continued to chase. When the coast was finally clear, Zeke dug himself out of his hiding spot and breathed a sigh of relief. That horn was far more effective than he expected. A barbarian's horn is used for efficient communication during the chaos of battle. It's a tool of war. In his past life, Zeke developed a friendly relationship with the Mohawken tribe, and they taught him how to make and use the horn. The signal he sent the savages was a message about outsiders intruding upon their sacred land. Sure, barbarians are considered to be simplistic and uncivilized, but they have clear cultures and traditions and live under their own set of principles. The replica that Zeke crafted only held up for one use, but it was a massive help. With the dogs off his back, he can finally continue his quest. He arrived at the entrance of the ancient ruins rather quickly. Here, he encountered yet another obstacle to his plan. It's just one thing after another today. He had discovered a 9-headed fallen dragonborn corrupted by contaminated energy. Zeke doesn't even know what a fallen dragonborn is. According to the minimap, the door leading to the ruins is directly behind the best. First, he tried to open the door remotely using the system, and it worked. He successfully opened the home of the Hero King, Kaiser. However, this prompted the fallen dragonborn to go on an aggressive rampage. Zeke can't cheese the beast and walk past it now. Since he's being forced to fight, he immediately uses his dragon-slaying arts and closes the gap between him and the monstrosity. In order to dodge 9 attacks all at once, Zeke tapped into his Gale arts and used Shadowless Steps. His plan was to interfere with the monster's vision using Shadowless Steps and sneak into the entrance quickly. For a second, it looks like the bold plan is going to work. Just a bit further, and he would have pulled off the scam, but the fangs of the Dragonborn stopped him from doing so. Alas, he was forced to pull out the Stygian blade, Bahamut. He immediately used Dragonslaying Arts Chapter 7, Verse 1, Dragonhead Severance, to the fullest degree. Upon severing one of 9 heads, Zeke discovered that the fallen Dragonborn's blood had a corrosive property. Thankfully, his healing factor kicked in before his skin was peeled off. After the initial clash, Zeke finally remembered what this monster was. His master from his past life barely subjugated such a formidable beast. The 9-headed dragon Hydra. He felt his blood pumping with excitement, eager to test himself against such an opponent. The battle raged on, with Zeke using Bahamut as Hydra's toothpick. While he was dealing with one head, the other ones continued to wreak havoc. He's starting to doubt his clan's naming scheme for the so-called dragon-slaying arts at this point. In this age where dragons are extinct, dragonborn monsters are the closest lifeforms to them. Still, it seems like none of his attacks are working against the beast. No matter how much he cuts, the Hydra just heals back up. Taking such a monster down might be a bit too much for him currently. The monster is positioned about 30 meters away from the door. For now, Zeke wanted to try something, so he asked the system to close the entrance. His request has been confirmed, and the door has been shut. Zeke took his position with a determination to give it another go. He compounded applied dragon-slaying arts and the 5th form of Gale arts together. Charging forward, he unleashed the Wind Splitter. The burst of speed should give him enough velocity to get through the door. The Hydra eyed him and sent 3 heads coiling to block his path. Zeke made it closer to the entrance than he ever had. But the Hydra was quick enough to stifle his progress with a vicious bite on one of his arms to drag him away. He thought he could outsmart and trick the beast, but it's clearly hell-bent on fulfilling its guard duty. Since the beast wants his arm so badly, Zeke gladly ceded his limb. Using his blade, he cut his own arm to escape from the Dragonborn's clutches. A severed arm is not that big of a deal, considering Zeke's inhuman regeneration. Incensed by his reckless fighting style, the beast showed another new attack. It spewed out a poison fog that quickly enveloped him. The Hydra's poison quickly seeped into Zeke's body. He countered with a spiteful attack of his own. With soul manifestation, laceration tore through multiple heads at once. Now, most of the Hydra's head has been cut off, causing it to crash on the ground. The dragon and the Dragonslayer stared at each other, both of them on their last legs. The beast initiates the final clash as Zeke lifts his sword to deal with the only remaining head. Unconsciously, his draconian skill, Dragon's Dignity, kicked in. In the Hydra's eyes, Zeke had transformed into the specter of a real dragon. His threatening words to kill and crush the beast utterly intimidated the fallen Dragonborn. A fear that resonated deep, thrummed from within its genes, and stunned the monster. Its aggressive demeanor completely dissolved, becoming more like an obedient dog in front of Zeke. It slowly cowered away to tend to its wounds while sweating bullets. Zeke finally took a breather. His regenerated arm is still raw, and the poison is still coursing through his bloodstream. If he knew that the dragon's dignity worked against the Dragonborn, he would have used it a lot sooner. For the first time in a while, he felt tired when infinite stamina was supposed to be permanently active. Fiddling with his system, he was prompted with the option to activate Draconic Control to subjugate the Dragonborn target with his authority. Who would have thought that he could strike fear in the heart of a monster that nearly devoured him whole? Whatever the reason, this presents a pretty exciting possibility. He might be able to subjugate monsters. He wanted to give it a shot, but the system prompted that he lacked the required administrator level to subjugate the fallen Dragonborn. Zeke felt that this was fair. It would be weirder if such a broken ability didn't have restrictions. He slowly stood up and felt a painful throbbing inside his body. The Hydra's poison wrecking his body has surpassed dangerous levels. His passive healing was not working. Desperate for relief, he thought of Gluttony's other effect. He can consume bloodline abilities. Since Hydra has such a potent poison, it's safe to assume that it has a bloodline ability to resist such toxin. While he writhes in pain, Zeke's shadow extends as Gluttony descends. He devoured one of the Dragonborn's freshly severed heads, melting and pulling it into the void. Doing so upgraded his Gluttony skill from beginner to expert. He completely recovered his energy, and most importantly, he rolled the much-needed bloodline ability, an incomplete constitution for poison resistance. As his shadow retreated, Zeke forced himself to stand back up. His poison resistance constitution completely neutralized the painful throbbing coursing through his body. Before entering the ruins, he gave his status window a quick check. Everything seems to be in order, and the poison resistance constitution might unlock some new possibilities for him in the future. On top of that, gluttony, which has been stuck at the beginner level, had finally gone up. Overall, he got some hefty upgrades. Now Zeke can start moving without some pesky nine-headed worm holding him back. Hero King Kaiser was a legendary figure by every metric. He was born from a wise human sage's and the fairy monarch's love. Like any archetypical hero, Kaiser's life was wrought with difficulty from the day he was born. He was separated from his parents due to an evil mage's schemes and abandoned in a forest filled with beasts. In there, a sacred wolf took in the young, lone, and crying baby Kaiser and raised him like a cub. Thanks to that, the Hero King grew up safely and fiercely. He eventually saved the oppressed humans and created the Kingdom of Human Liberation in the central continent, Kronos. Every single person on the continent knows of Kaiser's legend. They've heard it in bedtime stories. However, solid proof substantiating the tall tales is non-existent. Right now, Zeke is standing in the ruins that would prove Kaiser and Kronos Kingdom's existence. The tower that housed the Hero King is right in front of him. It's far smaller in scale than what the storybooks depicted. Zeke didn't expect that the ruins he was trying to get into would be the Kronos Kingdom itself. Looking at the tower's gate, he could see the similarities between Kronos and the home of the Dragonslayer. The gate opened and Zeke promptly entered. In the middle of the room was a singular piece of blue glowing ore. If he's not mistaken, this thing should contain the Hero King's secret technique. Upon touching the ore, the quest linked to the secret technique has automatically begun. The system warned Zeke that he could not leave the limited area until the linked quest's completion. The ornate gates closed, trapping him inside. He must acquire Kaiser's wisdom from the remnants of his presence left in the ruins to gain the fairy monarch's tears. As far as Zeke knows, the fairy monarch's tears came from Kaiser's mother. She was an existence that granted the wishes of men. Getting that as a reward would be game-changing. While he doesn't know how to use it yet, the tear is surely a cheat-level treasure. Hovering his hand on the crystallized tear, he asked the system how to proceed, and it started extracting data from a magic recording device. The system opened entry 546 of Hero King Kaiser's magic video records. In total, there are 12 entries that correspond to Zeke's question, and the first one was automatically played. The language, Ancient Kornosian, has been dead for a long time, so the system kindly activated an automatic translation of the common Central Continent tongue. Suddenly, a projection depicting a man with a blade lit up the room. He was giving a lecture about swords. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Hero King Kaiser himself. According to this guy, a sword is a sword, no matter what. At least, that's the kind of nonsense that those senile old men spout. Suddenly, the recording device shook, and Kaiser yelled at someone called Shelturn to keep it together. This Shelturn guy would be known as Kaiser's most loyal knight. Seeing this clear recording of a mythical man felt like a revelation for Zeke. Behind the camera, Shelturn asked the king how to wield a sword well. Kaiser pulled out his blade and cited the need for practice and vigor. With a smirk, he brought his sword down in a single motion, and Zeke felt as though he was being cut cleanly in half. For a few seconds, he felt his body separating lengthwise. When he snapped out of the nightmare, he was sweating bullets. It was just a recording of a practice swing, yet the overwhelming spirit felt so real. This is the wisdom of the Hero King that he must inherit. Thinking about wielding a blade at that level pumped him up. So, he asked the system to replay the video from the beginning. After replaying the recording over and over and trying to mimic that intensity, 4 days have passed in the blink of an eye. There are 3 doors that can be opened from this locked room. The first one is food storage, which contains enough supplies to last for months on end. The second door leads to a resting area with a bed and a bath to manage one's condition. The final room contains a variety of books and weapons of war. This place is the most optimal training room meant to hone Kaiser's successor. With all his needs provided, Zeke was able to focus purely on training and swinging his sword. He was able to come as close as possible to Kaiser's form, but something was missing. After another day of endless practice, he finally acquired the basic form of the Hero King's wisdom, the elemental sword. Surpassing the basic level opened up the applied level. This triggered the summoning of Kaiser's soul. With the monarch's tear as the catalyst, the spirit took form. The king of the ancient Kronos kingdom, Hero King Kaiser, stepped into the corporeal world once more. Zeke was hyped. The soul of the legendary king renowned throughout the continent is standing right before his eyes. He quickly snapped out of his reverie when Kaiser reached for his sword. Thankfully, he's become proficient enough to predict the incoming attack and block it in time. Nevertheless, the power behind the sword strike sent him careening to the walls. Then, the king ordered him to stand back up. He felt a sensation he'd only ever felt once before when facing his master before regressing. The hero king mocked his pathetic skills, deeming him unfit to learn the elemental sword. Kaiser was deeply unsatisfied. The knight of old would pound the ground and lament at the sight of how pitiful the current generation has become. Zeke reckoned that the king must be testing him right now. Not even giving him the chance to compose himself, Kaiser majestically closed the gap between them. He unleashed another monstrous slash that could have ended Zeke's life. These attacks are clearly lethal. This 1,000-year-old soul is trying to kill him. The hero that he looked up to looked more like an unreasonable monster right now. Clearing useless thoughts out of his mind, Zeke took a deep breath. He dropped the practice sword and steeled his determination to give this duel everything he had. Upon pulling out Bahamut, he immediately coated the Stygian blade with ether and converted it to aura. The hero king was pleasantly surprised and asked Zeke if he was Sheltern's disciple or something. He vaguely remembers his loyal knight telling him about this power. Kaisi thinks it was called Aurora. Even when he's fighting at full force, Zeke is easily thwarted. It's evident that the king wasn't even taking him seriously. Regardless of what it was called, Kaiser doesn't care about lesser techniques. All that matters is how fun fighting is for him. At least when Zeke is going all out, they can exchange one-sided blows for a few seconds. Zeke already expected that he would be insignificant compared to the ancient ruler, but this was just too much. He didn't think that his abilities would only amount to this much against a real powerhouse. However, he's confident in his perseverance. All at once, he activated Critical Strike, High-Speed Movement, Continuous Slash, and Dragon Claw. The image of the dragon's limb looked a lot more material, and its power was more destructive than ever before. Even so, Zeke's strongest attack didn't even wrinkle the king's robe. All it did was confuse Kaiser. Despite not being a dragonoid, the kid can wield draconian powers. While Kaiser was lost in thought, Zeke pushed his ether to the max and tried a sneak attack from behind. The hero king turned around with a curious gaze. He perceived that Zeke was using some so-called elemental force. With one fluid motion, the young lord unleashed his ultimate killing blow, Soul Manifestation, Lacerate. Kaiser expertly blocked the attack that mangled a dragonborn with a smile on his face. A few moments later, Zeke opened his eyes, feeling disoriented. The king had been waiting for the weakling to wake up. Kaiser admitted that he saw some glimpses of real talent in Zeke. The kid is capable of tapping into Sheltern's talent. He can use draconian powers and even hints of elemental force. Upon closer inspection, he also noticed that part of Zeke's soul was stuck in the spirit realm. All these words only served to confuse the young man. Kaiser elaborated that despite Zeke's human body, he somehow managed to overcome the wall of death. If so, then his ability to tap into the elemental force makes sense. Growing frustrated, Zeke confronted the king about all these unfamiliar terms and seemingly nonsensical topics. Kaiser smiled and dismissed such trivial matters. They have a much more important goal after all. This young man must now properly attempt to grasp the hero king's wisdom and master the elemental sword. You see, the elemental force is the natural energy that makes up all things. Water, earth, fire, and wind. The long-lost elemental sword applies these 4 basic elements in one technique. To demonstrate visually, the king swung his sword and produced a roaring tempest with Windfield. The source behind this technique must be the ether that the young man spoke of. The king's explanation, his raw power, and his application are a lot closer to magic rather than swordsmanship. Since elemental force is practically synonymous with ether, there must be some kind of secret involved in its conversion. When he raises the question of conversion, the king just looks at Zeke like he is an idiot. He set his sword on fire and awkwardly claimed that he could just do it innately, so he can't really explain the method. So Zeke was forced to observe and form his own explanations. It's not that he can't feel ether from the king, it's that he simply could not. This man's ether usage is so perfectly fine-tuned that it would take all of Zeke's focus just to barely feel the ether's movement. After condensing what he learned thus far, he attempted to use the elemental sword. Kaiser definitely called his soul manifestation earlier some kind of elemental force. If so, he just needs to tweak soul manifestation a little bit to come to his own interpretation. When he tried to get a feel of the conversion, the king was a little bit surprised. After a few moments of forcing his soul manifestation to change form, he managed to form a Gale Sword. Instead of praise for getting the hang of it so fast, Kaiser smacked him in the head instead. The king insisted that he must use real elemental force, not some inferior knockoff incantation. According to Kaiser, incantations are an exclusive domain for dragons. Dragonoids might be able to use them, but humans are out of the question. Whenever Zeke relies on that power, he'll just end up pushing past his limits, and that won't end well at all. There is a marked difference between human and dragon souls. The young man might be able to imitate it for a bit, but he'll never be able to use incantations to their fullest potential. Kaiser is disgusted with whoever developed such a pathetic and reckless imitation. Come to think of it, Zeke had seen mentions of incantation before. When he absorbed Bahamut's heart, he acquired the draconian skill of incantation, but was not able to use it yet due to a lack of administrator experience. If that's the case, he can actually unlock its full potential when he grows stronger. He might be able to use soul manifestation without its drawbacks too. The king impatiently demanded that he practice properly before getting bashed in the head once more. Naturally, application training took much longer than basic physical training. Through the effects of the divine body, Kaiser's expert demonstrations, and regular spars, Zeke eventually came to an understanding of the fundamental principles of the elemental sword. While magic is activated using mana as its driving force, elemental sword uses ether as fuel to drive the power of spirits. After understanding the underlying principles and the method of usage, Zeke quickly began using the technique. Now, he can actually utilize some of Kaiser's fearsome techniques. Even though he's come so far, he's only progressed enough to the entry level in Kaiser's eyes. Reaching the next realm will be incredibly harsh, so he better get plenty of rest. But while he rested, he wanted to ask the Hero King a few questions. As Kaiser lazily rested on his floating cloud, he entertained the young man's queries. Zeke asked why the king called him Sheltern's disciple upon seeing the aura. Now, the king finally remembered what that power was called. Aura. Back then, Sheltern claimed that humans couldn't use elemental swords, so he created his own technique. That damned knight of his, Sheltern Draker, must have ignored the king's technique altogether and only passed down his own creation. Zeke was taken aback. He just casually found out that the right hand of the Hero King and the inventor of Aura was a freaking Draker. That means the original progenitor of his family was not Terracan, but an even more ancient fighter in the form of Sheltern. Putting all follow-up questions aside, Zeke asked the king what the spirit realm was. Now that he's somewhat proficient with the elemental sword, he still can't grasp the concept of the realm. Kaiser nonchalantly raised his hand and caused a fissure to appear beside him. That fissure was made by the wind field pressure. He doesn't even need to use the sword to conjure such a thing. Kaiser explained that the spirit realm is basically the afterlife, but not quite. Once someone leaves their corporeal body in this current realm and their souls enter the spirit realm, one can never return. An impenetrable wall stands between these two planes of existence. However, Kaiser also mentioned that part of Zeke's soul was trapped in the spirit realm, and Kaiser himself is freely roaming the real world as a soul. Admittedly, this is the first time the Hero King has seen such a bizarre existence as Zeke. In reality, there are a couple of ways to cross between planes. In Kaiser's case, he enlisted the help of a dragon to cross over. Zeke was flabbergasted. He thought that there was no way such a haughty existence would help a human. The king was confused. Back in his day, dragons were life forms that cherished humans. This is news to Zeke, who only perceives dragons as apocalyptic beasts. If dragons cherished humans, then why did the evil dragon Bahamut try to destroy the world? Zeke's worldview is shattering. He doesn't even know what to believe anymore. Kaiser asserted that Zeke himself is a living testament to the dragon's care for humanity. His heart and the fang to create his sword were clearly gifted by Bahamut. Kaiser had some run-ins with that old dragon back in his heyday. Although Bahamut's character is questionable, that old bag of scales also has a cute side and cannot refuse a sincere request. It sounds like the Hero King and the evil dragon were on friendly terms. Keeping the fact that Bahamut was subjugated and killed by humans a secret would probably be best for now. So Zeke played along and claimed that his heart and sword were gifted to him by Lord Bahamut. Kaiser laughed heartily, clearly reminiscing about the dragon's kindness. He even mentioned that Bahamut regularly feuds with Kronos because of his fiery temper. The Hero King cleared up that Kronos was the guardian dragon of his kingdom, and Kaiser was his contractor. While the king was racking his brain over the name of the kingdom, Kronos was leisurely drinking tea beside him, so he named the kingdom after the dragon. Even so, Kronos didn't react much, as though he'd already expected it to happen. In truth, Kaiser wanted the dragon's name to be known by future generations. If that's the case, thousands of years ago in Kaiser's era, dragons and humans must have truly lived in harmony. However, in the case that an incredibly powerful dragon helped a human without a contract, the balance of the world must have collapsed, endangering the realm as a whole. These human-loving dragons must have suppressed their strength, polymorphed into their human forms, and helped humanity through contracts. Kaiser is one of those dragon contractors. So, the reason why so many ancient figures were unfathomably powerful was because they were receiving help from contracts. The mystery still remains. What the hell happened that caused a rift between two harmonious factions? Zeke thinks he can solve this question when he hears the entire story from his new eccentric master. Finally, resting time is over, and the two prepare for another clash. By this time, they've developed a playful rapport with each other. The final course of this training camp is a real duel against the hero king. However, such a simplistic format would not be any different from what they've already been doing, so Kaiser added another rule. From now on, eating and sleeping will be forbidden, and the duel will continue until he says stop. Also, Zeke will be limited to using the same element as whatever Kaiser is using. Without waiting for another second, the room was set ablaze with a roaring flame field. A fiery dance waltzed. Kaiser claimed that Zeke was free to break the rules. If he has more than one life, he's free to try. The first form of the elemental sword is found on the element of fire. Meeting the king's sword with his own flame, the flame field sparked. The clashing blades spread a great amount of heat, boasting overwhelming destructive power. Right now, Zeke is capable of standing toe-to-toe when it comes to cooking with fire. His eyes constricted upon sensing that the next phase was about to begin. The second form is founded on the element of earth, steel field. Kaiser jumped into the air, springing into action. Steel field focuses on weight, specializing in subduing and defending. It allows the user to freely control solidity and mass. Zeke gritted his teeth and endured the mass to the best of his abilities. He managed to deflect the king away from his effective range. He thought he did pretty well until he felt a wound on his cheek. Kaiser is on to the third phase, a power founded on the element of wind, wind field. In a span of a few seconds, he must defend against hundreds of wind blades trying to cut him up to pieces. Compared to the flame field, it admittedly lacks in power. But when it comes to attack speed, movement, and sword aura, it stands above and beyond. The last phase is a form founded on the element of water, the water field. Water flexes between both attack and defense. It also excels in suppression and support. Dealing with crushing waves is a supremely difficult thing to do. The form is as variable as water itself, possessing a versatile and well-balanced strength. Sandwiched in between two tsunamis, Zeke went on a free fall. He's bleeding from multiple painful wounds, unable to even threaten the king in return. Both his power, range, and even master should be greater than when he started, but Kaiser is just built differently. The skill gap between the master and the student seemed insurmountable. As soon as he got the chance to retaliate, Zeke swung big. He thought he finally got a clean hit in before feeling a gentle tap of the sword on his head. Kaiser criticized him for harnessing the power of a waterfall, not of pure water. He thought he was free to improv as long as he unleashed the right attribute. The king admitted that he could freestyle all he wanted with other fields, wielding the element with force. However, he must learn that the water field is all about fluidity. Fluidity is not just about raw power, and it will always trump brute strength. With that, their first bout ended in Zeke's loss via technicality. Honestly, he's starting to feel frustrated with Kaiser's standards. He sees strength as the thing that trumps all. In his previous life, he submitted to defeat because he lacked the strength to fight back. As a result, he lost what was precious to him. Without strength, he couldn't protect those that are most important to him. In order to survive and adhere to his convictions, he sought nothing but strength his entire life, in both of his lives for that matter. So, when Kaiser insists that fluidity will win over strength, the king is basically challenging the very core of his being. While he was nodding off and silently ranting in the middle of the duel, Kaiser mercilessly attacked. Zeke managed to raise his water sword in the nick of time, but he was knocked off balance. In reality, he stopped trying to keep track of the days after the 15th day of non-stop fighting. By his estimation, it should have been at least a month since they started clanging swords without stopping for food or rest. Thanks to that, he realized that his infinite stamina wasn't all that powerful. In front of his monster, his broken skill seemed lackluster. Day by day, Kaiser increased the intensity of their tryst. Lately, they have been focusing on mastering fluidity in the water field. At this point, Zeke is having a hard time putting any strength into his exhausted arms. To make matters worse, the floor has gotten too slippery, messing with footwork. With Kaiser's next attack, his knees finally buckled. Without a stable foothold and being subjected to ungodly forces, it was only a matter of time. Instead of despairing, Zeke smiled. After days of opposing the ideology in his mind, he finally understood what Hero King Kaiser kept on telling him. Fluidity will trump strength. The strength to grip one's sword and the strength to remain standing. Once he was stripped of these things he had prided himself on, and casting it all aside, he finally gleaned the wisdom behind his eccentric master's words. The methods he learned to control a blade's arc and strike trajectory are nothing but chains that bind his freedom. Once he cuts away these unnecessary shackles, he can flow with the freedom of water. From above to below, he can carve his own path. Regaining the passion in his eyes, Zeke initiated the next exchange instead of being stuck in defense. Thinking about it, Zeke actually felt this liberation in his past life. It's a state where the line between his sword and his body blurred. The sensation of being one with the world around him. Just like the waves at times, violent and at times refined. His ever-changing movement and aggression finally made the king smile. After what seemed like months of endless duel, The master and the student looked as though they were having the time of their life. The room's floor had long since flooded while torrential rain poured. Zeke assumed an unorthodox position, the Stygian blade Bahamut streaming with water. Kaiser raised his blade above his head, expertly manipulating the fourth element. At the exact same time, they let loose their unhinged elemental swords. Their respective water's edge formed a perfect horizon of sharpness. Finally, the rain stopped, and a warm light filled the damp room. Hero King Kaiser looked at his disciple with a satisfied smile. With such a magnificent display of growth, the mythical figure officially accepted the young man known as Zeke Draker as the sole successor of his teachings.